This is our MC. Bro got stuck guarding a prison filled with insanely powerful female monsters, and every single one is low-key obsessed with him. One wants to have his kids, one wants his soul, and one's way too interested in his little guy. My dude doesn't even know if he's winning or absolutely cooked. And then there's this giant baddie who dragged him into this world in the first place, and now she just wants to play with him.
Mommy, take me home.
The worst part? Bro has basically zero powers, so how is he supposed to survive guarding a prison packed with dangerous monster girls? And more importantly, how did he even end up here? Well, to understand that, we gotta go back to the beginning. The story starts in Silver City, where a crowd watches as dozens of guards march alongside a prison wagon. The driver is shouting at people to clear the way, and the locals are already gossiping about who's locked inside, wondering if it's a new high-profile prisoner. Through the bars of the wagon, you can see the shadow of a guy guarded heavily by 3 soldiers. The crowd is confused by all the extra security and guesses that whoever is inside must have caused a lot of trouble. Since the figure has pointy ears and glowing golden eyes, they assume it's a werewolf. A girl is spiraling because she's terrified the werewolf will just smash through the steel bars. Her friend tries to chill her out by explaining that Silver City is famous for 2 things: its massive silver mine and the giant silver prison sitting right on the edge of the mountains. Every wall is carved with magic blocking spells, and the whole place is run by a boss named Lord Aiden Galord. Basically, once you're in, you aren't getting out. Fast forward to late at night, a hand suddenly pops out of the dirt near a brick wall. A girl with blue hair named Ophelia, also known as the Crimson Princess, crawls out of the hole feeling hyped that her digging finally paid off. She takes a deep breath and brags that the warden was delusional to think he could keep her locked up, saying he could never match her vibe or her smarts. She thinks back on the 2 years she spent tunneling and notices her nails are a mess, admitting she didn't realize the foundation was reinforced with silver. She celebrates her freedom under the moonlight, yelling that the fresh air was worth the struggle, but then she totally freezes. Right behind her is a guy in a suit and top hat, advising her to keep it down since he already caught her. He suggests she should just go back without a fight. Ophelia turns around and asks if he's Aiden, and he responds by flashing a camera in her face, leaving her shocked. She glares at him and asks how he even knew what she was planning. Standing in the forest, Aiden tells her that her escape attempt was actually super obvious. He points out that she was going to the restroom twice a day, which made no sense since vampires don't even need to use the bathroom. He figured out she was just using that time to dig. Ophelia gets angry and asks why he didn't stop her sooner. The warden just shows her the goofy, scared photo he took of her and explains that he wanted to catch her off guard so the other inmates wouldn't get suspicious. Ophelia shows her fangs and tells him how much she hates him. She pulls out her claws and threatens that only one of them is leaving that spot. She claims she only got caught 2 years ago because of a mistake, but this time will be different. Suddenly, something pokes her in the back of the head. She turns around and asks if it's Evange. Standing there is a short girl with white pigtails and a massive blaster that looks way too big for her. It's Evange, the legendary Eliminator, who mentions that Aiden ordered her to catch the runaway. Right then, a glowing red magic collar snaps onto Ophelia's neck as a giant bird shadow flies over them. A redhead in a witch hat named Daly shows up with her hawk, complaining that Ophelia took way too long to dig out and she was getting bored waiting. Ophelia realizes she's surrounded by the strongest girls on the continent. The last member of the squad arrives, a girl with a skull hair clip and a creepy book who wonders if she can keep Ophelia's ashes. As their minions move in, Ophelia tries to act surprised and asks why they're even working for Aiden when they're also prisoners. She tries to hype them up to team up against him so they can all be free, but the girls just look totally defeated. Aiden explains that they all signed a deal to get better living conditions in exchange for doing jobs for him. He warns her that he won't ask twice, and if she doesn't go back quietly, she's going to get hurt and dragged back. Ophelia calls him a loser and says she has way too much pride to just give up like his team did. She poses with her claws out and declares that she'd rather fight for her freedom than lose it. She warns him not to underestimate her, but Aiden tells her the consequences are going to be huge this time. Ophelia suddenly pictures herself chained to a cross in the sun with garlic in her mouth, which is exactly what Aiden threatened her with. She immediately switches to a sweet voice and plays dumb, claiming she just wanted to look at the moon and acting confused about the punishment. Aiden isn't buying it and points to the tunnel, ordering her to crawl back in before he brings out the holy water. Later, we see a magic sign on huge doors where Aiden stands with his guards. He's famous across the continent for being incredibly strong, with legends of him standing over defeated warriors and mastering every weapon. He was a total genius and a legendary marksman, but one night while working on spells, he just collapsed. That was his last day, and a guy from another dimension took over his body. Since the new guy used to be a prison guard in his old life, faking the warden job was actually pretty easy for him. The scene moves to a bright cell block where Aiden is doing his rounds. The inmates are screaming insults and challenging him to fights. It's the most intense prison ever, filled with the most dangerous female villains, and the new Aiden is actually pretty scared. A half-animal girl growls at him, a demon girl teases that she wants to steal his soul, and a zombie girl breaks her chains. A dragon girl asks him to hang out, a flirty succubus tries to charm him, and a fish girl mumbles about wanting to catch him. Aiden tells the guards to turn off the lights to calm them down, noticing that his name alone isn't enough to keep order anymore. A woman with snakes for hair smiles evilly and mentions that 3 years ago her poison got into his system and he still hasn't recovered. The guards try to quiet everyone down, but the inmates are hyped, yelling that the warden has lost his touch and can't stop them if they break out. The half-animal girl challenges him to show off his power. Aiden clenches his fist and orders everyone to be quiet. He points his hand at the ceiling, and the building fills with a blinding blinding white light. The prisoners scream because it hurts their eyes, with one complaining about her rights. The half-animal girl quickly says she was just joking. Aiden stresses out internally because he actually has no special powers or cheat codes. After 2 months of studying, he only knows basic tricks like that light spell. He tells the guards to put the troublemakers in the punishment cells. He knows any of them could easily end him, so he's desperate to get the original Aiden's powers back. He hopes he can find a clue from one of the prisoners and prays he stops getting such difficult inmates. Just then, a guard opens a door, and 2 other guards get thrown at Aiden's feet. 2 more guards are struggling with a wild new prisoner, a werewolf girl named Veronica, who is growling and fighting everyone. Aiden sighs, seeing she's a tough case. He reads her file and sees she used to be a police officer but was sentenced to the ultimate penalty after an investigation went wrong. A doctor gives her a sedative to pass her out, and Aiden tells them to take her to the prep room. Aiden asks Captain Rosen to stay behind to discuss the lack of cell space. He explains that the prison is over capacity and a riot might happen soon. Rosen looks at him like he's crazy and asks how Aiden doesn't understand how the system works yet. Rosen explains that keeping over 1,000 long-lived inmate situation. Aiden is left looking completely shocked. Rosen starts by asking Aiden if he remembers the recent protests. Downtown people were everywhere with signs demanding that all magical beings be kicked out of their land. He mentions how one guy tried to stick up for the creatures, asking why they were being cancelled after helping save the world, but the crowd just called him crazy. Rosen explains that the locals see the inmates as villains who are draining the city's budget. They're bitter about struggling while the prisoners get free housing. To the public, the prison is just an evil fortress, and Aiden is the one in charge. Rosen warns that the tension between humans and other species is peaking, and there's even talk of tearing down part of the prison to save money. He tells Aiden that if he doesn't pick a side soon, things are going to end badly for him. Aiden is torn and tells Rosen he refuses to just finish off inmates to make the public happy. Rosen just shrugs and says there's no other choice, even suggesting that Aiden should quit if he can't handle the pressure. The vibe gets really tense as they face off. Rosen reminds Aiden that he's the one who locked these girls up in the first place, causing the overcrowding. He notes that while some politicians want to keep the place open, sacrificing a few inmates would really help calm the public down. Rosen suggests that the new werewolf, Veronica, is the perfect candidate since she's already scheduled for elimination anyway, so moving up the date shouldn't be a big deal. The backstory reveals that magical beings and humans used to be allies against a common threat, which earned the creatures equal rights. But once the conflict ended, people were broke and looking for someone to blame. The elites turned the magical beings into scapegoats, and no one stopped them. The original Aiden eventually gave in. He couldn't maintain his morals in such a mess, so the best he could do was let the doomed inmates choose their final day. Back in the present, Aiden is walking with his assistant, who mentions they're totally out of cell space. Aiden wonders where to put the new girl, while the other inmates continue to yell at him. The assistant remembers that the succubus is currently the only one without a roommate. Aiden is confused because he thought she'd been released, but the assistant explains she went right back to her old troublemaking ways and got her sentence extended by a year. The succubus tries to flirt with Aiden through the bars, offering to let him stay in her cell to discuss her time, but Aiden doesn't fall for it. Instead, he has the medics put Veronica in her cell. The succubus is terrified of her new roommate, but Aiden just tells her to report anything weird and sends the medics home early to be with their families. Later that night, Aiden is busy mixing a potion. He's stressed because a standard sedative won't work on a werewolf during a full moon. In the cell, the succubus is trying to make jokes, but Veronica is staring out the window, fuming about her false conviction. While Aiden is out gathering belladonna berries to use as medicine, the succubus notices Veronica's eyes glowing yellow. The werewolf is feeling the urge to break free, and the succubus starts screaming in a total panic. The next morning, things seem back to normal. Aiden is going through inmate requests, approving a fur brush for a tiger girl but rejecting a request for a weapon from another. The succubus sends in a flirty note asking to be released, which Aiden shuts down immediately. Suddenly, the prison doctor bursts into the office having a panic attack. He yells that he forgot it was a full moon and that the sedative he gave Veronica was way too weak. He's worried the succubus has been finished off, but Aiden is totally calm. They look out the window and see the 2 girls together. The succubus is hugging Veronica and calling her bestie, while Veronica just looks annoyed. The doctor is shocked that they're getting along, but Aiden mentions he watched them all night, and Veronica was actually very chill. The assistant explains that Veronica isn't a normal werewolf. She's from the Crimson Clan. A century ago, a human lord made a huge sacrifice to prove he wanted an alliance with the wolves. Since then, that group of wolves has been incredibly loyal to humans, even using painful methods to control their instincts. The doctor is furious that the city wants to execute someone who tries so hard to fit in. Suddenly, a guard reports a fight in the showers. Aiden grabs his blaster, assuming the doctor was right about her being wild after all. Down in the showers, it's total chaos. Inmates are complaining and blaming Veronica for a sneak attack. Aiden points his blaster at her and asks for the truth. One inmate, Catherine, stirs the pot by saying a crimson wolf will eventually try to take them all out. The other prisoners are scared because their magic is blocked, making them vulnerable. Aiden announces that the drama needs to stay inside the prison and tells everyone he's planning to delay Veronica's execution. He asks her why she isn't fighting back, and she admits she feels like giving up since everyone wants her gone. Aiden remembers Rosen's advice to just eliminate her. He even thinks back to his own dark times when he felt like giving up. Instead of following orders, he fires a warning shot into the air. He tells the crowd there isn't enough proof of her guilt and that wanting to give up isn't a good enough reason to end things. He has the guards take her to the interrogation room. In the interrogation room, Veronica tells Aiden that she was only defending the succubus succubus from 2 girls who were threatening her. Aiden notes that he'll confirm the story later. Veronica then begs him to listen to her side of the tavern incident. She swears she was innocent and was actually investigating a dealer at the time. Aiden points out that a projectile was missing from her gear and that she has no alibi as no one saw her at the cemetery she visited. Veronica gets frustrated, arguing that her history of saving people from monsters and cults should be proof enough of her character. Firmly tells her that past good deeds don't prove her innocence in this case. He warns her that without real evidence, the judges will find her guilty. Completely broken, Veronica realizes that after saving so many lives, she might not be able to save her own. Aiden has the guards take her back, feeling just as down as she is. While Aiden is sitting there overthinking everything, a guard walks in to let him know that the succubus finally woke up. Aiden is about to go check on her, but she just struts right into his office anyway. He asks the guard, Megan, why she brought a prisoner in without a heads up, but the succubus tries to cover for her. Megan just brushes it off, saying she knows Aiden well enough to know he'd want to interrogate her immediately. On her way out, Megan pulls out a bag of gold coins she got as a bribe from the succubus. Turns out the demon girl is actually loaded. Standing by Aiden, the succubus gets super dramatic, insisting that Veronica is 100% innocent. She starts recapping the shower fight, acting like she's a total icon. She explains that 2 other girls were trying to blackmail her, and just when she thought she was done for, Veronica stepped in looking terrifying. She acts out how Veronica punched one girl and dropped the other so hard she couldn't get back up. Aiden tries to get the full story and asks how the succubus ended up knocked out. Totally embarrassed, she admits she literally just slipped on a bar of soap and missed the rest of the fight. Aiden sighs, thinking that's the end of it, but she insists there's more. She gets serious and reveals that her species can jump into people's dreams. She says she sneaked into Veronica's mind while she was sleeping and saw her surrounded by giant, scary judges while she felt totally hopeless. The succubus is convinced Veronica was framed and challenges Aiden to come to the cell tonight to see the dream for himself. Aiden isn't sure if he can trust her not to manipulate the dream and tells her to go back to her cell. She throws a fit, yelling that he's about to let an innocent person take the fall. That one comment triggers Aiden's past trauma. He remembers a previous inmate telling him that while the inmate would pass away peacefully, Aiden would have to live with the guilt of ending an innocent life forever. The memory sends him into a total panic attack. His eyes turn red, and he yells for the guards to drag the succubus away immediately. As she's being pulled out, she yells that she used to look up to him and even had a crush on him, but now she thinks he's useless and regrets paying so much money to get locked up in his prison. Aiden takes off his hat, stressing out about how toxic the whole situation is. Later, his assistant comes back with the case file. Aiden asks for her opinion, and she points out something weird in the crime scene photos. The judge claimed Veronica lost control and blasted the victim, but the assistant notes that when werewolves lose it, they fully transform and use their claws. They never use blasters. She explains that as a trained officer, Veronica definitely had the self-control not to just grab a weapon. Aiden is shocked at how little the file makes sense. The assistant wonders why the warden is suddenly so obsessed with this case, and Aiden admits that letting an innocent person face the ultimate penalty is his biggest fear. Fast forward to the full moon. The succubus is having a wild, romantic dream and making noise in her sleep until an inmate in the next cell tells her to shut up. Suddenly, the warden is standing there. The succubus gasps, wondering if she's still dreaming, and almost lunges at him, but Aiden covers her mouth. He tells her to chill and explains he's only there to prove the werewolf is innocent. She's totally down to help and mentions it's the perfect time to hack into Veronica's mind since she's in a deep sleep. Standing by Veronica's bed, Aiden gives the succubus a look, noting she doesn't usually help people. She claps back, saying Veronica had her back and she isn't completely toxic. She takes Veronica's hand and asks Aiden if he's ready, warning him that she can't fake the memories he's about to see. She then teleports his consciousness straight into Veronica's mind. Inside the dream, it's a total nightmare. There are weapons everywhere and fallen werewolves. A guy with a huge blade is laughing, saying the rumors were true that Crimson Wolves refused to fight back. A young Veronica is there, crying and begging her family to defend themselves, but the wolves protect her with a human shield, insisting they promise never to cause harm. Little Veronica runs for help but is grabbed by giant wooden hands belonging to a judge that looks like a massive puppet. He promises to find the people who attacked her clan while she cries. Suddenly, the judge and his desk grow to an insane size, making Veronica look tiny in her chain. His eyes turn red, and he starts aggressively blaming her, demanding to know why she attacked an innocent person. She screams that she didn't do it, but she shrinks even more as 3 evil judges surround her. They accuse her of holding a grudge over her clan's fate and taking it out on citizens, threatening her with intense consequences. She tries to defend herself, but they just slam their gavels, ignoring her and officially sentencing her to the end. Veronica is stuck in this brutal loop. Gavels are slamming down while judges yell that she can't fight her instincts. In a total panic, she screams about the injustice. Aiden snaps back to reality, covering his face. The succubus stands over her, explaining she had to pull Aiden out because Veronica's emotions were getting too unstable and she was about to wake up. Aiden is stressed, admitting the case is way deeper than he thought. The succubus thinks he can just clear her name, but Aiden explains that his word isn't enough for the court. He mentions the only way to prove she's innocent is if the victim could testify. Then it hits him. He realizes he can talk to spirits. He remembers Asura, a necromancer in his prison who can talk to the other side. But just then, they hear someone greeting a politician outside. Aiden wonders why Senator Anthony is there so late. He walks out and finds the senator at a desk. Aiden points out that a midnight visit is going to start some rumors, but the senator just tells him to mind his own business and stop investigating outside cases. He gets straight to the point, the prison's funding is only safe if Aiden permanently gets rid of the werewolf. Aiden is shocked he's just now hearing about this ultimatum. Anthony mentions the rumors about Aiden looking into the case. Since Anthony owns the local newspaper, he has intel on everything. He tosses a paper onto the desk with a headline praising Aiden for capturing a dangerous werewolf. Anthony explains he's been pushing this hero narrative and expects Aiden to follow the script. He reminds him that the original Aiden used to take down villains to keep the peace. He says if Aiden plays the hero, the council will support the prison. Aiden argues that the judge rushed the verdict and the case is full of holes, but Anthony loses it. He yells that the court made no mistakes and warns that challenging them will make the council pull their support. He claims he doesn't want to block justice, but says now isn't the time. He tells Aiden he needs to choose between being a public hero or fighting for one trial. Aiden just looks down while Anthony tells him to be patient, claiming the city is full of unfair sentences and he just needs to wait it out. As a thunderstorm rolls in, Aiden sits at his desk thinking. He slowly grabs his cane and walks over to a hidden cabinet in his bookshelves. He unlocks it with a secret code and the shelf slides open. Grabbing a lantern, he heads down a very long, dark staircase. From the bottom of the stairs, a faint female voice asks if he's plotting something reckless. Aiden is totally thrown, wondering how she already knew he was there. He sets his lantern on a shelf and the voice explains that people usually look for their closest friends when they're facing a tough choice. As he gets closer, she claims she's the only one who truly understands him. In this massive underground room, Aiden looks tiny compared to the giant half-bird woman chained up. She has huge white wings, a halo, and flowers in her hair, but she's heavily secured to the floor with massive stakes and chains. She pulls against her restraints to get a better look at him and asks why he's visiting again. He tells her he's investigating a case and she finishes his sentence, pointing out that he has no idea how much drama this is going to cause. Aiden sarcastically asks if she always knows everything. He walks over to a giant board game and she challenges him to a match. If he wins, she'll give him the advice he needs. He agrees to play against Melophilia, the goddess of spells. Aiden has to use his whole body weight just to move the heavy pieces. As they play, Melophilia teases him for not focusing. He ignores her and mentions that her warning makes sense. He suspects someone powerful is pulling the strings behind the werewolf setup. He explains how the guards took a fake case, the judge rushed the verdict, and now they're using the prison budget to pressure him into finishing off Veronica. The goddess starts laughing hysterically. She asks if he ever realized why this massive silver prison was built in the first place. She explains that the entire facility and all the magic seals were created specifically to keep her locked up. She reveals that as long as she's chained there, the prison isn't going anywhere. All the threats about shutting it down are just political stunts to get votes, so he's basically obligated to keep her safe. Aiden is completely mind blown. She adds that if she ever actually broke out, the prison would really be demolished. Leaning on his cane, Aiden admits he's ended an innocent person's run before and refuses to feel that guilt again. She calls him weak and says that without magic allies, he'll never win. He reveals his plan. He's going to borrow the powers of 3 inmates he's connected with, staying anonymous while letting them do the heavy lifting. She warns him that manipulating inmates is way different than having a real squad and asks if he can handle the backlash. Aiden realizes that since he approves inmate requests every day, he can figure out what they want and use that to keep them loyal. The goddess sarcastically asks if he has enough time to pull this off. Aiden decides he can use their abilities once he studies their files to learn their skills. He visualizes trading favors for their powers, imagining himself on a throne where every inmate is a unique solution to his problems. A game piece hits the edge, signaling a check. The goddess asks if he knows the penalty for losing to her, making Aiden break into a sweat. She laughs and admits she's just trolling him. She says that no one can beat her at mind games and says she's letting him win today, but next time they're playing airplane chess. He heads back upstairs and she reminds him that she used a lot of energy to bring his spirit back to life, so he better not let her down. At sunset, Aiden opens a cell door. Asena, the necromancer, mentions she heard about his late-night visit to the succubus. She's an S-tier danger serving a life sentence for grave robbing and illegal experiments. She tells him she knows he wants her to summon a spirit, but she's annoyed because she just did him a favor and wants to finish her book. She tosses him a creepy pendant and tells him to do it himself, explaining he has to activate it near the remains. Aiden is shocked she's allowed to have something so dangerous, but she reminds him her contract lets her keep her accessories. She tries to show him how it works but almost drops it. Aiden catches it and a massive purple skull shadow appears. Asena gets flustered and apologizes, warning him not to touch the skeleton because it's cursed. She thinks he's going to be furious, remembering how the original Aiden defeated her years ago. She tells him to leave, but Aiden just mentions he heard she finished all her books and promises to bring her some new bestsellers. Asena is left speechless by how understanding he is. Later, at a cemetery, Aiden is trying to summon a spirit from a grave, but he only finds an urn of ashes. The pendant doesn't seem to work on cremated remains. He keeps trying until the graveyard keeper comes out yelling, but when the keeper sees what's happening, he screams about ghosts and runs away. Aiden realizes he's surrounded by spirits he accidentally woke up. He apologizes, realizing he underestimated the pendant, but he still needs a plan B for the ashes. Suddenly, Suddenly, the spirit of the tavern owner rises. Aiden asks her to name her attacker, but she says her time is running out. Before she can give a name, she vanishes in a flash of light. In that flash, Aiden sees a vision of a guy threatening the owner, claiming he'll expose her husband's shady business. She begs him to let her go, but the guy, who is wearing a mounted guard badge, takes the shot. The vision ends with her spirit begging for justice. Aiden is frustrated that he didn't get a name, but he analyzes the clues. The attacker was in a guard uniform and likely framed the werewolf by taking a round from her gear. This means the person had access to the armory. He heads to the guard station to meet the armory keeper, a frail-looking guy named Bruce. Aiden plays it cool, pretending his gear is broken. He mentions that gear rotting without a round inside is a sad sight, and Bruce immediately panics. He stammers that he's too busy to help, and Aiden leaves, realizing Bruce doesn't match the build from the vision but is definitely hiding something. At the stables, another guard asks Bruce why he's so depressed and where he got all his new cash. Bruce tells him to get lost. He's stressing over Aiden's comment when he hears the graveyard keeper telling everyone about the ghosts and a guy they all worship, Aiden, at the cemetery. Bruce panics and runs home to hide. Crows watch him from the window, sending a live feed to a magic orb Aiden is holding. Aiden tells the witch in the next cell, Daly, that he's using the birds to watch Bruce. Daly is a high-tier witch locked up for leading a radical group. She acts arrogant at first, but then remembers she's his prisoner and surrenders jokingly. Aiden tells her he wants to help the inmates adjust to the food and offers to buy them fancy desserts, specifically asking if she wants a cream pie. The witch starts drooling, telling him everyone is going to love him for that. Later that night, a fire is crackling in Aiden's office. The magic orb on his desk is streaming a live feed of Bruce's house. Aiden is trying to read through Celine's file, but he's getting restless because nothing is happening. Deciding to turn up the heat, he tosses the file down and decides it's time to let the Celine help out. Over at Bruce's place, he's sleep-talking until a weird noise wakes him up. He tries to tell himself it's just someone upstairs dropping a glass, but then he remembers he lives in a one-story house. He's officially terrified. Suddenly, a creepy clump of hair appears out of nowhere. Bruce screams and dives under his blankets, praying it's just a bad dream, but the creature slides under the covers, grabs his face, and whispers that it's deeply offended. Bruce completely loses it, sprints out of his house in nothing but his underwear, and runs through the streets begging for help. Watching the whole thing through the orb, Aiden notes that people always show their true colors when they're in danger. We see a flashback of Aiden visiting Silene's cell. He threatens to burn her creepy teddy bear unless she helps him. The Silene, a pale girl with a neck scar, begs him to stop since she already did what he asked. Her file says she's a B-tier undead threat who can enter the spirit world using a voodoo doll. Aiden promises not to touch the doll, explaining he just needs to keep her in check. She calls him toxic for using inmates for his own agenda, but he defends himself, saying he's just trying to find actual justice. He mentions he knows she sacrificed everything to avenge her son and hopes she eventually finds peace before he leaves with the doll. Meanwhile, Bruce is still running through the streets in his underwear, screaming that a ghost is chasing him. Someone yanks him into a dark alley. It's Jalon, a guy with a mounted guard badge. Jalon threatens him, asking if he wants the whole town to know their secret. Bruce is just relieved it's not a ghost. Jalon is convinced a rogue necromancer is just testing spells on Bruce and reminds him that they're both in deep. He warns Bruce that if Veronica gets out, she'll come for revenge. Jalon mutters that working with an idiot like Bruce is literal torture. They head to a massive mansion protected by a magic barrier that destroys dark spirits. Bruce is impressed, but Jalon just looks at him with disgust. He warns Bruce that if he wants to stay in power, he has to get used to stepping on people. While Bruce sits there confused, the purple ghost shadow flashes by outside the gates. Back in the interrogation room, Aiden asks Veronica if she remembers Jalon. She flashes back to a time at the stables, when Jalon offered her a promotion if she'd spend a few nights with him. Veronica didn't hesitate. She twisted his hand until he begged for mercy and told him exactly what she thought of his offer. Jalon was furious and called her shameless. Veronica tells Aiden that rejecting him is the real reason she's behind bars. Aiden realizes Jalon is just a corrupt rich guy who ruins anyone he can't control, and he decides it's time to end the game. Aiden visits another cell where a massive shadow looms inside. He tells the creature that nobody responds to her letters because they drive people insane. He asks for her help to flush a coward out of his safe house, promising her a second chance in return. This is inmate 13, a blue-skinned creature with tentacles who communicates through cursed letters. Soon after, a bird crashes through Bruce's window and drops a letter covered in weird symbols. The letter bursts into flames, and Bruce starts hallucinating. He looks out the window and thinks the city looks demonic. He runs downstairs screaming to Jalon that the world is ending. Jalon is confused and tells his butler to grab him. Bruce runs outside and sees giant tentacles in a green sky. He hallucinated the tavern owner's ghost again and starts screaming to the whole street that he didn't do it. He yells that Jalon was the one who pulled the trigger. Jalon pulls out a blaster and aims at Bruce. He fires, grazing Bruce's ear, but his next shot misses because the creepy bird dive bombs him. Suddenly, a whole flock of ravens swarms Jalon. Bruce sprints away, still hallucinating. He slips and falls into what he thinks is an open grave with Veronica's name on it. He sees an army of spirits and panics, but in reality, he's just screaming at regular people on the street who think he's crazy. He eventually breaks down in tears and ends up kneeling in front of Aiden's desk back at the prison. Bruce confesses everything, admitting Jalon paid him to frame Veronica and that he was the one who swapped the ammo. He volunteers to be the star witness, and Aiden promises to keep him safe in a cell while he goes to deal with Jalon. As Jalon tries to make a run for it, Aiden watches through the orb and praises his crow for the intel. The prison gates swing open, and Aiden rides out on a horse, canceling all his meetings. Back in the cells, the inmates are talking. Daly the witch points points out that Aiden was actually scared at the graveyard and isn't as invincible as he looks. Her eyes turn reptilian as she spots a guy hiding in a tree outside, noting that Aiden is walking straight into a trap. The guy in the tree is waiting to test Aiden's skills. Down in the cells, Veronica's werewolf senses go off. She yells that the warden is in danger because she recognizes the attacker's scent. The succubus backs her up, and Aiden's assistant steps in, ordering the guards to release Veronica since she's basically been proven innocent anyway. The other inmates start complaining about the special treatment, and the succubus brags that she's Aiden's official girlfriend just to mess with them. On the road, ravens are swarming Jaylon, slowing him down. Aiden catches up and knocks him into the dirt with his cane, sarcastically asking where he's going. Suddenly, an arrow hits a tree, and a guy swings down, taking out Aiden's horse with a huge blade. The attacker is a bounty hunter named White, who's rocking a tricorn hat and a scar. He tells Jaylon to run and brags that taking out the legendary warden is going to make him incredibly rich. White charges at Aiden, yelling that it's over, but Aiden effortlessly dodges, leaving White stabbing the dirt. White manages to land a kick to Aiden's ribs and prepares for a finishing blow, but suddenly Veronica comes leaping across the rooftops. She slams into White's magic shield with so much force that his protective amulet shatters and the shield breaks. A frustrated White backs off while Aiden, totally confused, asks how she even got out. She tells him to go after Jaylon while she deals with the hunter. White is furious and asks if she has any idea who she's messing with, but she dodges his blade easily. White throws a smoke bomb, bragging about how he used to hunt werewolves for fun and realizing she's the one who escaped him years ago. Veronica uses her elite senses to track him through the smoke. She attacks a silhouette, but it's just a decoy, his cloak on a stick. Smirking from a tree, White tosses a magic vial that turns him into a terrifying, multi-faced monster. He complains about having to use his best move on her instead of Aiden as he fires a barrage of arrows. The impact forces Veronica to fully transform, growing fur, glowing eyes, and massive claws. Meanwhile, Jaylon is sprinting through the city, terrified and looking over his shoulder for Aiden. He screams that not even a bounty hunter could stop the warden as he shoves people aside. Not paying attention, he face plants into a wood cart and ends up on the ground with a bloody nose right at Aiden's feet. Aiden casually points out that Jaylon is trapped and just added attacking an official to his list of problems. He asks if they're doing this the easy way or the hard way, while the locals watch in confusion. Jaylon reaches for a hidden blaster, but Aiden is faster and levels his revolver at him. Aiden pulls the trigger, but nothing happens. It's empty. Jaylon starts mocking him for trying to act tough with an unloaded gun. Aiden is genuinely confused because he thought he was ready to go. Jaylon tries to draw his weapon again, but Aiden just chucks the empty gun at his face, uses a flash of light magic to blind him, and pulls a hidden blade from his cane. With one quick move, he disarms Jaylon and holds the blade to his throat. Jaylon immediately starts crying and making excuses, swearing he's innocent. The gossip spreads instantly as people realize Lord Aiden just arrested the wealthy Jaylon. The crowd is confused, but Jaylon tries to turn them against Aiden, claiming the warden is the real criminal. Jaylon challenges Aiden, asking how he expects to get away with this in front of everyone. Aiden gives him one final warning to shut up, but Jaylon pulls a hidden sleeve blade and lunges at him, screaming that they'll see who loses. Suddenly, a loud blast rings out, and Jaylon hits the ground. Aiden spins around to see a guy with a blaster standing behind Jaylon's body. The crowd is terrified, but Aiden recognizes the shooter and remembers that Jaylon was the secret son of a powerful politician, which is why everyone feared him. The guy tells the crowd that the investigation proved Veronica was framed by Jaylon. He explains that despite his connections, Jaylon couldn't outrun justice forever. After the speech, he bows to Aiden and asks for a private word. Later, Jaylon's powerful father, Anthony, completely breaks down in front of Aiden. He drops to his knees, crying about how he should have been a stricter parent. The locals are shocked to see such a huge politician acting so humble. Suddenly, a massive boom shakes the ground like an earthquake. Aiden knows it's Veronica and sprints back to the forest. Meanwhile, Anthony's eyes are bloodshot as he silently plots his revenge. Back at the forest, the area looks like a war zone, scorched and covered in smoke. Aiden feels someone grab his ankle and looks down to see White pinned under a massive fallen tree. White begs for help, but Aiden asks why he should help someone who literally just tried to end him. White tries to argue that as an officer, Aiden has to be fair. He remembers his boss, Anthony, promising that if he got caught, Aiden would be a hero and put him in a comfy cell. But as the tree crushes him, White realizes Aiden isn't that kind of hero. Aiden stays silent, and White begs him to use magic to lift the tree before his spine snaps. Aiden pulls his hidden blade, his shadow looming over the trapped hunter. He coldly tells him he doesn't know any spells like that and reveals that the noble Lord Aiden is already gone. White screams in terror, finally realizing why Aiden's fighting style felt so different, but he's shocked to hear the original warden is gone. Aiden sarcastically tells him to say hi to his boss before finishing him off. Aiden starts calling for Veronica, who is hiding in the bushes. She desperately tells him to stay back because her clothes were ruined during her transformation. Aiden doesn't get it and walks closer anyway. Totally embarrassed, she apologizes for the mess and tries to cover up with some fabric, but she accidentally rips it even more. Hearing people approaching, Aiden quickly tosses her his coat and tells her they have to move. As they walk back, Aiden asks if her transformation is over. She notices some patches of fur and explains she won't be normal until her heart rate drops. Aiden gives her his hat and admits he expected her to turn into a giant werewolf. Veronica sheepishly confesses that her transformations are always incomplete, which made her a target for bullies back in her village. She smiles, remembering how her grandma used to chase the bullies away with a broom. Veronica gets nostalgic about her home and her mom, admitting she regrets moving to Silver City. Aiden agrees that her genuine personality doesn't fit the city's toxic vibe and asks why she doesn't just go back. Veronica admits she can't because she bragged about becoming a big city hero and doesn't want to return as a failure. Suddenly, they hear a voice complaining about the poorly dressed people on the street. They see a large group looking for Rose Prison. In the crowd, Veronica spots a woman with a baby who has her exact blue hair. She freezes, realizing it's her people. The villagers look exhausted, talking about how worried they were after not hearing from her. Veronica remembers the day she left, how everyone cheered for her, and how she promised to come back rich and treat them to a fancy dinner. Standing with Aiden, Veronica waves and yells to the crowd. The villagers are thrilled to see her. She jumps into the crowd, hugging her grandma and blushing with happiness. When she asks how they got there, they explain they heard a rumor that she was locked up, and since they don't have a post office, they just decided to walk for 2 weeks to find her. Veronica looks down, and it totally breaks her heart to see that everyone's shoes are completely shredded and their feet are covered in cuts. One of the women mentions how shocked they were by the arrest, and a guy adds that as soon as the news reached the village, they packed their bags to come handle business. Watching from the side, Aiden realizes he never expected Veronica to be such an emotional softie. Totally embarrassed, she hides her face and begs him not to laugh at her. The villagers then turn on Aiden, yelling at him for locking her up, but he stays perfectly chill and explains it was just a big misunderstanding and that she's officially cleared of everything. The villagers are confused because they can't imagine Veronica ever doing anything wrong. Suddenly, a rich guy with a mustache starts talking trash, calling the villagers garbage and saying they don't know how to act in the city. The girl with him makes a face and says people like them belong in the slums. The vibe gets so toxic the baby starts crying. One of the village women sighs and says they should probably just head home since Veronica is safe. A younger guy excitedly brings up her promise to buy them a meal, but an older villager immediately shuts him down, saying she's a fancy city girl now and shouldn't have to hang out with country folks. The grandma tells Veronica to stay safe and says they're going to take off. Veronica wants to stop them but hesitates. Aiden steps in and invites the whole village to stay in the city for a few days since they traveled so far. He then asks Veronica if she checked the pockets of the coat he lent her. She's confused until she reaches in and pulls out a massive pile of gold coins. She's stunned to find 30 gold pieces, an absolute fortune. When she shows the gold to the villagers, their minds are blown. Veronica is incredibly grateful and tries to thank Aiden, but he just tells her to take her squad to the best restaurant downtown and have a massive feast. Just then, the prison guards come sprinting up, and Aiden's assistant is gasping for air, relieved he's okay. He casually mentions he was about to grab dinner with Veronica's friends, which totally confuses his assistant. Aiden then throws some major shade at the snobby couple, loudly stating that some people are just miserable and have nothing better to do than hate on others. She totally catches the vibe. She grabs her blaster and starts aggressively reloading it while death staring the couple. The rich guy and his girlfriend panic and sprint away. Aiden tells Veronica to keep the gold as an apology for everything. She gives him a real, genuine smile before looking down shyly. The guards offer to escort the villagers, genuinely surprised that Veronica has such a huge squad backing her up. Before she leaves, Veronica turns back to look at Aiden one last time. He's leaning on his cane, watching over the city, and she pulls his oversized coat tight around her, burying her face in the collar. The scene shifts as dice roll across a table. Veronica's case wrapped up much smoother than expected. During his trial, the politician Anthony didn't even hire a lawyer. He just sat there in total silence. We see him walking through the pouring rain, looking completely defeated because his career is over. Someone yells at him not to even think about an appeal and to just accept his prison sentence. It turns out Anthony didn't even try to help his own son. He was actually the one who took him out from behind to kill the investigation. Aiden and his assistant watch Anthony getting soaked, noting how the once arrogant man has totally fallen. Aiden guesses Anthony was either terrified of the scandal or hiding something even darker that a trial would have exposed. But the full truth is buried now. With the case officially closed, Veronica bows to Aiden and his assistant and heads home with her village squad, deciding it's better to stay away from the toxic city for good. Back in the hidden basement, Aiden moves a piece on the giant board. The goddess asks if the inmates who helped him get their rewards. Aiden confirms he has their wish lists and will be delivering the goods soon. He's surprised the goddess cares about the inmates, but she flashes an evil smile and says she only cares about his strategy. She points out that he's balancing a lot, managing a fallen politician while keeping up his own cold reputation. She explains that playing the long game isn't a weakness and tells him that learning to manipulate the inmates is the only way he'll survive. She warns him that the game is about to get way more intense. In the prison cafeteria, the cook is dishing out soup. A Gorgon girl in line complains about Daly the witch showing up for breakfast, especially since Daly usually sleeps in. When it's her turn, Daly acts all sweet and asks for a different breakfast, claiming her stomach is upset. The other inmates lose it, yelling that she can eat the food or starve. The cook, casually smoking, mentions they actually have something special today. She hands Daly a massive, fancy cream cake and explains the warden ordered it to help new inmates adjust. The cafeteria goes dead silent in shock, and then everyone starts screaming that they want cake too. Daly just walks away with her dessert, thinking everyone else is a total loser. In the library, Asana the necromancer is looking for something new to read. A girl with pink hair tells her the selection is all outdated trash, but the librarian mentions a brand new arrival that hasn't been shelved yet. The pink-haired girl tries to claim it, but Asana snatches it and runs. When she finally stops to look at it, she realizes it's a super rare banned romance novel called The Desire of a Beast of Prey, full of stories about buff animal guys. Asana gets totally flustered just reading the first page. Down in the cells, the tentacle creature is gripping the bars. A girl with green hair named Jalala, a forest elf, shows up and says the warden sent her to translate. The creature mumbles something, and Jalala explains that as an empath, she can perfectly understand the creature's emotions. Suddenly, the creature shoots its tentacles through the bars and pulls the elf into a massive hug. Jalala is shocked but tries to stay cool, telling the creature she appreciates the love but really needs to be let down because things are getting a bit too slimy. In the showers, the succubus is minding her own business when a pirate girl and a horse thief corner her. They notice a bag of coins on a shelf and assume she brought it to pay them off for protection. They tell her it would be much easier to just hand over the cash instead of making them take it by force. Suddenly, a voice from the shadows interrupts them, and two massive figures step out, declaring that the money definitely isn't for the bullies. The pirate and the thief freeze when they see Philippa the tigress and Camilla the dragon ready for a fight. The succubus starts laughing like a movie villain. She flashes back to the night she helped Aiden enter Veronica's dream. Before leaving his office, she reminded him that he officially owed her a huge favor. Aiden asked if she wasn't just helping to be nice, and she admitted that wasn't the case at all. She pointed out that he was way too busy to punish the girls who jumped her in the showers, so she asked him to just look the other way while she handled it herself. Aiden paused for a second and then told her to just try not to go overboard. Back in the present, the succubus gives the bullies a cold look and orders her new bodyguards to wreck them. The two bullies turn pale and start apologizing like crazy, but the succubus's laugh echoes through the prison as they beg for mercy. She sarcastically asks if they really thought she was an easy target and promises them a lesson they won't forget. Meanwhile, at his mansion, Anthony is plotting. His butler is visibly shaking and asks if he's really sure about this. Anthony, staring at a photo of his late son, coldly tells the butler to find the Queen of the Ants and let her know her daughter is locked up in Rose Prison. The butler panics, knowing the queen is famous for her twisted human experiments, but Anthony is dead set on making Aiden pay for what happened. Cut to a bright forest where green butterflies are everywhere. Jalala the elf is introducing herself. She describes the ideal forest elf as tall, wise, and elegant with a glowing bow, but then we see reality. She's actually super short, looks like a kid, and is just wandering down a boring prison hallway. She brags that she gets special treatment because she's so cute. She thinks back to her arrest. She actually fell asleep in her house while it was surrounded by a massive fire. She complains that her totally illegal botanical business really took a hit because of that bust. A flashback shows Aiden holding her by her ponytail after the raid. He was genuinely shocked she was running a whole cartel, but he notes she seems to be enjoying prison life. In the hallway, Aiden's assistant tells Jalala not to trip as she walks by. The guards are strict with everyone else, but they treat Jalala like the prison mascot. Other inmates even call her an adorable little carrot, which annoys her. Most people don't realize that being an empath makes her a great translator, but it also means nobody takes her seriously. Jalala stops by the cell of number 13, the water creature, to see what it needs. Her eyes go wide as she realizes the creature is complaining about being dangerously constipated. She knows these creatures get violent when they're stressed, and she imagines number 13 exploding and starting a prison-wide riot that ends the world. He gets totally lost in her own dramatic daydream. Aiden walks up and startles her, asking if she's finished with the translation. She gasps, wondering how he's so quiet. Aiden mentions he has another interview for her, though he's not sure she can handle it. Jalala brags that she's a pro at reading people, but her confidence vanishes when she meets the inmate. Later, she tells Aiden she's traumatized. She explains that normally everything has vibes, even rocks and skeletons, but the girl in the cell, Evange, had absolutely nothing. Jalala says she started wondering if Evange was even alive, describing her as a machine with zero thoughts or feelings. Aiden sighs, realizing it's going to be a long process to get through to her. While Aiden unlocks the cell, Jalala notices his finger is banded. He just brushes it off as a scratch. He sits across from Evange and starts reading her the story of Cinderella. Jalala is beyond confused, wondering why the warden is giving a legendary villain story time. She thinks he's trying to turn her into a normal kid, but figures teaching a bear to ride a bike would be easier. In the city, a hooded woman is trying to sell some shady potions in the street. Then Anthony's butler steps in and invites the merchant inside, telling her he knows exactly how to get her daughter out of Rose Prison. The merchant thinks it's a jailbreak, but the butler says they want her to get arrested on purpose so she can break her daughter out from the inside. The merchant gets furious, thinking he's trying to trap her, but Anthony walks in and tells her to listen. He promises they have a perfect plan and points out that they both hate Aiden. He hands her a secret file with the prison's layout and guard routes. He explains that his agents will sabotage the magic barriers and reduce the guard count to make it easy. The merchant, who is actually the Ant Queen in disguise, laughs and says a ruined politician like Anthony clearly has a bigger boss behind him. She doesn't care though. She chugs a potion and her body starts shaking. Pink magic surrounds her, and she transforms from an old woman into a stunning girl with black hair. She decides to use the fake name Mary and get arrested for smuggling. Inside the prison, Evange is reading, waiting for her mom to show up. Outside, Aiden's assistant is enjoying a sandwich when she notices shadows following her. She tries to stay cool, thinking it's wild for someone to jump her in the middle of the day. Suddenly, a guy sprints at her. She drops her sandwich and pulls her blaster, aiming it right at his head, but the guy just drops to his knees with a bouquet of flowers and asks her to marry him. She chokes on her food and tells him she's already married. The guy is crushed and runs away crying, leaving the guys hiding in the alley feeling super bad for him. Back at the office, Aiden sees a viral newspaper article about his recent revenge against the politician's son. The assistant is blushing as she explains the article doesn't just talk about security, it calls the guards the ultimate Valkyries and every man's dream. Aiden notes that if it's getting people to read the news, it's good marketing. He figures since the job makes it hard for the guards to date, the viral fame might might actually help them out. Just then, there's a knock at the door and a guard walks in with a thick envelope. Aiden is currently looking over a folder about the Imperial Women's Prison and notices the guard is applying for a transfer there. She confirms it, and Aiden, totally understanding that the Imperial Prison has way better pay and perks than Silver City, signs her papers without a second thought. She thanks him and heads out, but then the prison doctor bursts in without even knocking. He's waving a letter and screaming about a massive job offer he just got from a top medical institute. Aiden is beyond confused. Everyone is suddenly quitting on the exact same day. That night, a mysterious hooded guy is lurking outside the prison walls. Inside, the inmates are getting restless, complaining that there are barely any guards on duty and feeling totally disrespected. The two guards left in the hall try to quiet them down, but back in the office, Aiden and his assistant are speechless. There's a massive line of guards and medics wrapped around Aiden's desk. He asks if every single one of them really got recruited. One guard brags about a private security gig for a billionaire, while another says she's joining an elite honor guard. The line stretches out the door and all the way down the hall. People are shouting from the back. Some are complaining about the wait, others are telling Aiden to hurry up and sign their papers, and most are just hyped to be leaving. They're gossiping about 5-star dinners and being scouted by top firms. The assistant is panicking because she knows that losing this much staff is a recipe for a prison riot. She tries to plead with the crowd, getting super emotional and begging them to stay just one more month so they can hire new people, but they completely ignore her. They argue that their new bosses need them to start tomorrow. They start venting about how toxic the job is, claiming that being around monsters all day is ruining their mental health and that the cafeteria food is basically dog food compared to their new job. They get aggressive with the assistant, calling her selfish for trying to trap them in a dead-end job when they're about to get rich. They even threaten to walk out without their last paycheck if Aiden doesn't sign. Aiden slams his hand on the desk to get everyone to shut up. He calls them all impatient children and tells them to remember the badge they wear. He reminds them that their job keeps millions of people safe and that the least they can do is finish their shift properly. The guards respond by taking off their helmets and throwing them on the floor in protest. Aiden stays silent as it hits him. The viral news article and the mass walkout were both part of Anthony's plan for revenge. The hallway is a mess, littered with abandoned uniforms and gear. In the cell blocks, Philippa the Tigress is shaking her bars and demanding breakfast. The inmates are getting suspicious, wondering where everyone went. The few guards left try to keep order, but the tension is peaking. Aiden and his assistant stand by the statue outside, looking at the open prison gates. He admits that if the guards aren't back by now, they're gone for good. The assistant is terrified, because they have almost no security left, and if the inmates find out, it's going to be a bloodbath. Suddenly, a girl hiding behind the gate steps out, blushing. It's Veronica, and she nervously asks if they're hiring. The assistant is shocked to see her back. Veronica awkwardly explains that the villagers told her to come back because she'd been bragging about how much she was learning from Aiden. She notices the place feels like a ghost town and asks if she picked a bad time. Right then, a terrified guard runs out of the building screaming that the inmates are starting a massive riot and they can't stop them. Inside, snakes are already slithering through the bars. Medusa the Gorgon yells that since there are fewer than 100 guards left, it's the perfect time to break out. Philippa the Tigress grins, realizing they outnumber the guards 10 to 1. Inmates start demanding the cells be opened, threatening the remaining staff. Jalala the elf is completely overwhelmed by the dark energy and the vibe of the rebellion. She hides under her bed, feeling terrible for Aiden. Suddenly, Aiden appears in the doorway. A panicked guard tells him things are out of control. The succubus begs Aiden to protect her, but then she spots a werewolf shadow behind him and tells Veronica to go home before she gets hurt. But Veronica steps forward, buckling a guard belt over a new uniform. Aiden casually asks which inmates are the main troublemakers. The succubus is stunned that her old roommate is now a guard. The guard lists the names, and Philippa the Tigress sarcastically asks who thinks they can handle her. She laughs at Veronica, asking if Aiden is really so desperate that he's hiring stray werewolves. The assistant tells Veronica she needs to establish her authority immediately. She points to the main troublemakers, and the inmates just laugh because the new girl doesn't even have a weapon drawn. One inmate calls her arrogant and threatens to tear her apart. In the blink of an eye, Veronica wrecks them. She pins one under her boot, drops the second with a punch, and slams Medusa into the floor by her hair. The whole trio is knocked out cold. Veronica looks around and asks if anyone else wants to go next, and the whole block goes silent. The guard next to Aiden is amazed that someone who looks so fragile is that powerful. Aiden explains that Veronica was a top student at the police academy and had to be stronger than everyone else just to get by because of the bias against magical creatures. Her file shows she's only 21, but has a 100% success rate on 140 missions. The succubus is thrilled her friend is a guard and starts blowing her kisses and flirting, but the assistant warns Veronica not to fall for the inmates' mind games. Suddenly, they hear slow clapping. A guy with a long mustache walks in. It's Treasurer Doug. He's already crunching numbers, explaining that since so many people quit, the prison's budget just dropped from 800,000 to 600,000 pounds. The assistant is horrified because the magic barrier alone costs 650,000 pounds a month to run. Basically, they're broke, and the dome that keeps the city safe is about to go dark. A vampire inmate looks super annoyed while checking out a chart showing the costs for food and supplies. It turns out only 150,000 is left to cover everything else. She complains that she better not be forced to go vegan because she literally needs fresh blood to keep going. Another chart breaks down building repairs, showing that 55,000 goes towards silver and magic runes to fix the walls the inmates keep smashing. One worker is caught complaining about all the overtime she has to pull just to patch up the holes. Then there's the security budget, 15,000 a month for guard guard salaries and gear. The problem is staring everyone in the face. Fernanda, the assistant, tries to keep her cool while pointing out that even with 0 guards on the payroll, a 600,000 budget can't possibly keep the magic barrier running. She tells the treasurer that a 200,000 cut is totally ridiculous. The treasurer just holds up his hand and tells her she's missing the point. He claims the barrier doesn't need to be at max power all the time because Lord Aiden is so strong. He smugly suggests a weaker barrier is fine since they have him. Fernanda is absolutely fuming, screaming that weakening the barrier puts the whole city at risk, but he just brushes her off. He tells her he trusts Aiden's strength to make up the difference, then formally states that the council has total faith in the warden before heading out. Fernanda turns to Aiden, asking what the plan is, but internally, Aiden is spiraling. His mind is a total blank, and he's low-key panicking because the situation is a mess. To save face, he announces that Fernanda is officially promoted to temporary warden and will handle all the prison business while he's busy with other things. She's completely shocked. Aiden just rubs his temples, realizing he desperately needs a minute to think. Later, Fernanda is strutting down the hall looking like an absolute boss. She's rocking a sharp white suit, tall boots, and a blaster. The few guards left are impressed, noting that nobody has worn the deputy warden uniform in forever. Fernanda announces she's in charge for now, while the pirate and the horse thief watch from their cell. The pirate is surprised Aiden would just step back, and the thief guesses he probably just couldn't handle the heat. As Fernanda walks the block, the inmates start heckling her, laughing and saying the warden ran away. They mock the guards for staying on for such low pay. Fernanda asks Aiden if this is some kind of massive conspiracy, and he confirms that none of this is a coincidence. Fernanda realizes with horror that the resignations, the budget cuts, and the barrier issues are all a coordinated hit on the prison. She figures out that Senator Anthony isn't working alone. There's a whole network of corrupt elites behind this. The fact that the treasurer personally showed up to deliver the bad news makes her realize they are fighting a shadow network, and it's honestly terrifying. To get things back under control, Fernanda orders the guards to give the pirate and the thief 20 hits each. The guards agree, but they're secretly making fun of her behind her back. The inmates aren't scared either, promising to ruin her life once they break out. Fernanda then tells the guard to give the baton to Veronica so she can handle the punishment. Veronica is totally caught off guard and nervously asks if she has to pay for the baton if she accidentally breaks it on them. The two inmates start screaming in pure terror. They know a werewolf hitting them 20 times is basically a death sentence. They cry that Aiden was never this mean, but Fernanda just tells them that nobody cares if they survive and it's time they learn there are consequences for acting out. The guards drag the crying inmates into the hall while they beg for a chance to explain. Aiden just stands there with his hands folded, casually mentioning that since the doctors all quit, their survival is pretty much up to luck. The baton goes up and the guards form a wall around Fernanda and Veronica as the punishment begins. Fernanda then starts assigning new roles. She promotes a guard named Isabella, who goes by Bella, to head of Sector 1. Then she taps Haley to run Sector 2. Down in the cells, a girl with purple hair listens to the screams from the hall and wonders if Fernanda is actually that ruthless. A muscular girl with purple tattoos and heavy chains says the timing is perfect. She was about to rip her bars off anyway, but she just wants the noise to stop because it's hurting her ears. Meanwhile, Daly the witch is chilling with a hamster on her palm. She notes that with the budget cuts, Aiden is on borrowed time. She asks Asena the necromancer what she thinks, but Asena is too busy reading. Asena tells her she doesn't care since Daly is planning to break out anyway. Daly mentions it'd be awkward if Asena snitched, but Asena says a deal is a deal. The moment Aiden loses control, she's out of there too. Later, the inmates are lined up in the hall, and Fernanda is splitting them into groups of 10. Veronica is impressed by how much natural authority Fernanda has. Bella, the new Sector 1 boss, walks up to Veronica and introduces herself, rocking a black version of the uniform. She tells Veronica she was skeptical at first about a werewolf guard, but now she feels way safer. Veronica is super flustered, but promises to help save the prison, hoping she can be as useful as Bella. Bella gives her a warm pat on the shoulder and says they should get to work. Later, a transport cart arrives with a new inmate. Haley is annoyed that they're taking in new people when they're short-staffed, especially just a random smuggler. The Ant Queen walks into her cell with a creepy smile. The succubus, acting like she owns the place, tells the Ant Queen that if she calls her big sister, she'll look out for her. The Ant Queen plays along, and the succubus promises to let her do all her laundry. The Ant Queen just flashes a sinister grin and agrees. At sunset, a shadow figure sets a curtain on fire outside. Veronica smells the smoke and alerts everyone as massive flames break out. The guards panic, screaming that the dorms are burning. Fernanda is terrified. Suddenly, Veronica realizes a bunch of inmates have escaped. A hidden tunnel has opened up, and massive creatures with wings and horns are charging the guards. One guard tries to hold the line, but her partner bails, and the rest of the guards run for their lives. Fernanda screams for them to come back, but they refuse to stay and die. From her cell, the purple-haired girl notes that this was inevitable since the team doesn't respect Fernanda yet. A Sector 3 boss named Jenny yells that they need to call the military because a riot just hit the cafeteria. The tattooed girl asks if the whole place is going down, but the purple-haired girl just smirks. She says these minor riots aren't the main event. They need to wait for the real mastermind to make a move. The monsters charge at the remaining guards, and Veronica drops into a defensive stance, guarding Fernanda and the last two officers. Suddenly, a cane taps the floor as Lord Aiden steps in. The second the monsters see him, they immediately back down in fear. Aiden casually stands between the guards and the creatures, saying good evening and politely addressing them all as ladies. The main gates open, and the guards look shocked as 3 inmates who tried to riot in the courtyard are dragged back inside in heavy chains. Aiden stares down the captured inmates while Jalala the elf watches from her cell. Leaning on his cane, Aiden calmly asks for an explanation, mentioning he only stepped away for a quick cup of tea to figure out the staffing issue, and suddenly everyone decided to riot. One of the chained inmates yells that Aiden is losing his grip on the prison and demands to know how long he's going to fake it now that security is non-existent. Aiden steps closer and asks why she's acting so tough. She bares her teeth and screams that she's going to destroy him. Another inmate completely loses it, calling Aiden a psycho and threatening to drown him. Aiden notes they seem pretty confident and decides to give them exactly one chance. Aiden analyzes the situation. Guarding 1,000 inmates requires a massive staff that he can't replace in time. Holding a box with a sleeping smiley face on it, he realizes that if he recruits inmate volunteers to act as temporary guards, he can solve multiple problems at once. He sets out 3 boxes with sleeping, loving, and angry faces on them. He knows it's a massive gamble, but it's literally his only option. Standing in front of his team, Aiden announces that for the next 3 days, all cells, except for extreme risk inmates, will be completely unlocked. The inmates will have total freedom to roam the prison. He admits with a slightly worried look that they technically have a chance to escape, but he genuinely hopes they don't betray his trust. The guards behind him start laughing, joking that Aiden looks furious, but secretly admitting they are hyped to finally take a break. The inmates are completely thrown off. One inmate says she can't even take the situation seriously anymore. Tiga agrees, guessing Aiden is just bluffing to look in control, because otherwise unlocking the doors is literally insane. Philippa the Tigress warns her crew they need to be ready to fight and take him out if they get the chance. Aiden talks strategy with Fernanda and Veronica. The Ant Queen watches them, thinking that if this plan fails, the prison is going to descend into total anarchy, wondering what Aiden's true endgame is. Turning to the succubus, she calls her sister and asks for some advice, but secretly thinks Aiden looks exhausted and weak. Smiling evilly, the Ant Queen asks if the succubus knows anything about an inmate named Evange, also known as the Reaper of Dirty Blood. The succubus gets super defensive, asking why she's suddenly fishing for intel on the most dangerous inmates. The Ant Queen plays innocent, claiming she's just a huge fan of the legendary killer. The succubus turns away and the Ant Queen smirks. The succubus accuses the Ant Queen of trying to find a cooler mentor, but the Ant Queen promises she would never do that and swears loyalty. The succubus brushes her off, bragging that a very important person inmate like Evange doesn't care about random newbies. The Ant Queen fakes surprise, asking what makes Evange a very important person. The succubus, reading a magazine while getting a massage from the Ant Queen, brags that Evange is literally Aiden's favorite. He treats her like his own daughter, visiting her every day to teach her how to read and write. The succubus adds she's totally fine with it since she considers herself Aiden's girlfriend, making her basically Evange's stepmom. The Ant Queen's eyes go completely cold. She remembers standing in the shadows, stroking Evange's head, and telling her that the world wanted them dead so they had to strike first. Evange agreed. A flashback shows an entire army charging at Evange, screaming they are going to execute her. Evange just covers her face as their bullets stop mid-air and fall into her hands. She concentrates massive energy into her palms. Her mother calls her the ultimate creation. Evange unleashes the energy, blasting the entire army away in a massive explosion. The soldiers scream in pure agony as they burn. Evange turns around with completely dead eyes, stating the threat is neutralized. Her mother looks furious but praises her, calling her the absolute best, and laughs wickedly as the skeletons burn to ash around them. Back in the present, the Ant Queen realizes Aiden is trying to steal her daughter. Her grip on the succubus's shoulder tightens in pure rage. The succubus yells in pain, asking if she's trying to snap her collarbone. The Ant Queen instantly drops the scary vibe, puts on a guilty face, and apologizes, promising it won't happen again. In his office, Aiden tells Fernanda that the unlocked doors are just phase 1 and asks if she gets it. Fernanda calmly confirms she understands the assignment and is going to focus on hunting down the mastermind behind the riot. Aiden notes that tomorrow at lunch, the inmates are going to meet up in secret to plot. Fernanda opens the door to leave and finds Veronica waiting outside. As Aiden walks down the hall, Fernanda whispers to Veronica that Aiden wanted to give her something but was too embarrassed to do it himself. Veronica instantly salutes, saying she's ready for any mission. Fernanda laughs and says it's not a mission. She whispers that when Veronica transformed earlier, her pants totally ripped. Veronica is absolutely mortified to see a massive hole in the back of her uniform, and Fernanda tells her to go get a new set immediately. Down in the cell block, Medusa's cage pops open, and she is totally shocked. The inmates are leaning out of their cells, completely confused about why the doors are actually unlocked. They wonder what Aiden is plotting and who is going to be brave enough to step out first. The main gates are wide open. A girl with green hair yells at everyone to hurry up, holding a camera and excitedly telling them to run through the gates to freedom. The main trio is debating what to do. The lizard and the tigress push Medusa forward, telling her to lead the way since she's supposed to be fearless. Medusa crosses her arms, admitting she's actually terrified, which completely shocks the tigress. They insist she goes first and they'll follow. Medusa cringes, remembering the last time she messed with Aiden. He tied her up with her own snake hair, shoved his hand in her mouth to mock her fangs, and threw her off a burning cliff, promising to save her if she survived until dawn. The lizard drags Medusa by her hair toward the gate, yelling that she can't back out since she started the whole riot. Suddenly, a chicken screams at the top of its lungs. The inmates turn and see a crazy chicken sprinting across the yard. The cook is chasing it with a ladle, yelling that he needs to catch their dinner. Isabella tries to tackle it but completely eats dirt. The chicken sprints right through the open gates. The inmates are thrilled, thinking that since the chicken made it through, the exit is safe. But the second the chicken steps onto a hidden magic circle just outside the gates, it triggers a massive explosion, and a perfectly fried piece of chicken lands on the dirt. The inmates are absolutely horrified. Isabella is furious, screaming that she didn't spend hours setting up complex magic traps just to blow up a random bird. The cook yells at her, asking why she put lethal landmines right at the exit, rubbing her neck. Isabella casually mentions there are plenty of free test subjects around, and she's just doing her job for Aiden. Her file shows she is a 26-year-old human and the Sector 1 boss who wants to study the magic circles in the prison after being a top student at the Imperial Magic Academy. The lizard points at Isabella, demanding to know how many traps she planted. Isabella taunts them to guess. A winged inmate steps up, grabs Jalala the elf with her claws, and lifts her into the air. She suggests that since there's so much trash in the prison, they should just throw the elf onto the traps to trigger them like a sandbag. Jalala screams for her life. The succubus and the rabbit girl panic, begging the bird to put her down. The tigress points out there aren't that many traps, so if they just rush the gate together, they won't even have to sacrifice anyone. But the bird ignores them, using Jalala as a shield, and yells that they need to send a message to Aiden's team. Suddenly, 2 guards flank the bird and smash her legs and wings, forcing her to drop Jalala. The bird collapses in pain. Haley, holding a sword behind her back, apologizes for the violence but states that inmates who aren't trying to escape shouldn't be dragged into the crossfire. Jenny, holding the exact same stance, reminds the crowd that they are still technically prisoners and need to watch their step. Their files show they are the 27-year-old sword sisters and bosses of Sectors 2 and 3 who are incredibly good with blades. The succubus helps Jalala up. Moyi, the Sector 4 boss, adjusts her monocle and announces that anyone who doesn't want to fight can go back to their cells, but anyone who stays in the yard is officially considered an enemy combatant. Most of the inmates immediately turn around and walk back to their cells. The tigress smirks, noting the yard is way less crowded now, and says they need to strategize on how to take down Aiden. A voice suddenly tells them to behave. The tigress turns around, goes completely pale, and drops to her knees. She stammers that she didn't expect Miss Austen to be there, and apologizes for acting tough. A white-haired girl in the crowd asks who Austen is, and the other inmates explain that she's the princess of House Marbus and the absolute ruler of the Beastmen, which basically makes her Philippa's boss. Still kneeling, Philippa begs for forgiveness. Austen, looking super graceful, tells her to get up, but warns her that kneeling won't change the fact that she failed to defend their family honor and got wrecked by weaklings. Philippa eagerly offers to trigger the traps at the gate so Austen can escape, but Austen just smirks and declines. She says she only came out for a bit of fun, knowing that if she actually escaped, it would start a massive war. 2 girls covered in ancient symbols say goodbye to the Ant Queen, telling her to keep up the good work. The Ant Queen watches them go, recognizing the symbols as signs of elite families that serve ancient demons and gods. She notes the different powerhouses, the Beastmen, the Baifa magicians, and the anti-spirit unicorn clan. She remembers her mentor warning her that these families hold world-ending power. Looking at a massive glowing magical hand hovering over the city, she thinks it would be much easier if someone else just destroyed the prison for her. Nearby, the cook suggests that any inmates who want to avoid the drama should come help her in the kitchen. She explains she needs a crew to prep ingredients and a ton of desserts because she wants to prove her cooking isn't the reason the guards quit. While other inmates are debating it, Daly the witch shoves them aside and volunteers immediately. Everyone is shocked she actually wants to work. Daly plays it off with a super innocent pose, claiming she's a model inmate and a great cook. The cook is thrilled to have the help. Asina is totally disgusted by Daly's fake good girl act. She points out that the girls in the back were there first and that nobody even wants dessert. Daly tells her to shut up. Just then, Fernanda walks up and asks Asina why she isn't rioting. Asina casually asks if there's any work for her, and Fernanda mentions the librarian quit. She offers Asina the job so she doesn't have to sit in her cell all day. Asina literally jumps for joy while Daly scoffs, pointing out that Asina is faking being a model inmate too. The Ant Queen finds the whole situation hilarious. She realizes Daly only volunteered because she's depressed about the prison vibe. Analyzing Aiden's strategy, she sees he's placed his best guards at the main choke points, and the mystery of the traps at the gate has the inmates paralyzed. Even though the doors are open, the prison is still a cage. Checking the blueprint Anthony gave her, she spots a massive weak point, an abandoned, unguarded sector on the left with no magic barrier. She smirks, thinking her daughter might be hidden over there. Meanwhile, Evange is playing with a toy rabbit at a desk. Aiden tells her class is over for the day and says goodbye. Out in the yard, Aiden is standing by a massive barrel when 2 inmates run up, hyped because they smell alcohol. Jinja, a tough tattooed girl, calls him out for holding out on them. Aiden smirks and tells her he bought the drinks to pay the guards for overtime, which immediately kills her mood. Aiden points to a big empty dirt lot and says he wants to start a farm to improve the cafeteria food. He says he needs security to protect the crops, and Jinja instantly volunteers. Aiden checks her file. She's a former mercenary commander. Jinja pitches her crew for the job, saying they'll do the labor in exchange for the drinks since they're broke and desperate. Aiden agrees to let her prove herself. Jinja realizes tilling the field will take forever and demands a second barrel if they finish. Aiden agrees but warns her they're on a clock, hinting she needs a huge crew. Jinja's friend realizes Aiden is just tricking them into doing free farm work. She glares at him, knowing that if they recruit other inmates, they'll become targets for the rioters. Watching from the shadows, the Ant Queen is shocked to see Jinja. She remembers Jinja as the unstoppable butcher who defeated an entire vampire army. She whispers to a sleeping Evange that Aiden is incredibly bold for trying to bribe elite mercenaries to do his chores, and tells her they just need to wait for the perfect moment to destroy everything. Out in the yard, yard, a guard is watching an inmate pick up a rock. Suddenly, the inmate lifts her shirt, revealing a horrifying mouth with razor-sharp teeth built into her stomach. She starts feeding the rock to the mouth, and the terrified guard yells at her to stop. The inmate just smiles and asks if the guard knows any inmates who would be good for her plan. The guard suggests the Crimson Princess, Ophelia, in cell 66. As they head to the cell block, the guard explains that Ophelia failed an escape attempt recently and was totally humiliated by Aiden. The guard thinks if the Ant Queen shows her some respect, Ophelia will join her. Inside the cell, Ophelia is throwing a fit, demanding noble vampire blood instead of pig's blood. The guard just mocks her, telling her she's lucky she isn't being forced to drink garlic juice. Suddenly, the Ant Queen walks in and steps right on Ophelia's cup, splashing blood everywhere. Enraged, Ophelia grabs her by the throat and slams her down, threatening to drink her blood instead. The Ant Queen doesn't flinch, warning that her blood is cursed. Suddenly, a stinger shoots out of the mouth on the Ant Queen's stomach and stabs Ophelia. While Ophelia screams, the Ant Queen muffles her and tells her to just bite her, promising the curse won't trigger. As Ophelia drinks, glowing blood wings sprout from her back. Her powers are returning. The Ant Queen reveals she can break magic seals and invites Ophelia to join her crew. Meanwhile, Fernanda is shivering near a ventilation system, complaining that the new vent design is freezing. She meets Aiden in a secret room on the second floor. Aiden warns her to watch for traps and explains the valves and blueprints are just a precaution against the tricky inmates. As they talk, a snake slithers out of a vent to scout the area. Down in the cafeteria, Medusa notes the yard looks empty, even though she expected Aiden to have guards everywhere. At the next table, Daly the witch shows a mouse to the cook, joking that she shouldn't be scared of her pet. Aiden, watching the cafeteria feed from his secret room, notes that the inmates have finally dropped their guard, which means it's time for phase 2. He explains his strategy to Fernanda, showing how he's categorized the prisoners into 3 distinct groups. First, he points out a group of monsters savagely tearing into their food. These are the wild, bloodthirsty inmates who can't be reasoned with. He labels them the rebels, and tosses a file with the Banshee's name into a box with an angry face. Next, he highlights little Jalala, who is quietly eating with other chill inmates, and even stuffing some extra bread in her pockets. Aiden explains this group has accepted their life in prison and labels them the neutral, dropping Jill's name into a box with a sleeping face. Finally, he points to Jinjia the mercenary, who looks a bit embarrassed to be there. Aiden explains that this third group was forced into a life of crime by a toxic society and actually feels safer inside the prison than out in the real world. He labels them the model inmates and puts Jinjia's name in a box with a smiling face. His master plan is to unite the prison by intentionally triggering a turf war between the extreme rebels and the loyal model inmates to flush out the secret mastermind behind the riot. Out in the yard, ants are crawling over a dirt mound while Ophelia uses her newly restored magic to forge a pool of blood into a solid crimson sword. Medusa is in awe, seeing that Ophelia's power seal is officially broken, and begs for help to break her own. Ophelia tells her to relax, explaining that her boss needs time to brew a special potion first. The Ant Queen approaches the group of angry rebels, telling them to recruit as many people as possible while she gathers supplies, but she warns them to keep everything a secret. The lizard inmate is suspicious, but the tigress vouches for her, calling her a notorious smuggler. The Ant Queen smirks and decides to show them who she really is. Suddenly, terrifying purple worms erupt from her feet and shoot toward the crowd. As she transforms, growing tentacles and massive claws, she explains she's infected them all with a parasite as an insurance policy. She promises they can buy the cure once they escape, but warns that if anyone snitches or disobeys, the parasites will finish them off instantly. Elsewhere, 2 inmates are chatting about the great food when a guard stops them to say they're being moved to a new cell block. All over the first floor, girls are being relocated. One inmate with a scar under her eye is even told she's getting early parole. She tries to argue that she has a month left, but the guard tells her if she has a problem with being free, she can take it up with the warden. Fernanda watches the process, realizing Aiden is intentionally moving the well-behaved inmates, and wonders what Veronica is up to. The rebel inmates are buzzing with excitement, wondering if their secret weapon will really work. When a guard orders them back to their cells, the half-bird inmate tries to protest, but Veronica steps in to de-escalate, saying the guards need rest. Surprisingly, the tigress tells her crew to just comply, and everyone goes back to their cells without a fight. Veronica reports to Fernanda that everything went smoothly, though Fernanda warns her to stay alert. Back in the cell blocks, chaos breaks out when the half-boar inmate finds someone else in her bed. Inmates everywhere are realizing their roommates have been switched. The Sword Sisters show up and explain that cell assignments have been randomized due to recent behavior. Medusa whispers to the others that being scattered is actually a good thing since it lets them recruit more people for the breakout. The tigress plays along, loudly announcing she's finding a new cell and telling her crew to follow. While the succubus is chilling with a magazine, the Ant Queen is trying to figure out Aiden's endgame. She realizes she's been assigned to a very specific block with blacked out walls. She remembers Anthony telling her this area was designed for the most unstable inmates and is completely soundproof so no one has to hear them scream. In one cell, an inmate is violently scratching at the door, completely unreachable. The Ant Queen realizes Aiden totally played her. He didn't have a massive master plan, he just threw the loudest, most annoying rebels into a soundproof block to shut them up and buy time. She eavesdrops on her neighbors and is shocked to hear them saying they'd rather stay in prison for the food and security than go back to the toxic world outside. She realizes her pool of recruits is much smaller than she thought. Nearby, Fernanda explains the layout to Veronica. The bottom floors are for the model inmates who support the prison because they have no desire to return to a struggle for survival. The middle floors are for the neutrals who just don't care. The top floors are for the rebels who hate everything about the place. At the center of it all are Aiden's hand-picked VIPs, YA, the advisor, and Jinjia, the mercenary. Fernanda asks if Jinjia has her farming crew ready yet. Jinjia sighs, telling you that she's basically become Aiden's errand girl. Ya warns her that Aiden is using them as shields against the rebels, so they need to be extremely careful. Jinjia wonders if they should just quit the farming gig altogether, but Ye tells her to wait because the whole vibe of the prison just shifted. Looking around their new cell block, Ye realizes that Aiden moved them there on purpose. A giant inmate named Jolai sniffs Jinjia and asks if she's got any drinks, while another inmate excitedly asks if they'll be working outside and if there are any cute guys around. Ye notices that this block is full of minor offenders and chill inmates who consider the prison their actual home and have no plans to escape. They're all gossiping and asking for the tea on Aiden. YA calculates that with hundreds of loyalists surrounding them, Aiden intentionally created a buffer so they wouldn't have to deal with the dangerous rebels. In his office, Aiden is smiling, knowing his strategy is working perfectly. He imagines the inmates peacefully farming while he enjoys a drink. Ye realizes Aiden's true masterpiece. He's building a loyal army to handle the rioters for him, and he chose Jinjia because a mercenary commander is the perfect person to lead them. Jinjia thinks she is losing it. She argues that being bosses just makes them Aiden's attack dogs. She reminds you that their last squad was wiped out and that powerful bosses always dump their soldiers once they aren't useful. Ya agrees, but points out that this time is different because they have the warden's full backing and a massive numbers advantage. Plus, she notes the rebels just want to escape, not fight to the death, so they can basically just let them run away if things get heated. Jinjia realizes Ya is right. The perks of playing along are too good to pass up. She sighs, gives in, and loudly announces to the block that she's hiring for a work detail and paying in alcohol. Instantly, the inmates start volunteering, and even the succubus starts screaming for Jinjia not to forget her. The Ant Queen watches this and realizes Aiden is totally flipping the prison's social hierarchy. Still, she thinks her plan is solid, believing a little freedom won't stop the hardcore rebels. She figures if she can recruit the top VIPs, she can crush Aiden's new army. She sets her sights on Daly the Witch, confident a magic potion will win her over. Instead, Daly decks the Ant Queen, knocking her to the floor. Daly looks disgusted and announces she's officially kicking the Ant Queen out of the Witch Coven for being toxic. On the floor crying, the Ant Queen tries to justify her illegal experiments on people from the slums, saying nobody cared about them anyway. Daly is furious at her lack of remorse and warns her that she's beyond saving and that a Melahima is coming for her. A terrifying four-armed creature with a tail slithers forward, screaming at the Ant Queen. Terrified, the Ant Queen grabs a broom and flies off, with a Lamia firing massive green energy beams at her. She gets caught in the blast and realizes she's falling straight into the prison's forbidden zone. The Ant Queen lands safely near a creepy statue and brags about her new power. She reveals she's mastered a forbidden divine technique and claims the 7 great witches will eventually have to bow to her. Meanwhile, a tiny white mouse spies on her from the shadows. Back in the office, Aiden hands a box of personal items to Carol, a bounty hunter with blue hair. He congratulates her on finishing her sentence. Carol is suspicious, asking why he's being so nice. Her file shows she served a year for punching a guard while wasted. Aiden tells her to work on her temper, and Carol is shocked she's actually free. She remembers when she first got there, she was so mad she slapped Aiden in the face. She'd only hit the guard because he was making fun of her body. Now in her street clothes, Carol asks what Aiden wants in return for her release. Aiden drops a stack of gold on the desk and asks her to explain exactly how the bounty hunting business works. Later, the Ant Queen is in the cafeteria, hearing everyone praise Jinjia's new setup. She spots Daly stirring a bowl of stew and calls her out. Daly smiles and apologizes for not recognizing her, joking that the Ant Queen has been too busy playing mom lately. The Ant Queen gets defensive and tells her to drop the act. She offers to teach Daly her new dark magic, but Daly explains she actually loves it in prison because it's way less toxic than the Witch Coven. The Ant Queen accuses Daly of being Aiden's lapdog and points out she doesn't even have a very important person job. Daly just taps her hat and acknowledges the Ant Queen is naturally suspicious. As a purple tentacle slithers under the table, the Ant Queen says she's going to prove her power. Meanwhile, Aiden is hyped because 202 inmates volunteered for the farm, which is exactly what he needed. Out in the yard, Jinjia's crew is tilling the soil. Aiden explains the plan. They're starting a potato farm to supply the cafeteria and learn how to make wine. This gives them a trade so they can make legal money once they're out. Jinjia is thrilled and promises to run the farm like a boss. However, Aiden drops a bombshell on ya. The budget is frozen, so they can't afford seeds. He casually tells them it's their job to buy them, ordering them to leave the prison, go into the city, and come back. Ya is stunned, asking how they're supposed to just walk out of a max security prison. Jinjia asks if he's worried they'll run. Aiden just smiles and says he trusts them. He introduces Jalala the elf as their agricultural expert, since she's a plant whisperer. Outside the gates, a group of 5 inmates in shackles stands in total shock. Bella cheers them on, reminding them to be back before the magic barrier accidentally zaps them. Hidden nearby, unseen creatures watch them, completely amazed that Aiden just let them walk right out the front door. They assume it has to be a trap. In the cafeteria, the Ant Queen shows Daly a stinger hovering over a chicken egg to reveal her ultimate dark magic, the art of prosperity, which she learned in the Forbidden Zone. The egg hatches violently, and the chick instantly ages into a fully grown chicken. She brags that anything she touches experiences this explosive growth. She pulls out a blueprint of the prison's magic barrier, explaining that if she stabs it with her stinger, the magic magic will forcefully expand until the whole structure shatters. A creepy tree with carved faces holds up a vial of purple liquid. The Ant Queen explains that this potion is a massive hit on the black market and guarantees results. To demonstrate, she stabs the adult chicken with her tentacle. She tells Daily she knows all about her magic contract with Aiden, the one that will finish her if she breaks the rules, but says her new magic can override it. The chicken screams as a massive tumor grows on its side. The girl explains that when the potion pushes a living thing past its limit, it literally splits. The tumor bursts open, and a perfect clone of the chicken pops out. The Ant Queen smirks, holding up both chickens. She promises Daily that the clone will provide her with a brand new body, completely free from Aiden's contract. She asks if Daily likes the plan. Daily smiles wickedly, but instead of agreeing, says she'll pretend this conversation never happened out of respect for their old relationship, and orders her to leave immediately. The Ant Queen is absolutely shocked. Suddenly, the Ant Queen starts laughing like a maniac, declaring that their bond is officially dead. With an evil smile, she tells Daily that joining her was the smartest move, and accuses her of just wanting to hide until the rebels and Aiden destroy each other. Daily bites her finger, smiling, and teases that the Ant Queen never used to be this smart or aggressive. The Ant Queen laughs, explaining that surviving the Forbidden Zone forces you to become ruthless. Suddenly, dark shadows fill the cafeteria doorway. The rebel inmates storm in, and everyone panics. One of the rebels instantly punches a random inmate, triggering a massive brawl. The rebels scream at the loyalist inmates, calling them Aiden's pathetic minions and telling them to fight back. The loyalists hide behind tables, begging Daily for help and screaming for the warden. The Ant Queen stays seated while chaos erupts behind her. She gives Daily an ultimatum: join the riot and escape, or just sit there and watch the carnage, and she'll make sure Daily goes down with everyone else. Meanwhile, in the city, the farm crew is nervously walking through the streets. The locals are terrified and actively avoid them. One guy wonders aloud why Rose prison inmates are wandering around loose, and Jinjia aggressively tells him to stop staring. High up in a nearby building, Carol the bounty hunter watches them through a window. She turns to Aiden, confirming she has the target and the employer's name locked in, but asks what her actual mission is. A day ago, Aiden had handed Carol a sealed envelope and asked her to keep an eye on someone. Looking extremely serious, Aiden told her that if anyone tried to escape, a squad of armed hunters waiting for her signal would take them out on the spot. In a rundown, dangerous slum area, the farm crew is following Jalala the elf. Ya, the advisor, asks Jalala if she's sure they're going the right way, doubting anyone is selling potato seeds in a place like this. Jalala insists her instincts are flawless. From above, the inmates are seen wandering deeper into the slums. Some start complaining that they're lost. Suddenly, they notice their magic collars are deactivating. They realize they've walked right out of the prison's magic barrier zone. As Ya starts panicking, Jalala throws her guide sign on the ground and asks if they are actually stupid. She tells them it's the perfect time to run away and form an escape plan. The group collectively screams, asking what she's doing. In a flashback, Fernanda asks Aiden if he really thinks the elf will try to escape. Aiden mentions he asked Jalala to babysit Evange for several days, but she never showed up. He tells Fernanda that while she looks like a kid, she's a 170-year-old elf with more prison experience than almost anyone. In the slums, Jalala drops her cute act, flashing a terrifying glare. She asks if they understand her situation, remembering how she hid under her bed in terror during the riot. She cries that she lives in constant fear and that the other inmates have been bullying her. She yells that they have no right to judge her because they are the ones constantly terrorizing her. Jalala pulls out gold coins and a briefcase with a fake contract. She screams that she refuses to live like that anymore and offers the gold to fund their escape, demanding an answer. The succubus agrees, saying it's the perfect time to run since their collars are off. She mentions she has plenty of ex-boyfriends who can hide them and points out a route through the witch's forest. Jalala explains they have to go through the forest, but admits she has a lot of enemies there and needs strong fighters for protection. Jinjia looks confused and firmly states she has no intention of escaping. Succubus hugs Jinjia, flirting and suggesting they go to dinner together if she agrees to escape. Jinjia tells her to back off. Ya tells everyone to shut because the situation is extremely suspicious. She points out that Aiden could have hired anyone to buy seeds, but specifically sent them and let them walk right out of the barrier. She argues Aiden is too smart to be that careless and tells Jalala to think about whether she noticed anything weird on the walk over. Jalala picks up her sign and suddenly senses the negative energy of several people hiding nearby. She immediately starts sobbing and apologizing, admitting she made a mistake and led them into a trap. She nervously stammers that they should just go buy potatoes. Ye looks around and spots shadows of people watching them. She realizes the whole trip was a setup. Aiden gave them a fake sense of freedom just to test their loyalty. Hunters with covered faces are hiding in the windows of the rundown buildings, aiming at the inmates. Ye realizes Aiden intentionally gave them freedom just so he could take it away if they betrayed him. On the roof, hunters are loading crossbows. Carol is lying there, signaling the hunters to stay quiet. Ye realizes she completely misread Aiden's strategy. Dozens of armed hunters are camouflaged all around them. Jalala is terrified, and she is shaking violently from the intense negative energy. Hysterically, she screams at the group to hurry up and buy the potatoes so they don't keep Aiden waiting. Back in his office, Aiden smiles. He explains his philosophy. If you want to tame wild wolves into loyal guard dogs, you have to show them love first, but you can never show weakness, or they'll eventually bite you. You have to establish dominance before showing affection. Evange, holding a book, asks Aiden if Little Red Riding Hood could tame the big bad wolf so it wouldn't eat her grandma. Aiden replies that it all depends on the person's actions, noting that nothing is absolute, and asks for her take on it. Evange is completely stunned, her mind spiraling into a nightmare. She imagines her mother as a towering, terrifying monster monster with a second mouth full of sharp teeth on her stomach. In this vision, tentacles sprout everywhere as lightning crashes in the background, and Evange sees herself as nothing more than a helpless puddle of bioliquid dripping from her mother's hands. Suddenly, a frantic knocking at the office door snaps them back to reality. A guard bursts in, shouting that a massive riot has broken out in the cafeteria. Fernanda is shocked, wondering why Daly the witch hasn't intervened since she was supposed to be keeping an eye on things. Aiden rubs his temples, feeling the stress of the situation. He always thought mealtime was a safe zone, especially after making a deal with Daly. He suddenly remembers how his revolver was mysteriously empty during his fight with Jaylon, and how Daly acted weird about the missing ammo. It all clicks. Daly is definitely playing both sides. Meanwhile, a shadowy figure stands by the open prison gates. Aiden realizes the most chilling part of this riot is that nobody is actually trying to escape. That means this isn't just a random outburst. Someone incredibly smart is pulling the strings. Aiden looks down and orders the cafeteria guards to identify the ringleader, promising he'll step in to handle the rest himself. Back in the cafeteria, it's total chaos as inmates beat each other senseless. The Ant Queen notices Daly hasn't moved a muscle to stop the fighting. She mocks Daly, asking if she's going to go crawl back to Aiden for forgiveness, or if she'll choose option 2, join the crew and escape while the prison burns. The Ant Queen starts brewing a potion in a large cauldron. As she works, Daly thinks back to a warning from her old mentor. Her mentor had predicted that the Ant Queen's intelligence would eventually turn her into a ruthless egoist who would do anything to get her way. The Ant Queen tells Daly to watch her mouth since they're technically on the same team now, but Daly just summons a glowing magic symbol and tells the Ant Queen she's just using people, advising her to stay out of the way. The Tigress and Medusa watch the standoff from a distance. The Tigress asks if they should jump in, but Medusa tells her to wait. Since Daly's contract with Aiden limits her magic, it's better to let them exhaust each other. Suddenly, Daly focuses a massive amount of magic into her hands, shocking the Ant Queen. The Ant Queen asks if she's really going to fight, reminding Daly that she's the only one who can break her contract with the warden. Daly just smirks and says she's talking nonsense. Daly reveals she's been to the Forbidden Zone herself to find a cure and has mastered the same secret technique. She explains the catch. The soul-splitting spell clones the body but destroys the mind, leaving the clones as brain-dead zombies. Daly calls the Ant Queen out for hiding that little detail, pointing her lethal magic at her former student. Daly asks if she really thinks she's too scared to finish her right now. Suddenly, the succubus grabs the Ant Queen and yanks her away from the table. She drags her through the brawl, screaming that they have to run or they'll die. The Ant Queen is stunned that the succubus would risk her life like this. It reminds her of her old teacher, a four-armed warrior who once fought off a horde of monsters to keep her safe. Suddenly, a rat scurries across the floor, making the succubus scream and trip. Both she and the Ant Queen crash to the floor right in front of the half-bird inmate. The bird raises her razor-sharp claws to end the succubus, and the Ant Queen braces for the end. Blood splatters, but when she opens her eyes, she realizes she's okay. The succubus shielded her and took the hit. The bird's claws are buried deep in the succubus's arm, but she refuses to move. The half-bird smirks, satisfied with the damage and bored with the idea of a kill. She kicks the Ant Queen away and walks off. Another inmate runs over to help. The Ant Queen pushes herself up, glaring across the room at Daly, who is sitting calmly at a table waving mockingly at her. Just then, Fernanda and a squad of guards storm the cafeteria, ordering everyone to lock down. But Medusa sees them and tells the inmates to fall back. The monsters bare their fangs, and the half-bird yells at her crew to charge. There are way more guards than usual, and they're all looking to her for orders. She remembers Aiden's plan: find the leader and let him handle it. She orders her squad to help the wounded, but leave the rioters to deal with their own mess. Later, piles of potatoes are stacked outside the prison. Aiden sits by his window, smiling as he thanks the farm crew for their hard work. He asks if they had any trouble, and the girls, remembering the snipers on the roofs, quickly insist the trip was perfect. Aiden tells them they can start the real farming tomorrow. Ya tries to get Jinja to leave, but Jinja is staring at the wine barrels in the office, desperate for a drink. Ya is panicking about the sniper ambush they just survived, while Jinja only cares about the booze. As they turn to leave, Aiden stops them, dropping his warden voice for a friendly tone. He tells them to take the wine barrels as a reward, reminding them not to miss their shift tomorrow. The crew gets totally wasted in the office, surrounded by empty bottles and thanking Aiden loudly. Jinja, holding a half-empty bottle, points at Aiden and calls him brother, promising to return the favor someday. Ya groans and drags the drunk Jinja out of the room. Down the hall, Jalala whispers that Aiden didn't suspect a thing and even gave them elite status. One drunk girl complains that the sniper ambush gave her PTSD and she's never trying to escape again. Her friend tells her the move is to stay loyal to Aiden and just keep drinking. Suddenly, a group of rioters in the hallway starts trash-talking, calling the guards useless and the loyalists cowards. They brag about raiding Aiden's office tomorrow to ruin him. An empty wine bottle shatters on the floor, and the rioters spin around to find the massive squad of loyalists standing right there. Jinja cracks her knuckles, complaining about having to look at their ugly faces. Jalala screams that nobody is allowed to hurt the warden, asking how they're supposed to farm if the rioters keep causing drama. Ya just sighs, wondering when they became Aiden's personal attack dogs. The inmates in their cells start cheering for the fight. The monsters glow red and bare their fangs. The half-bird asks if Jinjia is Aiden's new pet, but Jinjia just tells her she's been looking for an excuse to shut her up. Jalala orders her crew to wreck them. The bird charges, and Ya tells Jinjia that the bird's weak point is her shoulders. Before Jinjia can move, a girl with short blue hair sprints past Ya, thanks her for the info, and leaps into the air. She lands a massive hit and sends the bird flying across the hall. hall. The boar inmate is shaken, demanding to know what Camilla the dragon is doing since she's supposed to be neutral, and accuses her of being Aiden's lapdog. Camilla just stands there, totally unbothered, and says she's only here for the paycheck, telling the rioters they might as well keep swinging. In a cell nearby, the succubus shows off a bag of gold coins to her injured roommate, proving she's not just all talk, she actually pays to have her problems dealt with. The Ant Queen, rocking a cast on her arm, is stunned that the succubus hired a literal hitman for her and thanks her. Suddenly, the boar inmate roars and triples in size, taking a stance right behind Jinja. A loyalist with cat ears screams a warning, and the massive boar charges at Jinja with a terrifying sound. Jinja stays chill, noting that those giant tusks look like toothpicks to her. The boar hits insane magic speed, screaming that she's going to drag Jinja across the prison and smash her into the bars. She lunges backward but crashes right into a massive fluffy tail that a loyalist girl deployed as a trap. The loyalist mocks the monsters for being so wild while the boar thrashes around, trying to slash through the fur. The loyalist girl just blocks the attacks with her heavy shackles, grabs the boar by the horns and slams her into the ground, pinning her neck with a boot to choke her out. The boar is completely dazed. She manages to pin Jinja against the bars with her tusks, but she's confused because Jinja is still standing. Even though the boar weighs 3 tons in her beast form and should have crushed her, Jinja is holding her ground easily. A glowing magic symbol appears on Jinja's back, giving her a massive strength boost. She grabs the boar's tusks and snaps them off with her bare hands. As the bloody pieces hit the floor, Jinja sarcastically complains that the boar wasn't even a good warm-up. Ya yells for Jinja to help the rest of the crew, pointing out 2 other fighters. A loyalist named Jolai is grappling a rebel but losing her grip because the monster can absorb physical strength. The rebel's arms are bulging with muscle, but Jinja yells that she'll buy Jolai breakfast if she ends it fast. Jolai is instantly motivated. Using her magic, she converts all her body fat into pure muscle, doubling her size instantly. Her opponent is terrified, having no idea how Jolai got so big so fast. Jolai grabs her by the shoulders and slams her into the floor with insane force. She flexes, reminding everyone that she has giant's blood and shouldn't be messed with. The defeated rebel groans that she totally underestimated her. Up in the cells, some inmates are cheering because they bet on the loyalists, while others are complaining about losing money. Jalala celebrates their win, while Jolai sits on the floor, complaining that using that much magic made her starve. Suddenly, Aiden marches in with Fernanda and a huge squad of armed guards. The loyalists brace themselves as the guards surround the area. Jalala is terrified and clings to his leg. From the balcony, Aiden screams at them, asking how they could act like this. He's furious, yelling that he gave them freedom and they turned it into an illegal fight club. He asks if they think he's stupid and announces that, starting tomorrow, all privileges are canceled and the prison is going back on maximum security lockdown. The inmates start complaining, asking how he can cancel the event before a winner is crowned. The vampire realizes the breakout plan is officially dead because they were supposed to move tomorrow, and now they're stuck. Fernanda steps up with one last update. The farm project starts tomorrow anyway. The 200 inmates who helped stop the riot are hired and get to keep their free roam perks, so she tells them to get some sleep. One loyalist is hyped they still get to go outside, but the boar, currently pinned by guards, screams that Aiden is the real villain for locking the rebels in solitary. Ye realizes this was Aiden's master move. He orchestrated the whole thing. He gave them fake freedom, let them tire each other out, and then locked the dangerous ones away for good. He broke the rebels' spirit while making himself more powerful than ever. Outside the magic barrier, Aiden stands with the 200 farm workers. Ye knows that whatever the rebels were planning is impossible now. In her cell, the succubus comforts the Ant Queen, saying they're safe since they have the farm jobs and don't have to deal with rioters anymore. She's totally hyped for the lockdown, while the Ant Queen secretly thinks back to her own plan. Earlier, the Ant Queen had climbed onto massive food barrels and poured a strange substance which looked like creepy embryos into the food supply. She smirks, wondering what will happen when Aiden's loyal inmates eat them and become her mind-controlled slaves. She can't wait to see how Aiden handles that. Aiden is walking with Fernanda and praises her for how she handled the riot, though he warns her to stay sharp. Fernanda confidently says the inmates are too dumb for a real rebellion, but then she reports that the cafeteria guards caught the Ant Queen having a very intense, secret talk with Daly the Witch. Back in the office, the Ant Queen stands before Aiden's desk. He asks what she and the witch were discussing. She plays it off, claiming she was just asking about why Daly gets to wear her own clothes right before the riot started and she got her arm broken. Aiden then grills Daly, asking why she didn't stop the fight. Daly fakes an innocent smile and lies, saying there were too many people for her to handle. Fernanda doesn't buy it and asks why they were using a privacy spell. The Ant Queen lies again, saying she was just scared and begged Daly for protection, but Daly used a small spell to scare her off. Fernanda tells Aiden she doesn't believe a word of it. Aiden then asks Fernanda to look at the new guard hires and points out they've hired literal criminals. Fernanda panics, admitting she had to hire anyone who applied just to keep the place running after the mass walkout. Aiden realizes the mastermind used the resignations to plant sleeper agents in the staff to start the riots. He knows he can't trust Daly, but since the magic contract keeps her from attacking him, he just needs a new way to monitor her. He opens a file with a flower on it and orders Fernanda to assign a guard to shadow every suspicious inmate. He also tells her to have Veronica use her werewolf senses to sniff out any magical traps Daly might have left behind. Fernanda confirms the orders and heads out. Out in the yard, the Ant Queen is digging in the dirt with a small shovel, using her one good hand. A guard is standing right over her, staring, which clearly gets on her nerves. When she asks why the guard is hovering so close, the officer bluntly explains that she's under orders to watch her. The guard glares at her and mentions that the Ant Queen is lucky they used a privacy spell during her talk with Daly. If the authorities had heard what was actually said, she would have been executed by now. Sitting in the dirt, the Ant Queen bares her teeth and sarcastically asks if she should say thank you. She points out that if Aiden finds out they both lied, they're dead anyway. She warns the guard that Aiden is losing his patience and suggests the officer should be the one stressing out. The guard counters with a threat, saying that if the Ant Queen doesn't show results soon, she'll forge documents to keep her locked up forever. The Ant Queen just laughs, calling the threat ridiculous since she only gave the guard a few ingredients for a basic potion and is already being pressured for progress. She then asks if the guard's outside contact managed to get the item she requested. As a prison transport cart rolls by, the guard whispers that the item is currently in transit. She mentions it was incredibly difficult to smuggle in and warns the Ant Queen not to mess up the plan this time. Nearby, Jalala is sitting on a bench, yelling at the Ant Queen to keep working since they can't afford to mess up their first day on the farm. Meanwhile, Jalala is just relaxing with her legs crossed, sipping tea and bragging about how easy the job is. Someone asks to sit with her, and Jalala nearly chokes on her tea when she realizes it's Avanj. Avanj looks totally different than before. Jalala nervously agrees to share the bench. As they watch the bugs in the grass, Avanj mentions that Aiden told her to read stories to the other kids to make friends. She asks Jalala if she counts as a kid and if she wants to hear a story. Jalala awkwardly says yes, even though she's actually 170 years old. Avanj decides to read Snow White. Jalala watches her, noting that Avanj is still completely emotionless and seems to view the reading session as a mandatory chore. Avanj opens a pop-up book, and Jalala thinks it looks incredibly strange, wondering where she even got it. In another part of the prison, Veronica accidentally steps on a mouse. As she lifts her boot, she complains to Bella about being treated like a janitor. She's annoyed that Daly gets very important person treatment while she's stuck on pest control. Bella asks her a deep question. If a crime happens, who goes to jail? The killer or the weapon? Veronica is confused and says the killer, obviously, because locking up a weapon makes no sense. Bella softly explains that Avanj isn't really a person, she's a murder weapon. She's serving a life sentence to protect the mastermind who used her. A vision shows the terrifying Ant Queen looming over a group of children. Bella reveals that Avanj was one of the orphans captured by the Queen. Rumor has it the Queen kidnaps kids for horrifying experiments, turning them into elite assassins to rent out for profit. Bella remembers how shaken the prison doctor was when Aiden first brought Avanj in. The doctor told Aiden her internal organs were mutilated and fused with biomechanical weapons. He couldn't even perform surgery because her blood had been replaced with a toxic liquid that melted his tools on contact. Back on the bench, Avanj continues reading while Jalala marvels at the pop-ups. Bella explains that no one knows the level of torture Avanj survived. She points out that Avanj is only 13 and should be living a normal life, but instead, she's like a ghost who can't even remember to breathe without an order. Veronica asks if she can be cured. Bella admits there's a surgery at the Imperial Hospital, but it's too expensive and the local politicians won't pay for it. The only other way would be to force the Ant Queen to reverse the process, but the odds of that are zero. Suddenly, a guard runs up to Bella and Veronica, telling them they need to process a new shipment of inmates. The guard sounds horrified, explaining that these new prisoners are more of the Ant Queen's child assassins, and they're in even worse shape than Avanj. She describes them as walking corpses. At the gate stands a white-haired girl with her mouth and neck stitched shut, and another girl with half her face replaced by plasticine. Bella is furious, wondering how many more children the Queen is going to destroy. Out in the field, Jinjia calls for a lunch break. Jalala stands at the cafeteria entrance, and Jinjia offers her a seat. Ya is sitting there, touching up her lipstick in a mirror, and mentions she's going to sunbathe and eat later. Jinjia brags about being full from drinking so much alcohol. Jolai, the giant inmate, is baffled, wondering if she could survive just by laying in the sun. Ya laughs as she leaves, teasing that someone as big as Jolai would need to absorb a dozen suns to make it. Looking at the wine barrels, Jinjia smiles, but Ya looks upset. Ya remembers their old mercenary guild, which was full of orphans. Their commander had promised to adopt every orphan they found. Another member joked about forming a bounty hunter guild so they could all get rich together, but a vision shows blood in the dirt. Ya remembers being on her knees, surrounded by the bodies of her entire guild, sobbing in agony because her family was gone. In the city, a maid brings breakfast to a hotel room. Inside, several inmates are playing cards. One girl asks if the breakfast is as good as her friend promised, and the friend confirms it's spiked, saying whoever loses the card game has to eat it. She's confident she won't lose. Suddenly, creepy worms start moving in the food, and the trays hit the floor. Back at the prison, the loyalist inmates suddenly collapse, clutching their stomachs. Inmates at every table are writhing on the floor, screaming that the food is poisoned. Fernanda bursts into Aiden's office, shouting about the poisoning. She frantically orders the guards to get the victims to the infirmary, and tells another squad to find a doctor in the city since their own staff quit. Jinjia runs to Ya, who has collapsed. Ya weakly tells her she needs to move on with her life if she doesn't make it, saying that loss is just part of the journey. Her hand goes limp, and Jinjia screams her name in a total panic. Aiden walks over and checks Ya's pulse. He tells Jinjia to stop overreacting because it's just food poisoning. He explains that she fainted because of a strong hallucinogen and points out her dilated pupils. As a guard moves Ya to a cot, Aiden says they just need to wait for the antidote from the city doctor since her vitals are stable. A guard is amazed that Aiden could figure all that out just by touching her wrist. Back in his office, Aiden is deep in thought. Fernanda wonders how someone poisoned that much food, guessing the cook was responsible. Aiden immediately rejects that, saying the cook has been loyal for years. Fernanda is horrified, realizing that if the cook is innocent, there's a traitor hiding among the guards. Aiden looks down and says the poisoning isn't even the biggest issue. He warns that whoever Whoever pulled off a massive attack like this is definitely gearing up for an even deadlier strike. He orders Fernanda to immediately tear apart the cell blocks to find any evidence. He tells her to bring Moyi, the Sector 4 boss. Moyi, a red-haired girl wearing a tall hat and monocle, is shown reading a book. Aiden explains that Mo has been memorizing the inmates' files for days, and her photographic memory is exactly what they need to identify every single inmate involved in the poisoning. Outside in the yard, the new girl walks up to Daly, saying she came to ask her mentor for help. The girl with her mouth sewn shut holds up her hand, revealing a creepy, magical mouth on her palm. The mouth speaks for the queen, apologizing to the new girl for their last argument and admitting that without Daly's magic, it's basically impossible to hack the prison's security network. Daly stands nearby, looking at the ground. The mouth on the hand explains that the queen has a master plan to help Daly break her magic contract. The queen is going to use Avange to launch a massive, chaotic attack on the prison. During the absolute carnage, Daly will have the perfect opportunity to take out Aiden unnoticed. Once Aiden is gone, his magic contract on Daly breaks permanently. The queen adds that she really hopes Daly doesn't completely choke when the moment comes. Daly smiles wickedly, noting she assumed the new girl's only goal was to quietly handle Aiden, and keeping it low-key was the smartest play. But now that the new girl is intentionally starting a massive war, Daly sarcastically asks if she really thinks it's going to be that easy to win. The new girl is hiding behind a tree, watching her daughter run toward the prison walls. Jalala is desperately trying to hold the girl back, but she refuses to listen. The Ant Queen states that Aiden will figure out who poisoned the food within an hour, so they have to launch the attack right now. Walking around the corner of the building, Daly smirks and agrees to the plan, but says she needs to go visit some old friends before the real chaos starts. The new girl asks Daly to wait and holds out a bottle of purple potion. Daly turns around, completely confused at first. The strange mouth on the new girl's stomach suddenly opens like a cabinet, revealing dozens of potion bottles stored inside. Realizing what they are, Daly asks for another bottle. She warns the new girl that the Ant Queen should stay far away from her once they escape, because Lamia will absolutely finish her if they cross paths. Meanwhile, Moyi is screaming at the guards through the camera monitors, ordering them to raid cell 105 and commanding everyone in cell 106 to move to cell 107. Guards storm into a cell, totally surprising the inmate inside, who demands to know what's going on. A guard yells at her to shut up, explaining they are conducting a random sweep for contraband. Veronica feels a strange stone vibrating in her hand and asks what it is. Bella covers her mouth to hide a smirk and explains it's a heat-activated vibrating stone. The succubus is throwing an absolute fit, rolling on the floor and screaming that Veronica is completely heartless for taking her baby away. Looking down at her, Veronica sighs and says she's going to show the stone to Aiden. If he clears it as safe, she'll return it immediately. The succubus gasps in total panic, literally dropping to Veronica's feet and sobbing hysterically, begging her not to show the warden the stone. Completely confused by the extreme reaction, Veronica threatens to send both the succubus and the stone to Aiden if she doesn't calm down. A hand slaps a desk. Daly calls Asena a bookworm and asks if she's really just going to sit there and read. Asena, lying on the desk with a book, casually tells her to speak her mind. Leaning on the desk, Daly asks Asena for a massive favor. She wants to use Asena's necromancy to read Aiden's soul. She needs to know if he is still the same terrifying warden as before, and if he actually plans to release them from their contracts. Asena gives her a look of pure disgust and sarcastically asks if Daly squeezed out the last of her brain cells along with her eyeliner. Daly points out that Aiden has recently planted rat traps all over the prison. A mouse gets crushed by a trap. Daly notes she's been losing way too many of her spy mice lately and wonders if Aiden is intentionally sending her a warning. Asena sighs, telling Daly she's going to be disappointed. She explains that Aiden used to be a high-ranking church inquisitor and was literally baptized in holy water. A glowing golden skeleton of a man with a cane and solid black eyes appears. Asena explains that holy water blocks her magic. The only way to read his soul is by looking directly into his eyes, which she can't do, but she adds that she does know one thing for sure. Walking over to Asena, Daly asks what Asena meant about Aiden not being able to run. Asena explains that 2 months ago, for some unknown reason, Aiden started using a cane and lost full mobility in his right leg. Daly assumes that if she fought him, she could easily escape since he can't chase her. Asena scratches her head, while Daly shrugs, pointing out she still can't just run away because Aiden's magic contract would instantly finish her. Asena suggests they ask Jalala the elf to read his emotions instead. She apologizes for not being more helpful. Daly drops a potion bottle on the desk, mentioning it can melt her magic collar, and hints that the prison is about to get extremely loud. Before leaving, Daly invites Asena to join her at the witch coven, promising her a quiet place to read if she's tired of the prison noise. Later, Veronica awkwardly holds the vibrating stone right in front of Aiden's face. He looks down, completely embarrassed, and refuses to answer whether he can give it back to the succubus. Veronica is incredibly confused and holds her head, wondering why Bella is laughing so hard at her. She asks why the succubus was acting so crazy over it and why everyone is treating the situation like it's obvious. Veronica genuinely asks what the stone is used for. A flashback shows Fernanda giving Veronica a rapid-fire crash course on contraband with a pointer stick. In the present, Veronica drops to her knees, covering her face in absolute shame, frantically trying to figure out how to apologize for showing it to Aiden. She remembers her friends from the village hyping her up before she left, telling her she was old enough to make the warden fall in love with her. She had blushingly told them she had zero experience and there was no chance. Suddenly, a thick purple haze drifts through the air. Veronica gets a whiff of of it. Sensing the strange smell, she stands up and asks what it is. Fernanda looks confused, saying she doesn't smell anything. The haze gets thicker. A flashback shows a teacher holding a pink flower in front of a chalkboard. He tells a class of werewolf recruits that they must permanently memorize this specific scent. He asks if they know what it is. The class says no. The teacher calmly explains that it is the literal smell of conflict. A vision shows the pink flower growing near a two-faced statue. Grows on corpses and contains the power of a dark god from the Forbidden Land. The vision shows magical creatures and humans fighting terrifying shadow monsters. He explains this god once caused massive catastrophes that almost wiped out every race. The purple haze gets stronger. Veronica panics, kicks open a nearby door, and finds an inmate who just vomited purple liquid all over the floor. Veronica screams, demanding to know why the prison suddenly smells like a bone flower. Aiden's eyes go wide in absolute shock. He asks her to repeat what she said about the vomit smelling like a bone flower. She confirms it's a 100% match. Aiden flashes back to his conversation with the doctor who treated Evange. The doctor held up a vial of purple liquid and confidently diagnosed that Evange's blood was laced with bone flower venom, also known as the poison of the rotten snake heart. He added that only the Ant Queen knows how to harvest it. Jalala the elf sprints up to Aiden, screaming that Evange has completely vanished. She explains that she tried to stop the girl, but Evange violently threw her aside and started calling out for her mother. Aiden is horrified and immediately triggers a maximum alert lockdown, realizing the Ant Queen is launching her full-scale attack right now. Sirens start blaring from the top of the prison, and the city locals look up, totally confused. Some guess it's a prison alarm, while others shout that a massive riot must be happening. Suddenly, the magic barrier flickers and collapses, and the protective dome over the prison completely explodes. While the guards scramble to lock the main gates, orders come in to seal off every single cell block. The terrified guards have no idea what's going on, wondering what blew up the dome and if it's really code red. An officer orders all inmates to freeze, put their hands up, and face the wall. However, a guard catches the new girl pouring a strange potion onto a cell lock, causing the metal to smoke and melt. The guards aim their blasters and tell her to freeze or they will fire. Suddenly, massive tentacles whip out and impale the guards from behind. The Ant Queen's legs transform into a massive purple ant abdomen covered in spikes. She rips the cast off her arm, smiles wickedly, and announces that it's time to have some fun. The cell locks melt completely, and the rioters kick the doors open, storming the hallway and screaming. A guard sprints into Aiden's office to report the breakout. Aiden jumps up, and the guards tense up. The officer explains that the new girl melted the locks and that the inmate known as Mary is actively attacking the staff. Bella looks horrified, finally realizing the two new arrivals are actually the Ant Queen's assassins, and the entire riot is a coordinated conspiracy. Aiden orders everyone to stay calm, pointing out that the inmates can't escape if the guards just hold the specific choke points. He orders the Sword Sisters to secure the cell blocks. Out in the massive lobby near the main gates, the Sword Sisters stand with heavily armed guards. Aiden tells them to fire on sight if anyone tries to escape, explicitly ordering them to avoid close quarters combat, since their only job is to stall the enemy. Aiden sends Fernanda and Moyi to the central control room to protect the mechanism that powers the magic barrier. It's a massive glowing steel structure surrounded by rings. Aiden orders Moyi to handle the logistics and keep the core powered. He tells Veronica to stay and protect Fernanda and Moyi. Aiden calculates that the Silver City army should arrive in exactly 15 minutes once the siren goes off, meaning they just need to survive until then. The narrator breaks down the prison layout. Aiden is in his office, next is the control room with Fernanda, Moyi, and Veronica, then the massive lobby guarded by the Sword Sisters, and finally the cell blocks where the riot started. Looking down, Aiden is suddenly struck with absolute horror. He realizes Anthony definitely thought of this and the army is never coming. Aiden opens his desk drawer to find firecrackers, a knife, a camera, and a piece of wood. He grabs a firecracker and lights the fuse. He remembers Carol, the bounty hunter, giving him the firework as a thank you gift, telling him to light it if he ever needed emergency backup. He throws it out the window, and a massive red explosion lights up the sky. Meanwhile, Carol is in a public restroom when the explosion catches her off guard, and she curses loudly. Aiden pulls out a file with a rose on the cover. He realizes the biggest wild card is that the Ant Queen herself might use the chaos to attack him directly. Fernanda asks if they can use her file against her, and Aiden says that's exactly the plan, noting she wouldn't attack unless she thought she held all the cards. As Fernanda turns to leave, Aiden calls her back. He hands her some paperwork and winks, telling her to pay very close attention to the attached note. Fernanda looks at the papers while a tiny mouse peeks around the corner. She starts to ask a question, but Aiden cuts her off, stating that the fewer people who know about this, the better, and warns her to hide the intel immediately. Daly is eavesdropping through the mouse and realizes the note must contain a massive secret, so she decides she needs to investigate it before she openly betrays Aiden. Back in a cell, the succubus is wrapped in a blanket, sobbing and begging the Ant Queen not to finish her. The Queen looks down at her and tells her to chill because they are leaving. The Ant Queen asks if the succubus wants to join them, pointing out that since she paid for a hitman to protect her earlier, it's time to return the favor. The succubus yells that she isn't risking her life to escape when she only has 1 year left on her sentence. The Ant Queen thinks it's a weird choice but acknowledges the succubus was one of the few who actually looked out for her. She promises that if fate allows it, they will definitely meet again. The succubus is touched. She walks up to the bars and watches the inmates using their unlocked powers, wondering if Aiden can actually survive. The new girl fires her tentacles forward while Medusa notes her magic is back, though it feels like it's only at partial strength. An inmate guesses the barrier is still suppressing them, but but they aren't sure if destroying the control room will fix it. The rioters reach a massive door sealed with heavy magic. The monsters blast it with spells but complain the gate is too strong, suggesting they try to smash through the wall instead. Another inmate tells anyone with full mana to step up. The Ant Queen's tentacles feed her energy, and the queen orders everyone to step back. She blasts the gate with a massive wave of dark magic from her stomach, and the seal immediately starts cracking. The rioters cheer, hyped that the Ant Queen is as powerful as they hope. As the gate starts crumbling, Haley pulls out a set of keys. She announces that any inmate who helps stop a riot gets their sentence significantly reduced as a heroic act. She promises to cut their sentences in half. Jinja, still in shackles, screams that she doesn't care about a shorter sentence. She just wants to brutally avenge her poisoned friend. The gate completely explodes, and the inmates sprint through the smoke, cheering for the queen. The tigress remembers the inmates in solitary and asks if they're going to break them out too. The Ant Queen asks why they should waste time saving trash. The tigress and the lizard argue that leaving them behind is heartless and that they shouldn't abandon their own people. The queen goes silent, then smirks. She agrees and hands over a potion, explaining it can melt doors and heal wounds, telling them to use it if things get critical. The tigress thanks her. The next set of gates explodes with purple energy. A massive crowd of rioters storms out, screaming that they are going to annihilate anyone in their way. Behind the wall, the massive glowing control sphere sits, watching through a window. Fernanda confirms the inmates have breached the sector and orders the guards to execute the defense plan. The automated security system activates, magic combat puppets deploy, and a giant mechanical lion is released. The lion roars and charges, stalling the inmates. The guards raise their weapons and are ordered to fire. A magical freezing ray blasts across the gates, creating a massive ice wall in front of a terrified inmate. Another girl screams a warning and summons a shield to block the attack. Standing behind the guard wall, one of the sword sisters asks how the inmates are using magic while the suppression barrier is active. She asks Jinja to push forward and test their strength. Jinja cracks her knuckles, complaining that her only real skill is beating up people she hates. Mandy tries to stop her, but Jinja ignores her and leaps into the crowd. A guard asks why the sword sisters aren't following Aiden's orders to stay back, but they confidently state that they are elite warriors and have things under control. Meanwhile, Aiden and Carol are standing near a door covered in dozens of lethal traps. Aiden notes the prison is full of rats, and Carol sarcastically replies that she happens to be an affordable exterminator. Aiden tells her to drop the sarcasm because they know how bad the situation is and need to get to work. A vision reveals heavily armed mercenaries guarding the final gates. Carol explains that she has already positioned her crew around the perimeter to ensure that no inmates escape into Silver City, and she demands 1,000 gold for the job. 2 elite mercenaries are shown ready for action. Carol adds that she also brought 100 of her most lethal bounty hunters to join the fight against the inmates directly, offering to rent them out as temporary guards. Considering the extreme risk, she's charging 100% gold per hunter and asks how many he wants to hire. Aiden doesn't hesitate. He signs a blank check and tells her he's hiring every single one of them. Smiling, Carol tucks her hair behind her ear and mentions she never doubted him, though she'd heard a rumor that his budget was completely frozen. Aiden hands her the check and tells her not to worry about his money, adding that he has a highly classified personal mission just for her. Carol's eyes light up at the thought of a huge payday, and she asks if the mission is related to the recent scandal involving the politician's son. Back in the middle of the brawl, Jinja realizes something is wrong. Looking around, she notices she's completely surrounded, but the actual ringleaders of the riot are nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, Medusa blasts her in the back with a massive fireball. Jinja hits the ground hard as Medusa screams for everyone to gang up on her. A massive crowd of rioters charges at Jinja, yelling that they're going to rip her apart. A massive energy explosion erupts from the center of the crowd. Jinja stands up, crackling with lightning, and declares that this time, she's actually going to kill them. She remembers using this exact power on the battlefield. Surging with electrical energy, she drops into a combat stance with sparks flying off her muscles. With absolute madness in her eyes, she laughs, saying it's actually great to be fighting alone because she can go completely all out without worrying about hitting her own team. Jinja throws her hands up and unleashes a devastating wave of lightning that blasts multiple rioters at once. The rebels are completely shocked by her raw magical power, realizing they were wrong to assume she was just a physical brawler, and they scream for a retreat. The queen watches and tells her crew that Jinja is the legendary mercenary who single-handedly wiped out 1,000 elite vampire knights, warning them that they absolutely cannot beat her in a straight fight. Jinja sprints forward at lightning speed, smashing through inmates and sending them flying. She instantly closes the gap and ends up right in front of the Ant Queen, who is standing next to Yvonne. Jinja demands to know how the queen knows so much about her past. Smiling, the queen claims she witnessed Jinja's legendary battle herself. A flashback shows lightning striking the sky as an army of vampires on horseback charges across a battlefield. The queen narrates that she watched the lightning literally tear the sky apart as the vampires charged, noting that not a single one survived the blast. Daly stands nearby, generating a ball of magic at her fingertips. She points out that despite Jinja's power, she still can't match Yvonne's raw strength. The queen smirks and says Jinja is more than welcome to test that theory. Suddenly, a voice asks Daly why she doesn't test her own strength first. A magic circle instantly spawns right in front of Jinja's face. A massive snake bursts out and violently knocks her to the ground. Jinja recovers, exhales a cloud of magic smoke at the snake, and traps it inside a glowing magic circle. Bound in magical chains, Jinja demands to know why Daly is suddenly attacking the rebels. An inmate in the crowd yells at the others to stop attacking Jinja, warning them that she's absorbing the power power of an ancient god and that every hit only makes her stronger. Daily calms them down, assuring them that Jinja is completely immobilized. The rioters are totally confused about how Daily even knows that magic, since the ancient god's entire bloodline was supposedly wiped out. Looking incredibly dark and sinister, Daily stares at the floor and yanks on a rope she's holding. Jalala the elf is dragged out of a magic portal and hits the floor hard. Pulling against the rope, Jalala screams that she can't read Aiden's emotions at all, so keeping her tied up is completely pointless. Watching from her cell, the water creature calls Jalala a massive liar. Still wrapped in magic chains, Jinja screams at the retreating rioters, taunting the cowards to try hitting her with real spells. Looking ahead, she gets totally confused. A flashback shows her village before she left for the vampire war. A group of kids ran up to her, and a little girl begged Jinja not to forget them. Jinja promised to come back and save them, telling them just to wait for her. The villagers were amazed when she actually returned, since everyone assumed her entire army had been slaughtered. In the flashback, Jinja and Ya ask a bartender where the kids from the Forbidden Village went. The bartender explains that some random woman adopted them all, saying they at least won't starve now. In the present, the girl with her mouth violently sewn shut stares at Jinja. Jinja realizes in absolute horror that this mutilated girl is the exact same kid from her village who begged to be saved. The queen calls the girl to follow her. The queen laughs wickedly as Jinja screams in pure, unhinged rage, swearing she will brutally murder the queen for turning those innocent kids into horrifying experiments. Meanwhile, a massive mechanical lion fights alongside the inmates against the guard puppets. The familiar roars at the retreating guards who yell that the gates are completely blocked. An inmate runs up to the queen, begging her to do something. Dozens of creepy, glowing eyes suddenly open in the air above Daily. Daily summons the magic of the Great Falcon. A massive magical bird materializes and dive bombs the mechanical lion, shredding the guard puppets to pieces. The guards are absolutely stunned, watching their defenses get annihilated. The mechanical lion loses all its power and shatters. Daily, still holding Jalala on a leash, explains that this is the true power of a great witch. She specializes in summoning magic, using her hidden eyes as storage for insanely powerful spells. The rioters cheer, realizing that with Daily on their side, breaking out is a sure thing, and they swear to make the guards pay. A terrified guard asks what they should do next. Fernanda screams for everyone to fall back immediately. While retreating, she asks her squad how the inmates are able to use so much magic, wondering if the suppression collars are completely broken. Moyi checks a tablet and confirms the collars are functioning perfectly. She realizes the magic surge is coming from an external source. She explains the Ant Queen is a master alchemist and must have brewed a potion that overclocks the inmate's mana. If an inmate normally operates at 90% power, the collar suppresses them, but the potion boosts them to 110%, letting them bypass the limit. Fernanda realizes the ultimate danger. If the collars overload and snap, the inmates will regain their full power. She guesses a system reboot might fix it, assuming they have enough backup energy stones. She orders Bella to sprint to the vault and grab them. The guards run down the hall yelling that they need to reach the safe zone before the rioters catch them. The vampire is visibly shaking. Medusa asks what's wrong, jokingly asking if she just needs a nap. Daily watches Ophelia holding her head and notes she hasn't looked right for days. Looking ahead, Daily asks the queen why she didn't just brew a potion to melt the collars off completely. The queen explains her potion couldn't break the physical locks. She details how she stabbed Ophelia to inject a hyperstimulant directly into her brain, spike her mana, and break the suppression. Daily asks what happens if the stimulant isn't removed. She realizes the queen's plan is incredibly toxic and will literally fry the inmates' brains, proving the queen is as ruthless as ever. An inmate runs up and warns them about a major roadblock. The corridor leading to the safe zone is heavily fortified with spears and magical turrets. The inmate tells the queen the guards are pinned down but still firing, calling it a death trap. Smiling wickedly, the queen says there's nothing to worry about. She pulls up a map showing 3 separate maintenance tunnels flanking the corridor. She explains they can use their massive numbers to split into 3 squads, bypass the turrets, and flank the guards at the final gate. The inmates cheer and immediately split up. Daily asks the queen what her actual endgame is. Inside the heavily fortified security room, the walls are lined with weapons pointed directly at the corridor. The queen admits the turrets are far too armored for her to take down, so she tells Daily not to even worry about the inmates. With a wicked smile, the queen reveals that her employer only paid for Aiden's head, so she couldn't care less if the rioters get taken out in the hallway. In fact, she thinks it's better if they get wiped out to serve as a distraction. She turns around and orders Evange to clear the path. The turrets open fire, launching a massive wave of spears and bullets. Every single projectile slams into Evange's tiny body from every direction. One of the inmates screams in horror, wondering how a kid is supposed to fight when she's been turned into a pincushion. The queen just tells her to watch, bragging that her ultimate assassin is capable of some pretty terrifying things. Evange stands there in her torn dress, literally bristling with bullets and spears. She reaches behind her back, and a massive rifle and revolver physically grow right out of her spine, ripping the weapons from her own body. She aims the revolver forward and casually points the rifle behind her. The inmates are completely stunned by her raw power. Evange's body actually absorbs the kinetic energy of the guards' bullets and fires it right back at them with twice the force. The guards scream for a retreat, completely overwhelmed by her insane firepower. In another part of the prison, Jinja hears footsteps approaching her inside the magic circle. She screams at whoever it is to attack her, demanding more pain so she can forcefully break her magical shackles. She suddenly gets slapped right across the face. The succubus nervously asks if a slap is enough, but Jinja yells that it was barely a tap. She begs the succubus to stab her or hit her with a rock. Even in insulting her by asking if she skipped breakfast as a kid. The succubus just cries that the rioters stole all her stuff. Jalala is terrified by a voice behind her as the water creature slithers around her bed, calling her a liar. The creature lifts its bedsheet to reveal glowing magical symbols written all over it, and green magic shadows begin to spawn. Out in the city, the locals look up in shock as the sky turns a sickly green. They panic as thunder shakes the city on a perfectly sunny day, realizing the weather has been completely corrupted. In another area, Aiden runs into Asena the necromancer in the hallway and tells her she's supposed to be hiding in the library. She casually replies that the library is a total disaster zone right now, pointing out that nobody is trying to read during a massive riot. Aiden suggests she hide in his office instead and asks if she's there to challenge him. She takes off her glasses, her green eyes glowing with intense magic, and says no. She casually offers to store his soul for safekeeping, just in case the rioters actually manage to finish him off. Down in solitary confinement, the tigress and the lizard are desperately searching for their friends. They hear muffled screams coming from under the floorboards and rip open a hatch. The trapped inmates beg to be pulled out, with one girl crying that she refuses to go back down there because a terrifying monster howls non-stop. She says she'd rather die than listen to that torture again. In an underground cell, a horrifying monster with massive teeth and rotting skin thrashes against the walls. The bird inmate swears she's going to get revenge, while the lizard asks the tigress to find an exit since they've been separated from the main group. The tigress points at a heavily reinforced cell and suggests they release the Wendigo to clear a path. The others are terrified, pointing out it's locked in a maximum security vault for a reason. The bird mentions she heard the Wendigo was created by an evil god and warns it might just go insane and slaughter them all. The Sword Sisters are watching the inmates through a security monitor. They notice the inmates chose to save their friends rather than just releasing the Wendigo for chaos. The lizard bares her teeth, demanding to know how the sisters tracked them down, but the tigress cuts her off, bragging that she can easily crush the two of them. The tigress activates her beast form, her body surging with feral power as she growls aggressively. Suddenly, her instincts flare up, screaming that she's in extreme danger. She senses attacks before they happen, her animal intuition allowing her to dodge strikes that would have ended her. She narrowly avoids a sword swing, realizing this instinct makes her nearly untouchable if her reflexes stay fast. But then the tigress freezes in pure terror. She senses an overwhelming, lethal aura coming from both sisters. She has no idea who they really are, but she realizes her instincts are useless because the killing intent is coming from everywhere at once. Spinning around, the tigress screams in panic, telling her crew the vibe has shifted and they need to surrender immediately. Ignoring the warning, the boar inmate activates her powers and blindly charges the sisters, arrogantly screaming that she can crush them. The tigress screams for her to stop, but it's too late. The sisters casually point their daggers, and in a flash of invisible force, the boar is literally turned into ground meat. The inmates scream in horror as the pirate realizes her friend is gone. Realizing the Wendigo is their only hope, the tigress screams at everyone to run. Potion bottles the queen gave them to boost their stats. She suggests that if they feed all of them to the Wendigo, it might actually kill the sisters. The monsters pry the Wendigo's jaws open and dump a dozen vials of the stimulant down its throat. The bird nervously asks how many they were supposed to use, and the lizard admits she just poured all of them. The Wendigo's eyes snap wide open. The tigress screams at them to hurry as she dodges the sisters' lethal strikes. Suddenly, a massive, terrifying shadow falls over the group. The Wendigo mutates into an absolute behemoth that completely blocks the hallway. Multiple eyes, faces, and screaming mouths erupt across its flesh, with creepy human-like limbs clawing out of its body. It unleashes a nightmarish howl, forced into a mutated superform by the overdose. The tigress leaps onto the back of the lizard, who has also mutated into a giant beast, and asks what went wrong. The lizard explains the potion was toxic, and she only mutated to escape the Wendigo's rampage. The massive monster charges down the hall, smashing through everything. Inmates scream in terror as the hallway goes dark, horrified by the monstrosity. Back in flashback, Jinjia swings her battle axe, carving through rioters. She's surrounded by the bodies of enemies and her own fallen squad. A terrified soldier runs up, screaming that the mission was a setup and that no reinforcements are coming. Their army was sacrificed as bait. Suddenly, the hand closes his eyes in despair and spares the soldier with a quick strike. A flashback shows Jinjia face to face with a vampire leader in a red dress. The vampire orders her army to attack, and a massive horde of knights slaughters Jinjia's remaining soldiers. Jinjia stands still, completely broken, deciding she'd rather just die and be buried with her squad. In the present, the inmates on the giant lizard sprint toward the exit, screaming for everyone to get out of the way. Jinjia, her body covered in glowing black tattoos, sprints directly toward Wendigo's gaping mouth. She shoves the other inmates out of the way, engulfed in blinding lightning as she unleashes her maximum power. Her file flashes. Number 0330, Jinjia, serving a life sentence. The succubus is thrown clear of the blast and hits the floor hard, clutching her head in pain. A massive, electrified beam of raw energy blasts right past her, leaving her shell-shocked. Standing right in front of the monster, Jinjia fires beams of concentrated light from her hands, severing the Wendigo's tentacles and screaming at it to die. The succubus stands up, completely disoriented and screaming that she doesn't know where she is. Suddenly, a massive boot smashes through the ceiling of the cage above her. Camilla the dragon reaches down, yanks the succubus into the cell, and tells her to stay low. The succubus yells at her to stop pulling so hard because her shorts got caught, but Camilla just drags her away from the deadly energy beams, telling her she should just be grateful to be alive. The succubus completely breaks down, sobbing that she can't fight anymore and begging Camilla to help Aiden. Gripping Camilla's hand, she's practically hysterical. Camilla asks what she saw that traumatized her so badly, wondering if it was just a nightmare, but the succubus shakes her head. She cries out that she had a vision of Aiden lying on the ground, bleeding out, while a massive crowd of 800 inmates brutally desecrated his body. She sways with grief, saying it was the most horrifying thing she's ever seen. Camilla asks if the succubus was part of that mob, but she insists that if she had been there, she would have done everything to stop it. Outside, a terrifying monster covered in eyes and stingers lets out a roar. Camilla warns the succubus that they're the ones in immediate danger. She explains that since Jinja is channeling the power of the ancient god, she's gone completely berserk. She won't be able to tell friends from enemies, turning the whole area into a death zone. In her supercharged state, Jinja screams at the monster to hit her harder, bragging that its attacks won't finish her, but the recoil will destroy the creature instead. Inmates trapped in their cells are screaming for help, terrified the building is about to collapse. Camilla kicks open the water creature's cell. The creature mumbles something while holding up a blanket covered in glowing symbols. The girls sprint down the hall, with Camilla literally carrying the succubus in her arms. Nearby, escaping inmates yell at each other to move faster, warning that if they don't get out right now, it's game over for everyone. On the other side, a combat puppet swings a massive blade at Yvange, but she rolls right under the strike and blasts the puppet with her shotgun at point-blank range. She leaps backward, firing perfectly and dropping 2 more targets mid-air. The inmates running behind her cheer, hyped that Yvange is clearing a path, and they sprint toward the exit. The Ant Queen and Daly watch the escape. The Ant Queen asks Daly why we didn't just mass-produce assassins like Yvange. She effortlessly dodges a puppet's strike while explaining her theory. If the witches created an army of Yvange clones, they would be unstoppable and could rule the entire continent. Daly gives her a look of pure annoyance. She sarcastically congratulates her on being the smartest person in the room, before bluntly stating that ruling the continent doesn't actually matter to them. Daly glares at her and tells her that since she chose the evil side, she's permanently exiled from the Coven. She forbids her from ever using her name or calling her a teacher again, saying the Coven wants no part of this messy drama. The Queen cruelly adds that anyone who can't adapt gets eliminated, pointing out that if she actually understood Lamia's true power, she never would have tried to manipulate her. On the other side, a massive squad of heavily armed soldiers sprints through the halls, stacking up outside a room to check their gear and call out for the wounded. At the central zone gates, Veronica looks confused and asks Mandy why they've fallen back so far. Mandy, completely out of breath, explains that Daly and Yvange have gone totally rogue and they simply don't have the firepower to stop them. She admits she has no idea where Aiden is, but without him, their defense has completely collapsed. Many ask the guards about the backup plan. An officer explains that if they lose the cell blocks, protocol says to fall back to the central hub and wait for the military. Veronica asks when the army is supposed to arrive, and the guard looks terrified, admitting they should have been here a long time ago. At a fancy bar in the city, Anthony is buying drinks for a large group of military officers. He announces that all their food and drinks are on him today. When one officer mentions that their meeting is running late, Anthony waves it off, claiming Aiden has the prison under total control. He lies to the officers, telling them the riot is fake. He argues that since the papers have been hyping up Aiden's new guards, Aiden just triggered the alarms for a PR stunt to show off his team. Slightly drunk, Anthony insists that if the army shows up now, they'll just ruin the show. The officers agree, deciding to stay and drink until the drill is over, joking that they should take notes on how genius politicians think. Suddenly, Anthony is shocked when the bar door swings open. He screams at a delivery guy, demanding to know why an armored truck full of energy stones is parked outside. The guy casually explains it's a priority order for Rose Prison. Anthony yells that there's a fake riot and they shouldn't be making deliveries. The supplier rolls his eyes, explaining that the prison just initiated a Phase 3 lockdown, which is why they ordered every energy stone in the city. Anthony argues that Phase 3 is impossible nonsense, but the supplier tells him to take it up with the tax office. He points out that Anthony's budget cuts didn't matter because Aiden paid in full, in cash, before he even finished reading the order. Anthony is mind-blown, panicking over how Aiden afforded it with frozen funds. He desperately hopes the money was counterfeit as he shoves the supplier out of his way and screams at him to move. Back at the prison, while Asena holds a glowing green orb of necromancy magic, Aiden sits behind his desk, looking totally chill. Asena asks if he's actually going to do something, noting that the main gates have been breached. Aiden tells her not to rush, explaining that this riot isn't just a breakout, it's a massive stress test for his tactical drills. In reality, Aiden is internally panicking, a drop of sweat rolling down his face. He's terrified because the gates fell much faster than he expected. A digital map shows a massive line of inmates storming the gate, and he knows that if Fernanda can't hold the central hub, everything is over. However, because Asena is sitting right there, he can't change his strategy or show any fear. He has to maintain the fearless persona of the original Lord Aiden, or Asena will realize he's an imposter and turn on him. He thinks to himself that all he can do now is pray that nobody makes a fatal mistake. In the hallway, the rioters are hyping each other up. One brags that they'll easily crush the central zone because the guards are only using non-lethal rays and the puppets are only wounding people. Another laughs, saying Aiden is about to realize how arrogant he was. Daly remembers the old Aiden, a towering warrior in heavy armor with a massive sword. She realizes his current confidence is a total act. She knows he isn't the same person anymore because the real Aiden would have been in the hallway slaughtering them himself instead of hiding in an office. Suddenly, a rat with glowing red eyes squeaks. Daly smirks, realizing she found what she was looking for. She sees sees dozens of rat traps near a specific door and realizes Aiden placed them there to stop her spy mice from entering. Remembering how secretive Aiden was being about a hidden document, she decides she has to know exactly what he's hiding. Outside the prison, a horrifying swarm of thousands of rats crashes through a fruit stand, sending apples flying. The locals scream in terror and run as the rat plague swarms straight toward the prison. Back at the gates, a massive fireball hits the barricade. The guards panic, yelling that the gate is compromised and they don't know how to hold the line. They beg for someone with combat experience to give them a strategy. Standing behind them, Mandy casually mentions she used to be a supreme commander of an entire army. Mandy steps up and screams for the backline to prepare their ranged weapons while the front line locks shields. The loyalist inmates summon a massive magical dome around the squad and push forward. Mandy screams the order to open fire. On the other side, Medusa asks the queen if she can smell Aiden nearby. The queen sniffs the air and says no, guessing he's hiding in his office. Smiling wickedly, she tells Medusa the situation. Aiden is completely isolated and helpless. The ant queen grins, declaring it's time to send her ants out to hunt, and unleashes a massive wave of dark magic to her sleeper agents. Down in the prison infirmary, the injured inmates suddenly start waking up. Ya's eyes snap open, glowing with a toxic purple light. Every single patient in the room sits up at once, massive purple tentacles violently erupting from their backs. The ant queen narrates that Aiden's biggest tactical mistake was ignoring the wounded. By filling the infirmary with patients, he essentially gave her a free army right next to his safe room, since the infirmary hallway leads directly to his office. The mutated horde of mind-controlled inmates charges down the hallway with terrifying speed. Veronica stops in her tracks, her werewolf senses picking up the heavy scent of poison. Her eyes go wide with horror as she realizes the infirmary has been compromised. The doors explode outward, and Veronica panics, realizing their flank is wide open and the horde has a straight shot to Aiden. Veronica watches in shock as her teammates struggle to hold back the riot, while a sickly sweet smell fills the air. Fernanda turns to her and orders her to stick by Aiden and protect him at all costs if things go south. Veronica is confused, asking why a legendary invincible warden would ever need her protection. Fernanda looks around nervously and drops a massive secret. She tells Veronica that Aiden actually lost his memory and all his powers 2 months ago, turning into a normal, powerless human overnight. Veronica is absolutely floored. Fernanda explains that she kept it a total secret because almost no one in the prison can be trusted, admitting she isn't even sure if the sector commanders are truly loyal. As the commanders hold the line, Fernanda admits they are about to find out who is really on their side. Veronica is frozen in shock, but Fernanda tells her she hopes she remembers exactly why she wanted to come back to the prison in the first place. Veronica flashes back to her village, remembering Aiden standing tall as a stoic protector. Resolving herself, she tosses her weapon aside and sprints away from the main fight. Mandy yells after her, but Fernanda orders the guards to open the side door and let Veronica into the infirmary hallway. Moyi and Fernanda hold down the control room as the heavy doors glow green behind Veronica. Just as she passes through, the infected horde bursts in behind her. Veronica drops into a werewolf sprint, running at maximum speed with the monsters right on her heels. She turns and shoves the first inmate into a wall to slow them down, but her instincts scream danger. The largest mutated inmate winds up and punches Veronica square in the face, knocking her to the floor. Back at the barricade, the guards are being completely overwhelmed. One guard furiously yells at Mandy, accusing her of lying about her experience and sending them to die. Mandy defends herself, saying she didn't realize the inmates were this strong and that her tactics were meant for fighting standard bandits, not superpowered prisoners. She admits she once asked a military commander for advice, and he just told her to send the front line in first. The guard screams that bandits and magical inmates are completely different, demanding a real strategy. Mandy panics, admitting she's useless in a women's prison, and bragging that she would have won by now if it were a men's prison. Suddenly, an idea clicks for Mandy and she smirks. A guard blows a whistle for a full retreat, confusing the inmates. One inmate mocks them for running, and the Ant Queen orders a full charge to prevent them from regrouping. Mandy leads the retreat and activates her magic, charming the fox. A glowing magic circle forms as she chants a spell about desire, and a thick pink fog rolls out. The inmates assume it's just a smokescreen since it doesn't seem poisonous, but seconds later, the entire horde stops, violently shaking and gagging. Even the guards start feeling nauseous, complaining about a disgusting smell. Smiling wickedly, Mandy explains her fox charm releases potent pheromones that brainwash anyone attracted to her. A gagging guard asks if she was just trying to make the inmates throw up so they could escape. Mandy explains the smell is only gross to people who aren't into women, admitting the plan backfired because she usually uses it on men. She notes that almost everyone, guards included, is currently sick on the floor. Mandy points out that in a prison this big, there have to be at least a few inmates who like women. The sick inmates are shocked to see one of their own standing perfectly fine. Medusa the Gorgon, her snake hair blushing bright red, screams that the aroma is confusing but incredibly attractive. Mandy looms over her new puppet, announcing she can now use her best spells, and invites Medusa into her game. Medusa tries to fight it, but Mandy grabs her hand, causing Medusa to hallucinate that they are at a wedding. As they dance, Mandy whispers that it might just be a dream, but the charmed Gorgon decides it's worth it. Mandy tells her to hold on tight because the celebration is starting. Under Mandy's control, Medusa fires devastating spells directly at her own teammates. A guard watches in shock, asking why Mandy didn't just do that from the start. The rioters scream to capture Medusa before she wipes them out. Watching the chaos, house, Daily asks the queen if she should stop Mandy. The queen tells her to wait, reminding her that Medusa is infected with parasites and she can stop her whenever she wants. She tells Daily to save her magic for the final fight against Aiden. She turns around and yells that the real battle is just starting. An inmate reports that number 13, the water creature, is making a move. Number 13 and her friends are sprinting forward with a massive blanket covered in glowing symbols, aiming it straight at the ant queen. The queen violently attacks number 13 with her tentacles. Then a flashback shows a ruined city under a thunderstorm where a giant purple tentacle reaches through the rain. The water creature, looking desperate, tells a little girl to hide in a cave. She explains she carried the girl all the way from the Forbidden Land and is out of magic. The girl begs her not to leave, but the creature promises the magical barriers will keep her safe and swears to return. Suddenly, a giant tentacle bursts into the cave and a dagger is pressed to the girl's throat. A terrifying voice calls her a little pig. A massive statue wrapped in red thread looms over her, moving spiked tentacles near her face. A shadowy figure offers her cockroaches as food. The girl cries in terror and sprints into a patch of thorny bushes, screaming for her mistress to save her. The blood-covered tentacles slam shut, trapping her. She screams that she fought too hard to escape and refuses to go back. A vision reveals a little girl with a frayed noose around her neck, sprinting through a dark forest. She's screaming for a creature that promised her safety, begging it to wait for her, but she trips and falls face first into a patch of sharp thorns. Behind a set of iron bars, a woman with a hidden face watches her, asking if she truly wants to see the world outside. Massive, blood-stained tentacles spread out behind the woman, one of them holding a white, bloody cloth. The woman remarked that the girl had managed to travel an incredible distance, while a voice from behind the cloth explained that she simply brought the child home once her magic was restored. Daily appears, asking the mysterious woman if she gets to decide the child's fate. The woman tells Daily to ignore the girl, explaining that her unique abilities mean she is far from being a typical magic user. From the floor, a tiny, bloody hand reaches out as the girl weakly calls for her mother. The woman notes that despite a serious head injury, the child is still crying for her mom. The girl whispers that her real mother told her to do exactly that when they were once locked in a barn with pigs. A flashback shows the girl weeping behind bars over her mother's body, which is suspended from the ceiling. Her mother had warned her that if she ever escaped the Forbidden Zone, she had to call any man dad and any woman mom just to stay alive. In the present, the girl calls the masked woman mother and pleads for help. The woman is seen placing flowers by a child's portrait near a small coffin. She gives the injured girl the dead child's clothes, bandages her arm, and asks if she's ready for the brutal training it takes to be her student. The girl nods. Suddenly, the woman points at a body under a bloody sheet and screams at the girl, telling her that since she was brave enough to experiment on people, she needs to stop crying and start practicing on herself. The girl sobs, admitting she's terrified of the pain, but the woman grabs her by the collar and tells her to fix her attitude. The girl apologizes, swearing she only did the experiments to win a competition. The woman orders her to clean up the body and keep everything a secret while she leaves the mountain for a while. Later, the woman is seen hugging the girl and giving her an award for being her top student. The girl thanks her while holding a special pendant as the other students cheer. However, the girl is later seen sitting sadly at a desk, fidgeting. She hugs a wooden doll, wishing it could hug her back. She admits she knows she's just a replacement for the teacher's dead daughter, but she's desperate to prove she's the best. Squeezing herself, she cries that she's just a normal person who can't compete with natural geniuses. She decides her only move is to modify her own body with horrifying experiments since physical upgrades don't require magic. She hugs the wooden doll, which is attached to a magic stone, believing these changes will make her unrecognizable even to her mother. A broom falls, and the girl, who is actually the future ant queen, plummets into an abyss. As she falls, she sees Daily and her teacher standing at the edge, wondering why her mother cares more about random students than her. She realizes that staying near her teacher was the only thing keeping her from the dark. At the bottom, she is violently impaled by a massive spiked tentacle. A voice from the water calls her Piglet, and a woman with a terrifying smile and a bloody hook asks if she's finally come back. Suddenly, Yvange catches an arrow right next to the queen's head, snapping her out of the trance. The queen wipes away a tear and tells Yvange she almost got trapped in a brutal illusion, but the thought of her ultimate creation saved her. Daily turns to the queen and tells her to drop the ego. Daily points out that if she hadn't used her illusions to stall the ant queen, those tentacles would have wiped everyone out. Daily pulls Jalala the elf along by a rope as they move toward the smoke. Nearby, the loyalist inmates have reverted to their tiny true forms. Number 13 is a small octopus, the tigress is a cub, and the bird is back to normal size. A minute before, the loyalist group charges. Number 13 uses the symbols on the blanket to completely blind the queen, Daily, and Yvange. Jalala drops to the floor to stay safe. Daily is suddenly grabbed by tentacles, but she commands her witch hat to attack. The brim opens like a giant mouth and eats the tentacle. Daily quickly casts a transformation spell. Number 13 and the blanket are shrunk into a tiny octopus. The succubus, who is being carried by Camilla, begs Daily to let them go since a monster is chasing them. But Daily ignores her. She blasts them all, reverting them to their base forms, and apologizes, saying she can't let them ruin the riot. She yanks Jalala toward the door, but a massive bolt of lightning erupts from the entrance. Jinja is standing there, supercharged with electrical energy. Daily is stunned by the power, realizing Jinja is a true descendant of the god. Jinja challenges Daily to a fight and charges at lightning speed. The shrunken inmates scream in terror, but Daily stays calm and chants a high-level word of the god spell. Her hat flares with magic as she weaves complex signs and fires fires a massive beam of magic into Jinjia's chest. The shockwave teleports Jinjia to another dimension. She falls through a maze of brick walls onto a massive glowing red eye. A booming voice identifies itself as the god of the labyrinths and challenges her to a game. Back in the prison, the inmates stare at a tiny glowing eye on the floor where Jinjia used to be. Daily is panting, explaining she had to use her ultimate banishment spell because Jinjia was out of control. She admits the spell drained almost all her mana, and she isn't sure how she'll recover for the final fight. Suddenly, a huge pillar of orange smoke erupts. The guards near Medusa broadcast an update from Aiden. The collars are offline, so inmates are at 100% power, but guards are strictly forbidden from using lethal force. Mandy, in her fox form, promises to do her best. In the dream, Mandy is seen on a bed next to Medusa, who is hiding under a blanket. Mandy teases her, telling her to relax so she can give her a massage. Medusa is flustered, saying Mandy is moving too fast, but Mandy climbs on top of her, promising she's a pro at acupressure. Mandy hits a pressure point, and Medusa screams as her mana instantly supercharges. Glowing with fire, Medusa throws her arms out, and every snake on her head blasts flames. Her mana recovery spikes by 1000%. A massive fireball explodes in the hallway, blasting the rioters. The inmates scream that they can't fight back and demand someone stop Medusa. Ophelia, the vampire, leaps over the flames, summoning her blood sword and laughing that she's going to enjoy taking out her former friend. Suddenly, 3 arrows hit Ophelia's sword arm. The bounty hunters have arrived, aiming to execute her since they only care about the bounty. Ophelia turns into a swarm of bats and flies away with burning wings, complaining that the hunters are being unethical. Outside, a guard holds back the hunters, saying the magic barrier will destroy them if they push forward. Bella tells the guard to relax, explaining the outer barrier is just a scare tactic to save money. The guard is shocked, having thought it was lethal. Inside, Daily asks the queen how she plans to get through the army of bounty hunters now that she's exhausted. The queen calmly says she'll use Avenge to wipe them out. Daily is furious, saying she needs her remaining power to finish Aiden and fulfill her mentor's mission. Then a skeleton suddenly phases out of a magic circle, announcing it's tired of waiting. The queen asks who it is, and Daily explains that Asena is finally making her move. Speaking through the skeleton, Asena admits she wasn't sure she could gather enough souls for high-level magic, but since the riot resulted in so many casualties, she has plenty of fuel. She asks if they're ready to push forward. Daily admits she's burned most of her energy and can't take on Aiden alone. Asena coldly replies that she doesn't care about their drama and just wants to get back to her books, but she promises to help jump Aiden once they reach his office. Daily agrees, noting that Asena's backup gives them a real shot. Meanwhile, the queen thinks about the mutated inmates she sent from the infirmary, wondering if they've reached the office yet. As a purple parasite wriggles out of her hand, she hopes her puppets at least manage to wound him. However, the queen is shocked to find Veronica standing in a hallway covered in the remains of the mutated inmates. The queen realizes with horror that the werewolf single-handedly wiped out her entire mutant army. Then footsteps echo as the tigress violently rips parasites out of her own back. She realizes the cafeteria food was spiked and remembers a friend telling her to just eat it after losing a card game. Staring at the massive worm she pulled from her arm, she mocks the queen for thinking such a naive strategy could mind control her. Veronica drops to her knees, completely exhausted. She warns the tigress to surrender or end up like the dead mutants. The tigress, showing off her shoulder tattoos, smirks and notes it's rare to see Aiden's ultimate weapon looking so beat. The hallway is silent except for Veronica's heavy breathing. The tigress deduces that Veronica tapped too deeply into her feral instincts to win, and it will take a long time for her brain to recover. She explains that after a massive conflict, werewolves enter a berserker state where they can barely stay sane. Looking at the exhausted werewolf, the tigress refuses to surrender and taunts Veronica to try and finish her. Back to Daily and others, Daily opens a portal near the queen, reminding her they have a boss fight with Aiden and need to save their mana. She asks the queen to summon her daughters for backup, but the queen admits she has no one left. She uses them as living batteries to fuel her own magic. Ophelia flies up in bat form as the queen, Evange, Daily, and Alish Jalala step into the portal. A rat screams for them to wait and follows. The wounded rioters are left behind, completely confused as to why their leaders just abandoned them. Medusa and the bounty hunters continue to push forward. The rioters are panicking because they're running out of mana and are still locked at 10% power. A map reveals the escape plan is falling apart. One group makes it through, but the 2 flanking squads are pinned down and half the crew is gone. In the chaos, a rioter gets punched by her own teammate and asks why. The attacker tells her to wake up, realizing the queen ditched them. As 2 girls start brawling, others desperately chase after the queen, begging her to wait. One of the fighting girls uses a devil's touch curse, instantly ending her opponent with magical swords from the floor. Another inmate asks why she would do that over a minor argument. The killer panics, claiming she didn't mean for it to be lethal, and blaming the caller for messing with her magic control. The riot turns into a total free-for-all. Inmates like the Kikura and the mummy argue and fight, while others beg for peace as the guards close in. Watching from the control room, Fernanda pulls up the files for Kikura and the mummy. She orders the guards to remotely lower the suppression on the mummy's collar to level 3. The mummy immediately summons a swarm of lethal bees that takes out the Kikura. Confused, the mummy wonders why her magic suddenly spiked. Moi asks Fernanda why they're helping the inmates finish each other off. Fernanda explains that the new energy stones allow them to manipulate the collars, helping them get rid of the most annoying rioters. She adds that since S-tier inmates are involved, staying non-lethal is no longer an option. A flashback shows Aiden handing Fernanda a classified hit list, explaining they need to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He coldly stated that the list contained problematic inmates and that Fernanda should ensure they suffered accidental ends during the riot so he wouldn't be legally responsible. He warned that Daly would be suspicious and try to investigate, which would keep her distracted. He told Fernanda to hide the list immediately. Stepping through the portal, Daly thinks about Aiden's tactics. She's suspicious because he was using non-lethal rounds earlier, and she wonders why he's suddenly orchestrating accidents instead of just executing people. In the prison lobby, the portal closes. Asena, sitting on a desk, notes the rioters have finally arrived. In his office, Aiden keeps a cold, stoic face, but internally he knows the final showdown has begun. The portal opens inside Aiden's office. The Queen, Evange, Daly, Jalala, and a trailing Ophelia step out. The Queen sarcastically tells Aiden she's flattered he stayed to greet them. Aiden calmly asks what she wants to be called, and she transforms into her massive Ant Queen form, telling him to call her whatever he wants. Standing before her with his blade unsheathed, Aiden listens as she admits that despite the hiccups, his strategy was top tier. The map shows the final setup. The defenders hold the choke points, while the Queen is locked in the office with Aiden. A massive werewolf roars. A flashback shows a teacher explaining to Veronica that werewolf training is more mental than physical. They watch a guard poke a chained werewolf with a spear as the teacher explains that once feral instincts kick in, the smell of blood takes over the brain. The teacher warns her that she must set a clear goal before a fight and isolate herself afterward to find her sanity again. Back in the present, Veronica is still on her knees, but she's totally locked in on her goal. Either the tigress gives up, or Veronica finishes her. The tigress just winds up a punch, bragging that she can take whatever the werewolf throws at her. Veronica is stunned as the tigress begins to glow with fiery energy, punching her fists together and declaring that she has no reason to hold back anymore. Veronica remembers her teacher's voice warning her about enemies with geometric tattoos. She pictures a girl with an unfinished triangle on her shoulder moving at lightning speed. Standard martial arts were useless against them. The teacher explained that these fighters, known as apostles, carry the divine power of ancient gods and can literally shatter reinforced concrete or crater the earth with a single step. Facing the tigress's overwhelming power, Veronica realizes she has to forget every rule she was ever taught. To survive, she has to completely surrender to her animal instincts. The tigress just smirks, calling Veronica a decent warm-up. Back in the office, the rioters are facing off against Aiden, with Asena standing in the middle. Aiden calmly tells them that since they've made it this far, they must have already picked who's going to die first. The Queen looks at him with pure arrogance. Daly recalls the Queen's original plan. Evange was supposed to poison Aiden's voice so he couldn't cast his death contract, leaving him vulnerable for the Queen to finish him off. But suddenly, Evange defies her mother. She screams in pain, stepping on the Queen's leg as she sprints toward Aiden. Evange declares that she finally has her own free will and her goal isn't to escape, it's to protect Aiden. She starts charging a massive amount of magic in her hands, ready to defend him. Aiden just coldly calls out her name and asks if she finished her homework. Evange instantly freezes. Her magic dies out and she looks incredibly anxious. The Queen is shocked that her ultimate assassin isn't following orders and furiously demands an attack. Evange just holds her head in a panic, muttering about her assignments. Aiden realizes his psychological warfare worked. By asking her complex questions about fairy tales every day, he forced her brain to think critically. That flood of logic completely overwrote the Queen's conditioning. The Queen is fuming as her student glitches, and she has her tentacles pull Evange back to be reset. Aiden then turns his attention to Daly. With a sly smile, he addresses her by her full name, making her panic. He asks why she was dumb enough to join the rebels and threatens to recite her execution spell right now. Daly immediately folds. She sprints forward, claiming she never actually participated in the riot and was just protecting the weakest inmate, Jalala. When Jalala tries to call out the lie, Daly quickly casts a sleep spell to knock her out. Aiden accepts the story, telling Daly to step aside. Internally, though, Aiden is sweating. He doesn't actually know the spell. The book was ruined by an ink spill months ago. He's been bluffing the whole time. Asena watches the drama and sighs, bored by the standoff and wanting to go back to the library. Aiden realizes he's neutralized the Queen's allies, but he isn't sure if she's crazy enough to fight him one-on-one. He draws his sword and tries to look as arrogant as possible. In a desperate move, the Queen uses her dark magic to turn Ophelia the vampire into a literal meat puppet. Disgusting tentacles erupt from Ophelia's spine, and the Queen forces her to forge a massive blood sword. Controlling the vampire from a distance, the Queen mocks Aiden, claiming he's helpless and they're about to expose how weak he really is. Aiden stays perfectly still, telling the Queen she's about to embarrass herself. Daly and Asena watch, expecting Aiden to obliterate the riders instantly. Aiden knows that if he tries a normal duel, they'll see his sword skills are trash. He has to play it cool, so he arrogantly announces he's going to burn 100% of his mana on a single spell just to give them a fighting chance. He summons a blinding ball of light in his hand. Daly and Asena are confused why he's using light magic, though they can feel his spiritual pressure is insane. The Queen just thinks he's being dumb. She believes a flashbang won't work because her vampire puppet relies on superhuman hearing, not sight. Aiden, however, is counting on that. He knows they both rely on sound, and he has one last trick up his sleeve. Aiden throws his hand out, casting a blinding flash of light magic that completely floods the office. In that split second, he reflects on the 8-year struggle he endured just to earn a second chance at life. Everyone in the room, and even people outside the prison, are completely blinded by the light. Aiden just smiles, knowing that the darkness is where he truly belongs. A flashback shows Aiden in his past life, surrounded by empty bottles and unable to move, while someone on the phone asks if he's going going to visit his dying mother one last time. Suddenly, a massive beam of light pierces a dark sky and a body plummets to the ground. A shadow figure with glowing green eyes stands up, followed by dozens of others. A female voice announces they are the broken souls of the afterlife, noting that their hearts are full of anger and they have zero desire for redemption. A goddess with massive wings kneeling on a lake tells the souls that whoever can survive the brutal 100,000-kilometer trek across the river Styx will be granted a second chance at life. The shadows instantly sprint forward, trampling each other to win the race. As a drop of energy hits the water, the goddess warns them about the terrifying things hiding in the river. Aiden's face is shown half covered in shadow as he remembers how beautiful the goddess's voice sounded when she offered him salvation. Back in the office, the light fades into pitch black. Aiden listens closely and hears the vampire lunging at him. Dropping into a perfect combat stance, he remembers fighting for his life in the underworld. He swings his blade with brutal precision, slicing the vampire's hand clean off. The severed hand and the blood sword hit the floor. Aiden stands ready as the vampire stumbles back. The queen and Daly are still blinded, covering their faces and screaming in pain. Suddenly, a swarm of bats erupts from the severed hand on the floor and fuses back to the vampire's shoulder, instantly regenerating her arm. The new girl smirks, bragging that vampires can grow limbs back instantly, so his attack was useless. The Ant Queen holds Evange hostage with a massive tentacle, while Evange just stares blankly. The queen claims she just needs a second to reboot Evange's brain, and then Aiden will regret wasting his mana on a flashbang. Still blinded, Aiden hears the vampire charging again. The goddess's voice echoes, urging the souls to hurry because only the fastest will survive the darkness. Aiden's cape flares as he flawlessly dodges the vampire's strike and counters by slashing her across the chest. His underworld shadow overlays his body as he unleashes a blindingly fast combo, slicing the vampire from every angle. The vampire steps back, a massive scar across her cheek. She smirks, pointing out that since his sword isn't silver, he can't kill her. She lunges and lands a devastating punch right to Aiden's face. His hat flies off and his blood splatters across her knuckles. The queen laughs hysterically, mocking Aiden for calling himself a lord when her puppet can beat him down so easily. Suddenly, the vampire's hand bursts into flames. She grabs it in total confusion, screaming and asking why Aiden's blood is burning her. Asena sighs, calling the vampire an idiot. She explains that Aiden is a former holy inquisitor whose body was literally bathed in holy water. His blood is basically weaponized acid to vampires, meaning he intentionally let her punch him just to melt her. The vampire is horrified, having fallen right into the trap. Channeling his absolute rage from the underworld, Aiden winds up and delivers a devastating, blood-soaked punch to her face. The holy water in his blood instantly ignites her skin. She screams in agony, coughing up blood onto the floor. Daly watches the vampire get wrecked and casts a spell on Jalala, waking her up and turning her into a frog. Daly bonds the frog as her familiar to sync their vision and use its empathic abilities to read the room. The vampire's aura is a terrified purple, but Aiden has absolutely zero emotional aura. Daly realizes Jalala was telling the truth. Aiden feels no fear at all. Meanwhile, Daly's spy rats open a door and swarm into Aiden's secret room. Daly decides she's going to steal whatever secret he's hiding rather than fighting him. The rats find the notebook with the flower sitting right on the desk, and Daly smirks, planning to use it for blackmail. Asena notes that Aiden's leg is a major weak point, remembering how he limps through the prison. The queen hears this and targets his right leg. Aiden swings his sword, but the vampire dodges and delivers a brutal kick to his bad leg. Aiden's leg buckles in extreme pain, and he has to stab his dagger into the floor just to stay up, losing his main sword in the process. The vampire smiles wickedly, asking if he's ready to die. Aiden rips off his ruined coat and tosses it aside as she lunges with her claws, screaming that he'll pay for trying to steal her daughter. In the underworld, the goddess watches the survivors approach the finish line. She holds out a glowing ring, promising reincarnation to the first soul to touch it. A massive, terrifying shadow monster sprints over the crowd, crushing the others. It laughs and lunges for the ring, but one small shadow refuses to run and stands its ground. In the office, Aiden is on his knees, gripping his dagger as his burning blood drips down the blade. He forces himself up. Just as the giant shadow monster swings its fist in the underworld, Aiden mimics the motion. He grabs the vampire by the back of the head and violently slams her face into the floor. With her face melting from the holy blood, Aiden pins her and punches her repeatedly. The queen screams in sympathetic pain. In the underworld, the giant shadow misses its strike. In the office, the vampire desperately tries to dodge, but her face is disfigured and ruined. Completely broken, she begs him to stop. The Ant Queen is furious that Aiden reduced her ultimate puppet to garbage. Aiden picks up his sword. The vampire, her head still on fire, tries to crawl away. In the underworld, the goddess announces that the giant shadow killed everyone else and is ready to be reborn as Lord Aiden Galord. The giant shadow reaches for the ring, but suddenly a severed leg flies through the air and hits it in the face. In the office, Aiden throws his blood-soaked sword. It pierces the vampire's chest, and the mind control parasites instantly detach from her spine. Aiden stands tall, watching his defeated opponent bleed out. In the underworld, the goddess looks down at a tiny burning shadow foot on her hand. Behind the giant shadow, a smaller soul is dragging itself forward, missing a leg and burning in agony but growling with determination. The goddess laughs wickedly, loving the savagery of the soul that ripped off its own leg to win the race. She announces the deal is done, deciding that playing with this ruthless kid will be very entertaining. Wrapping a bandage around his bleeding arm, Aiden mocks the queen, wondering if her actual face is as durable as her puppets. The queen is in shock, finally realizing why Daly is so terrified of him. The queen tightens her grip on Evange while the new girl panics, saying Evange is fighting the mind control and needs more time to reboot. The queen begs Daily and Asuna to hold Aiden off for 3 minutes so she can fix her. Asuna calmly apologizes, telling the queen she's been analyzing her this whole time. She points at her and calls her absolute trash, noting that even though she knew Aiden's weaknesses, she still fought like an amateur. Asuna says she won't waste any more time on a losing battle and suggests the queen should just surrender. The queen is in a total panic, begging Daily for just 3 minutes of cover fire. Daily breaks out in a cold sweat. Her spy rats have made it into Aiden's hidden room and are currently scanning the secret notebook. Daily reads the title, Aiden's official hit list. Bleeding from a cut under his eye, Aiden notices that Daily's arrogant smirk has completely vanished. He can tell she found the hit list and realizes the riot is officially over. Flashing a sinister smile, Aiden asks Daily if she wants to roll the dice and try to take him out, noting that this is her absolute best chance. Aiden breaks down his master plan. The actual number of rioters never mattered. He pictures the broken combat puppets near the walls and explains that even if the guards had failed, the automated security would have eventually wiped everyone out anyway. On his first day, Aiden memorized the prison's power levels: D rank, basic magic; C rank, strong magic, tough for humans to fight; B rank, needs a full tactical squad to handle; A rank, superhuman power; S rank, world-ending strength capable of destroying an entire country. Aiden notes that S rank inmates are basically weapons of mass destruction. He stares down the Ant Queen, explaining that the riot was actually easy to manage because the variables were controlled, Avenge was glitching, Asuna stayed out of it, and Daily refused to commit. The whole thing hinged on Daily's choice, and Aiden had run this simulation in his head dozens of times. He asks Daily if she still wants to fight. He knows you can only outsmart a genius if they think they're the smartest person in the room. Daily is beyond horrified. She remembers reading the hit list through her rats. It stated that soft punishments were over, and inmates needed to be permanently handled. Aiden's new rule is simple. 3 major offenses during the riot equals a quiet execution. The list documented everything. Target 0652, Harpy, tricking inmates, brawling, and joining the riot. Target 4999, Heart Thief, stealing keys, brawling, and joining the riot. Result, ended by the Devil's Touch curse. Target 2933, Reef, poisoning guards, brawling, and joining the riot. Result, ended by the Bee Swarm. The queen screams at Daily to stall Aiden for 3 minutes because he's out of mana, and Avenge is almost back online, but Daily is paralyzed. She realizes the list guarantees death for anyone with 3 strikes. She sees that Aiden intentionally put her name at the very bottom, knowing she would do anything to avoid being eliminated like the others. Out in the halls, an inmate begs a bounty hunter to stop because she's trying to surrender, but a magic circle spawns and incinerates her instantly. The hunter is stunned. Another inmate is frozen solid as her collar malfunctions. Target 3420, attempting to raid the armory, brawling, and joining the riot. Target 30,630, attacking guards, brawling, and joining the riot. A spy rat watches as rioters panic. Some think the collars are glitching, but others realize they are being systematically assassinated. Daily sees the pattern. Every inmate with 3 strikes is being taken out in the chaos. Target 0891. Target 0891. Aiden looks at his bandaged hand. He knows that live ammo wouldn't have stopped S-rank rioters, but this secret protocol keeps the guards safe while making the finale look dramatic. The queen, still holding Avenge, screams at Daily to make a move, warning that if they don't fight now, they'll rot in prison forever. Aiden is confident Daily believes he's ready to cancel anyone who messes up. Daily reads the final lines of the notebook and loses it. Her rats see her exact inmate number and her 3 strikes, taking guard gear, letting the cafeteria brawl happen, and joining the riot. She looks at Aiden in pure panic, realizing she's next on the list. Making things even worse, a hamster suddenly spits out the missing gear right in front of them, proving her guilt. Daily is spiraling, having no idea how Aiden figured her out. Standing right in front of Daily, Aiden shows her his bandaged hand and calmly admits that he's lost a lot of blood and is feeling incredibly weak. Daily tenses up, her mind racing. She wonders why he didn't just attack her immediately and why he's waiting for her to make the first move. Aiden watches her closely, knowing she's sharp enough to see the trap he's setting. Daily realizes that since Aiden was locked in his office the whole time, he doesn't actually have any proof she was part of the riot. She remembers telling him she was only protecting the weak. Looking at the crippled warden, she sees the bait. He wants her to attack him. If she does, it'll be her 3rd offense, giving him a legal reason to execute her on the spot. Plus, she knows that if she kills him while he's out of mana, the death contract will instantly snap and take her out too. Aiden drops his head, knowing his psychological warfare worked, and decides to force the endgame. He points right at Daily and shouts that he's completely unarmed. He challenges her, asking if she actually has the guts to fight him or if she's just going to embarrass her entire coven by backing down. The Ant Queen is completely stunned by his arrogance. Asuna, the necromancer, just smirks, confident that Aiden is only bluffing to get under Daily's skin. Aiden's face is partially cast in shadow as he thinks about his past life. Since he's already died once, he isn't afraid to do it again, but he wonders if Daily has the nerve to actually pull the trigger. Daily's eyes go wide as she calculates her option. The queen throws her hands up, furiously asking why one of the coven's elite witches is refusing to attack a crippled warden, warning Daily that her reputation will be trashed. Daily drops her head and exhales deeply. When the queen demands she kill Aiden, Daily just tucks her hair behind her ear and smiles. She explains that life in an all-female coven was incredibly boring, but in Rose Prison, Aiden brightens her day with his greetings and amazing desserts. Licking her lips, she gives Aiden a flirty, almost unhinged look. Aiden is totally thrown thrown off by the sudden change in tone. Daily says being in the coven was just a job and she needs to think about her personal life now. She playfully adds that when she's ready, she's going to have Aiden's child. Flashing a wide, crazy smile, she thinks to herself that if she acts completely submissive and crazy, Aiden won't have a legal reason to execute her. Daily remembers a time an inmate tried to flirt with Aiden by asking him to feel a lump on her chest, and Aiden bluntly told her he'd rather put a lump on her head. She realized then that Aiden gets extremely uncomfortable and flustered by aggressive flirting, so she figures throwing him off balance is her best chance to survive. Daily clears her throat and tells the queen she didn't want to be enemies, but the queen keeps trying to ruin her relationship with Aiden. She summons a magic circle in front of the new girl and warns her to surrender. Asena agrees, stating she's also siding with Aiden. Asena warns the queen that her patience is gone, and if the queen keeps wasting time, Asena will personally destroy her. The queen is stunned into silence. Grinding her teeth in rage, she glares at Aiden and bitterly admits she's ready to surrender. Aiden just waves his hand dismissively and tells Daily and Asena to deal with the rioters themselves because he doesn't care anymore. The girls agree to do his dirty work. The queen holds Avange close, glaring down at her, while Daily waits for the queen to officially give up. The new girl realizes Avange is almost finished rebooting. Daily asks Asena to go help Aiden secure the rest of the prison, claiming she can handle her student alone. The queen lowers her head, remembering the ultimate betrayal. She flashes back to falling off that cliff while Daily and her teacher just watch. She remembers reaching for help and being ignored. Filled with rage, she realizes she can only rely on herself. Aiden starts to walk away, but the queen suddenly unleashes her full magical power, aiming a massive blast at him. Aiden stands perfectly still. The queen screams at him to die, but Daily quickly summons a massive firewall that absorbs the entire blast. The queen grabs Evange and violently throws her right through the firewall. Evange passes through the flames without a scratch. The queen points at Aiden, screaming for Evange to execute him. Breaking free from the queen's tentacles, Evange sprints at Aiden with a dagger drawn. Her file flashes, number 3201, Evange. 4 massive biomechanical arms erupt from her back, each holding a terrifying weapon. Her abilities include extreme body modification and toxic blood, but she completely lacks the ability to learn. She's serving a life sentence. A flashback shows a masked woman looking through cell bars, asking a young queen if she wants to leave her cage and see the world. Crying with a noose around her neck, the queen admits she never expected anyone to help her. In the present, the queen brags that she doesn't need help anymore. The shadow of the 4-armed girl sprints forward as her mother screams for her to finish Aiden. Standing completely calm and still, Aiden looks tiny as he waits for the massive blades to hit. Asena furiously summons a magic circle and screams at the queen for being so disobedient. The queen is horrified to see Asena using the forbidden curse of the dead. Even stomps on the floor, and her leg suddenly turns to rubber. Using it like a slingshot, she launches herself into the air, dodging a massive spirit-infused spear summoned by Asena, a weapon designed to kill gods. The spear misses and obliterates the wall of Aiden's office instead. Evange lands, holding a spellbook radiating magic, and tries to sprint away. Asena asks why she's hiding and summons another circle on the floor. A massive army of undead infantry, led by a skeletal commander on horseback, erupts from the ground and charges Evange. The skeletal horse charges, but Evange, right in the middle of the horde, snaps its leg off. Suddenly, a massive magic circle opens behind the queen, and a giant snake bursts out, crushing her. Daily stands over the queen, who is pinned under the snake and bleeding. Daily coldly reminds her she wasn't joking about the surrender. The queen starts laughing hysterically, calling herself a wild dog that Daily used and abandoned. Daily states she raised her and has every right to discipline her, adding that the girl is an idiot to think Evange can beat a grand necromancer. With a bloody face, the queen smiles and laughs in a panic. She says she'll never forget how Daily treated her as a kid. A flashback shows Daily punishing her in front of the whole class for breaking rules. He was just a normal kid treated like a pest for trying to master forbidden magic. In the present, with a crazy smile, the queen asks Daily if she has any idea how she actually survived the forbidden zone. Meanwhile, the skeleton army swarms Evange, hacking her body apart and chopping off her legs. The skeletal commander pins her torso down while the infantry prepares to stab her. Suddenly, Evange's severed parts start moving. Her head, arms, and legs literally magnetize back to her torso, seamlessly gluing themselves back together. Surrounded by evil spirits, Evange stands back up. The queen's toxic potion forces Evange into a new, terrifying form. A massive spiked tail rips out of her spine, and she grips long daggers in her 4 hands. Daily is absolutely horrified, asking what kind of monster can survive being chopped into pieces. Asena watches as Evange counterattacks the skeleton army with insane speed and force. Balancing on her massive black tail, Evange wields 2 sabers, a sickle, and a heavy chain. This is her ultimate dirty blood form. The queen proudly brags to Daily that this is the true beauty of her daughter's modifications. Evange begins catching bullets in midair. The queen explains that Evange can perceive and stop attacks moving at any speed, and her regeneration is instantaneous. When a dagger barely grazes her skin, the wound heals in a flash. With every hit she takes, her toxic blood pumps faster, turning her into a literal god of death. Still crushed by the snake, the queen warns Daily and Asena not to actually knock Evange out. If she loses consciousness, her combat programming goes rogue, and she will blindly slaughter everyone in the room. A fresh squad of skeletons spawns, and Evange charges them, her daggers dripping with corrosive, poisonous blood. She impales enemies behind her with her tail, while simultaneously slicing through the front line with her sabers. Aiden watches from the magic circle, spectacle as Asana summons a massive bone giant armed with a giant spear arrow. Avange drops to the floor and crawls forward at terrifying speed, swinging her heavy chain. The giant aims its bow, but Avange ignores it, crawling straight toward Aiden. Aiden finally loses his cool. He yells at Avange, warning her that if she attacks him now, there is no going back. The queen laughs at his naivety, bragging that in this feral form, Avange is easy to control and will ignore his orders. Hovering like a shadow over Avange, the queen screams the command to execute Aiden. Suddenly, the weapons drop to the floor. The queen looks down in absolute shock. Avange has voluntarily disarmed herself. She collapses and starts violently crying, sobbing highly toxic, poisonous tears. Aiden slowly walks toward her, stepping over scattered clothes, papers, and a wooden doll lying on the floor. Jalala the elf, still trapped in frog form, is confused. Looking at the wooden doll, she wonders how a biomechanical puppet could have emotions, and if Aiden's therapy actually worked. Jalala's eyes go wide. She notices Aiden's hand is still taped up and remembers him claiming it was just a random scratch. Jalala flashes back to Aiden organizing a massive pile of papers, a carving knife, and a camera. She remembers seeing identical wooden dolls in his office and realizes they match the dolls in Avange's pop-up book. Jalala finally understands. Aiden didn't buy the book. He spent weeks hand-carving and writing the entire fairy tale specifically for Avange. She remembers Avange trying to read the book to her, saying Aiden told her it was how she could make friends. Aiden raises his hand and physically stops the bone giant from shooting. Jalala is mind-blown, realizing Aiden orchestrated this entire scenario just to save one broken girl. The defeated queen watches in horror, having no idea why Avange shut down just from hearing Aiden's voice. A vision shows the deep abyss inside Avange's mind. Avange stands in shallow water, looking up at a bright light in the sky. Her mother, a terrifying monster, stands behind her, shooting tentacles out of the water to grab Avange and drag her away from the light. The furious queen screams, demanding to know what Aiden could possibly offer that is better than her own mother. Entangled, Avange desperately reaches for the light. A flashback shows Aiden talking to Fernanda. He had ordered her to buy children's books, furious that the prison library only taught kids how to kill and manipulate. Fernanda explained that normal books aren't sold in the corrupt Silver City. Aiden sighed and said he'd just have to write them himself. Another flashback shows Aiden sitting across from Avange, writing a draft and asking if she's ever read Snow White. In Avange's mind, turbulent water crashes as massive wooden pillars rise from the sea. The queen watches in shock as wooden birds fly past. Avange sits on a bench inside a wooden house staring at figurines. She says Aiden told her she has the power to change her own story, explaining she learned the moral of Snow White: never take apples from strangers. A wooden figurine of the queen turns around and asks what apples she's talking about. The queen realizes she is trapped inside Avange's memories, the one she tried to suppress. A massive blood-stained staircase appears as a wooden man runs down it, yelling for another figure to wait. Avange holds a wooden glass slipper, telling the figure not to worry because she knows where Cinderella lives. A wooden forest appears. The queen watches in confusion as Avange interacts with a wooden prince and asks a wooden Red Riding Hood if she's visiting her grandmother. Avange tells the doll the forest is dangerous and volunteers to escort her. A flashback shows Aiden hand-carving the Red Riding Hood doll and accidentally slicing his finger. Watching his blood drip, he sighs, admitting wood carving is hard, but it's the only way he can help her. He arranges the figures on his desk and takes photos to create the pop-up book, noting he's much better at photography than carving. In the present, Avange stares at the Red Riding Hood doll, sobbing poisonous tears. Jalala is amazed that Aiden's slow, patient therapy actually broke the queen's mind control. She remembers skeptically telling Aiden that stories were useless for a damaged brain. Aiden had smiled, explaining he didn't care if she understood the plot. He just wanted to reboot her imagination. He wanted Avange to use the fantasy world to figure out what she actually wanted in life, because once a person has their own desires, they are no longer just a weapon. In Avange's mind, massive tentacles grab the wooden Snow White and crush the wooden house. The queen screams that Avange belongs to her, launching tentacles at Avange on a hill. Crushing the wooden toys, the queen screams that she is the creator and the only one who truly loves her. Aiden holds back the skeletal bone giant and softly tells Avange that she finally has the power to change her own story. He warns her that listening to her stepmother will leave her permanently locked in a mental prison, alone with no answers. Avange looks at him, eyes wide with terror, caught between the two worlds. Aiden tells her that if she listens to her own heart, she'll finally leave this prison and experience what the real world is actually like. In her mind, Avange reaches for the light, even as her mother's chains tighten. She remembers asking Aiden if her mother or Red Riding Hood would ever give her answers. Aiden had smiled gently and explained that in the real world, people actually help one another. He told her Red Riding Hood would definitely have an answer, but that Avange had to find it for herself, calling it her final homework assignment. Avange reaches out. She remembers Snow White's warning about the poisoned apple, the prince's gratitude, and Red Riding Hood's invitation. Suddenly, the circle of light in her mind violently expands, and a massive kingdom of wooden toys materializes. The queen is stunned to find herself in a world carved entirely of wood, filled with a bustling toy city. Avange covers her face with all four hands, struggling to process the flood of questions Aiden gave her, as a blinding ray of light pierces the toy sky. Two massive planets, one red and one white, appear above. The white planet, carrying the wooden city, moves closer. A flock of wooden birds swarms the queen's tentacles, ripping them to shreds and shattering her control. The queen cannot comprehend how Avange developed such a complex imagination. The wooden prince orders his toy soldiers to protect their guest, and they charge. A human chain of wooden soldiers lowers Red Riding Hood down from a rooftop. She reaches out to Evange and asks, "Do you want to see the outside world?" The queen freezes in shock. She remembers her own teacher asking her that exact same question through the cell bars years ago. Evange desperately reaches for Red Riding Hood's hand. The queen screams in a rage, launching new tentacles and warning Evange that the punishment for resistance will be a fate worse than death. One of the wooden dwarves hands Red Riding Hood a wooden glass slipper. She holds the shoe out as an anchor, and Evange grabs the heel. The toy erupts with light, incinerating the last of the queen's tentacles. Evange is pulled entirely into the light. In the real world, the queen watches in stunned silence as Aiden commands the skeleton archer to stand down. Evange violently shakes with fear, then slowly lowers her hands and wipes her tears. She looks directly at the queen and states that the queen is not Snow White's mother, nor the stepmother of Cinderella. The queen starts to cry as Evange delivers her final realization. The Ant Queen is not her mother either. Evange turns to Aiden, declaring that the only way to protect her grandmother is to kill the big bad wolf. She steps in front of Aiden, shielding him, and calmly explains that to protect the warden, she must kill her stepmother. Tears and blood stream down the Ant Queen's face as she realizes the only person she ever loved has abandoned her. The queen slams her fists into the floor in mental agony, still pinned under Daly's snake. Back in the central hub, guards are panicking. One reports that Fernanda witnessed a massive disaster, while others wonder why Veronica charged into the fight alone. Behind them, two rioters, the pirate and her friend Catherine, smash the guards over the head with rocks. They steal the guards' blasters, laughing hysterically. Since they can't break the main barricade, they decide to flank through the infirmary, steal Aiden's horses, and escape. They sprint toward the infirmary doors, cheering for their freedom, but instantly freeze in horror. The hallway is choked with a mountain of slaughtered inmates. Standing at the far end, bathed in shadow, is the tigress. The parasites have been violently ripped from the spines of the dead. The tigress coldly states that flesh and blood are weak, but steel is eternal. She clenches her fists, and the force of her aura shatters her jewelry. A massive shockwave of wind blasts down the hall, knocking the rioters off their feet. The tigress's eyes glow a demonic red as a magic circle with a glowing triangle spawns behind her. She uses raw magical gravity to fuse massive chunks of debris to her body, forming a suit of superheated rock armor. The resulting vacuum nearly sucks the rioters into the armor's heat. Catherine and the pirate desperately cling to a wall, but looking ahead, they see a second nightmare. A magic circle with a glowing cross spawns behind Veronica. Shadows of massive werewolves materialize as Veronica, fully transformed with wolf ears and razor-sharp claws, drops into a combat stance. The tigress, now a juggernaut of stone, leaps off the pile of corpses and launches herself at Veronica. Veronica sprints directly at her on a collision course. The kinetic force of the two S-rank fighters creates a localized tornado that lifts the rioters into the air. The pirate screams that she just happened to be passing by and doesn't want to die in the middle of a boss fight. The prison walls crack under the pressure. The two attacks collide in a devastating explosion, obliterating the reinforced concrete walls and blasting the rioters out of the building. Outside, in the pouring rain, Veronica lies unconscious next to a smoking crater. She is badly beaten. A blue-haired girl with a forehead tattoo and a centaur stands over her. The girl sniffs the air, noting the scent of the ancient beast god, Samegina, radiating from Veronica. The centaur is confused, as Samegina is supposed to be dead. Inside the crater, the tigress's rock armor shatters. Exhausted, she mutters that she never expected to find god-tier power in Silver City. She decides to evacuate and report to her father, declaring that Veronica must be recruited for their army. Two guards run up, baffled by the massive hole in the wall. The superintendent draws his revolver, aims it at the unconscious Veronica, and screams, demanding to know if she was the one who caused the explosion. Aiden casually walks out from behind a nearby statue and tells the guards to relax, claiming the mess was just caused by some rowdy inmates. He advises the superintendent to skip the report to the Emperor to avoid the headache of unnecessary paperwork. Aiden then fixes the tigress with a heavy, intimidating stare that leaves her completely rattled. She quickly looks away and lies, claiming Aiden must have misunderstood. She was actually just trying to subdue the feral werewolf. Veronica remains sprawled in the mud under the freezing rain. Aiden leans over to check her injuries, wondering how long she plans to play dead, and asks if she can speak. Veronica weakly raises a soaking wet hand and points directly at the guard standing next to the superintendent, screaming that she is the traitor who reeks of bone flowers. Bella doesn't hesitate. She violently kicks the traitor's leg out, pins her to the ground, and jams a revolver into her back. The tigress crosses her arms and backs up the claim, noting she saw that specific guard delivering poisoned food to the infirmary earlier. The superintendent aggressively searches the guard and finds a small pouch. Bella hands it to Aiden, confirming it contains the highly toxic glowing flowers. The guard tries to lie her way out of it, but Aiden coldly orders her dragged to interrogation immediately. Outside the infirmary, the rioters who were blasted through the wall are painfully dragging themselves out of the mud. Ya groans in agony, holding her head as the others realize they feel like they've been hit by a freight train. One girl starts panicking, screaming that her back is covered in disgusting bugs. Daly and Asana casually walk up to Aiden. Daly brags that she slapped a suppression collar on the Ant Queen and locked her in the vault. Asana watches Daly's transparent attempt to suck up to the warden. When Daly asks what they should do with Ophelia the vampire, Asana suggests incinerating her and sweeping up the ashes. Aiden smiles kindly and says that's unnecessary. He points out that Ophelia was mind-controlled, so the attack doesn't count as her third strike. He asks Daly to ensure Ophelia gets some high-quality pig's blood for her recovery, leaving Daly staring at him in stunned silence. Daly looks at the prison wall, shocked by the the structural cracks caused by Asane's god-killing spear. She asks Asuna why she used her best techniques just to protect a warden she supposedly doesn't care about. Asuna admits she recently calculated that Aiden could effortlessly slaughter almost everyone if he fought at 100% power. She notes that there are already 200 loyalist inmates, a number growing daily, and concludes that the chances of another riot succeeding are statistically zero. Staying on Aiden's good side, she explains, is simply the safest and smartest move. Daly agrees with the logic but mentions a massive magical anomaly. A vision shows apocalyptic purple energy and thunderstorms over the Forbidden Zone. Daly explains that her coven detected this insane energy right before her arrest and began prepping for war against rising shadow beasts. She admits that escaping this coming catastrophe was her original reason for wanting out. She theorizes that if Aiden and his army of 800 inmates allied with the witches, they could actually win. Asuna agrees, noting that if an evil god is resurrecting, a magically shielded prison is the safest place on the continent. She offers to use her necromancy to help the coven fight if necessary. Meanwhile, a squad of bounty hunters sprints toward Carol. The lead hunter is thrilled, asking if the deal went through. Carol, holding her crossbow, proudly announces they officially have legal government licenses. She declares the Bloody Hand Guild a legitimate business, safe from government hit squads. Suddenly, Camilla the dragon sprints past them, screaming for everyone to run. Carol is confused until she sees the harpy inmate holding a glowing labyrinth capsule containing Jinja. Camilla screams at everyone to never look back. The harpy smiles like a psycho, explaining that these capsules are spatial anomalies from a cave in her hometown. A vision shows the cave exit littered with capsules. Harpy explains that in her village, kids knew that to eat a human, you just had to find a capsule, rip it open, and wait for the person's legs to grow back. She notes that Daly, who actually invented the capsules, was the only one to ever escape that cave. Harpy sighs with nostalgia and suggests the remaining rioters follow her rather than rotting in prison for 300 years. She violently crushes the capsule. Jinja instantly explodes outward, completely supercharged, and blasts the bounty hunters with a massive electrical shockwave. Camilla transforms into her terrifying dragon form and roars, charging at Jinja. Jinja, however, is trapped in a brutal hallucination. She ignores the Ant Queen and the battle, walking like a zombie toward the Queen through the corpses of her dead comrades. She walks right past the body of her best friend. A flashback shows Jinja at a tavern with her squad, happily planning to build a guild to adopt orphans and teach them how to make an honest living. In the hallucination, Jinja strides forward, lost in her delusion, until Ya violently yanks her to a halt. In this vision, Ya is bleeding and crying with an arrow sticking out of her eye. Screaming that the war is over, Jinja blinks, slowly hearing Ya's desperate voice begging her to wake up. When she opens her one good eye, she snaps back to reality and realizes she is standing in the prison courtyard. Ya is perfectly fine, hugging her tightly and promising that the riot is officially over. Jinja's glowing demonic eye fades as she powers down from her berserker state, leaving the guards to watch in silence as Ya holds her exhausted commander. The bounty hunters drop into defensive stances, guarding Camilla, who is holding a massive bleeding wound on her arm. Jinja looks at Ya, completely heartbroken, and quietly asks what happened to all the orphans their guild adopted. On a balcony above, Aiden and Fernanda look down at the mountain of defeated rioters. Fernanda officially reports that the riot has been 100% suppressed. Suddenly, the succubus sprints across the yard toward Aiden, stars in her eyes. She gasps in horror when she sees his bandaged hand, screaming to know who hurt him. She runs right up to him, sobbing hysterically, while Aiden brushes it off as a mere scratch. Completely ignoring protocol, the succubus begins aggressively unbuckling Aiden's belt and trying to rip his pants off to inspect him for other injuries. The guards and Fernanda are paralyzed with shock until two guards finally snap out of it and drag her away. She kicks and screams, yelling that she has a legal right to inspect her future husband, and that if he bleeds out, they'll all be fired. A guard bluntly tells her to chill, asking what her actual problem is over a simple band-aid. Aiden watches as the guards systematically drag the inmates back to their cells. He knows the interior is secure, but he is deeply concerned about the political fallout outside the walls and how deep the Ant Queen's conspiracy actually went. Later, Carol the bounty hunter stands in Aiden's office with a cocky smile, biting a gold check to ensure it's real. She eyes an envelope of extra cash while Aiden gives her a classified solo Black Ops mission. Carol immediately asks if he wants Congressman Anthony assassinated. Aiden's expression goes ice cold. He explains that killing Anthony isn't the priority. He knows Anthony didn't have the power to freeze the budget alone, meaning he's working for a dangerous shadow boss. Aiden orders Carol to track Anthony and find out who is pulling the strings. In Silver City, a violent thunderstorm ravages the streets. Carol holds an umbrella over Anthony, who is soaked and shivering. Carol thinks about the city's corrupt structure, ruled by 4 aristocratic families: the Rose, the Thorn, the Emerald, and the Silver. They stand before the opulent Emerald Palace, a billionaire's paradise. Inside the palace, Anthony screams of rage echo. He is losing his mind because the IRS failed to find any fraud at the prison. Yet Aiden managed to afford energy stones and a private army. Sir Richie, head of the Emerald faction, laughs at him while puffing on a pipe. He tells Anthony he is clueless and hands him a business flyer. The flyer reveals that Aiden sent a proposal to every merchant and winemaker in the city. Rose Prison is now a corporate partner mass-producing high-end vodka and wine featuring 100% organic ingredients crushed by the bare feet of female inmates. Richie explains that a top winery already paid Aiden 50,000 gold coins for an exclusive contract. Aiden didn't embezzle tax money. He turned the prison into a profitable corporation. Anthony is hysterical, ripping the flyer to shreds and begins screaming that the winery owner must be insane to buy wine crushed by dirty bare feet. Richie just laughs, calling him short-sighted and suggesting it's time to end the feud. Anthony demands a total embargo and even suggests an artillery strike to level the prison, but Richie coldly refuses to help with any assassination plots. Anthony loses his temper, flipping a desk and screaming about the dirty work he did to put Richie in power, even sacrificing his own son to prison. Suddenly, a heavy lamp is thrown through the window, shattering the glass and crashing into the street below. Richie points a finger at Anthony, warning him that if he had screamed at Richie's knights like that, they would have executed him. He bans Anthony from the Emerald Palace forever. As Anthony storms down the hallway, the palace guards are shocked by Richie's rare anger. Outside, Anthony finds a girl wrapped in a dirty rag, his actual assistant, Emerald 23. He is confused, swearing his assistant was just standing next to him under the umbrella. The shivering girl screams that he's a moron. She was kidnapped, stripped, and replaced by a highly trained imposter. A flashback reveals Carol the bounty hunter applying makeup to perfectly clone the assistant's face before stealing her red dress. Back in the present of the flashback, Carol, disguised as the assistant, smiles at Anthony under the umbrella. She tells him that Mr. Richie requested they move to a more private and secure location because the palace walls have ears. Anthony, completely fooled, followed her right into the trap. In the present, the real assistant complains to a palace guard, admitting that the imposter's makeup skills were actually perfect, but she asks him if he's even a real man. She points out that the person who snatched her clearly had a very flat chest. She grabs the guard's shoulder and aggressively leans in, telling him to look and arguing that any actual guy would have noticed the massive difference in their sizes right away. The guard hangs his head, feeling totally embarrassed. As he fumbles with a match to light a cigarette, he nervously explains that he's worked at the Emerald Palace for 5 years and is basically numb to that kind of stuff at this point. The match slips from his shaking fingers and hits the wet pavement, and he just stares at it, confused about why it won't light. Nearby, someone holds a fancy red stiletto with a liquid dripping from the heel. Anthony is finished. He's lying in a dark alley in a huge mess. The 2 red shoes are sitting neatly next to him. Carol, having ditched her disguise and changed back into her bounty hunter gear, casually walks away. Then the sun starts breaking through the clouds and reflects off the wet leaves. Carol confidently says that Anthony is officially gone. Staring at Aiden, who is looking out his office window, she explains her setup, noting that dozens of witnesses saw Anthony having a massive screaming argument with Sir Richie right before he was finished. She smirks, bragging that when the police find him, the evidence will totally point to Sir Richie, meaning Richie won't even be able to prove he's innocent. Aiden adjusts his coat, feeling pretty impressed. He praises Carol, noting that she didn't just handle a major politician, she perfectly framed the city's biggest boss for it. He tells her she did an amazing job and promises that once she fully earns his trust, he'll pay her a fortune for more secret missions. In a prison, a girl trips over a stone, and a glowing, transparent butterfly lands on it. Jalala the elf picks up the stone and introduces herself as a forest elf, explaining she's a refugee from a place called Herland. She pictures a massive magical cannon firing, and explains that an apocalyptic war broke out back home between people with advanced weapons and terrifying wooden monsters. She reveals the conflict started because dark magic began corrupting the land, allowing a dark leader and his army of cultists to throw the whole place into chaos. Jalala thinks back to sitting peacefully inside giant, glowing flowers with her sisters. She explains the war started right after she leveled up to become a water spirit, forcing her to run for her life. She cries as she remembers the destruction and pictures herself sitting on a piece of driftwood, watching an ancient tree burn down. Jalala explains she drifted alone across the ocean for months until she finally washed up on a new continent. Her main mission was to warn the leaders there about the Dark Army, warning them that the threat won't stop until the whole world is gone. But after arriving in the messy, political environment of Silver City, she realizes that getting anyone to listen to her is going to be nearly impossible. Jalala stands in the crowd holding her small belongings. She realizes the people here don't really care about outside threats and are way more interested in gossiping about money and drama. Suddenly, some boys snatch her stuff and run off, leaving her on the ground. She realizes even the kids are aggressive. Later, a guy in a suit finds her crying, and she explains she finally found a nobleman who agreed to help her, which was her last hope. He takes her to a flower field and shows her a tiny tent to live in. She quickly realizes he didn't take her in because he felt bad. He just wanted to use her powers. She's shocked by how toxic people are. She used to use her magic just to survive, but she definitely doesn't want to use it to help someone hurt others. Lying in the tent, she constantly wonders if she should keep living this way or try to change things. Eventually, a fire breaks out in the field. That disaster with a nobleman pushes her to the limit. The guy grabs her and drags her to prison, hoping to teach her a lesson. The warden looks at her skeptically, which is how she first meets Aiden, and she honestly doesn't like him at all at first. She watches him walk past the cells leaning on his cane while other inmates insult him. They mock him, telling him to hit her or pick up her stuff. Jalala notices he has no authority and gets treated like a punching bag, so she assumes he's useless. But then, the inmates break out. This whole rebellion totally changes her opinion of the warden. Jinja and her squad stare at their opponents, not even realizing how quickly a group of loyal inmates gathered to defend the guards. The bird inmate looks ahead aggressively while the ant queen cries in defeat. Jalala thinks it's the craziest thing because the rioters had more people, but they still got crushed. Jalala sits on the floor looking terrified. Daly the witch looks down at her with total disgust and tells her not to snitch to Aiden about her getting snatched. She explains that Jalala can use her powers to confirm that she and Asena the necromancer are totally serious about never going against the warden again. again and are ready to help him run the place. Asena adds that having only 200 loyal inmates won't be enough, so they need to recruit way more people to Aiden's side. That's when Jalala realizes she completely misjudged him. She thinks that if he can get 1,000 inmates on his side, his power would be absolute. Walking away from the others, Jalala realizes Aiden actually has a good heart, noting she wouldn't even care this much about other people's problems. Tearing up, she remembers how Aiden saved Yvonne. She realizes he did it just by being incredibly patient, making him the actual good guy. Looking at the dry field, she decides she's fine using her powers to help someone that nice. She holds her hands out, summons green butterflies, and they flutter over the dirt, causing tiny sprouts to pop up. In seconds, the plants grow to full size. Staring at the massive potato field, Jalala is confident that once Aiden sees her skills, he'll use them for good and get strong enough to stop the dark threat before it reaches them. Jalala remembers how some wooden figurines fell out of Aiden's coat during the fight. She figures they must have fallen from his pocket, but she wonders why he was carrying bulky stuff around, and if it was uncomfortable. Her eyes go wide as she imagines Aiden holding a carved toy. She guesses he already knew Yvonne was struggling and prepped the toy specifically to help her, realizing he's actually incredibly smart. Suddenly, someone yells at her from behind, telling her she's worked enough and needs to head back to her cell, reminding her to hit the lights. Jalala decides to stop overthinking, realizing she's just too used to assuming everyone is toxic. Meanwhile, Isabella is writing a letter to her boss, Ping. She reports that she's acting as a loyal spy, noting this is her 25th report complaining about the warden. Smiling, she reads it back to herself, confirming that Aiden has lost his magic, but noting he might still be useful based on how he handled the riot. She mentions hearing that their targets are in Silver City, but advises her boss not to offer an alliance just yet. She seals the envelope with a gold wax seal and writes that Aiden is probably going to face a lot of pushback from politicians soon, so she suggests they just wait and see. Walking down the halls, Haley mentions she just finished checking the final cell block. A monster growls at a guard, and Haley assumes the prison only holds basic threats. She mentions their boss warned them about a world-ending threat in the prison, but she's searched everywhere and hasn't found it, so she has no idea how to stop it. The other sister suggests they find an excuse to handle the deputy warden first, and then they can quietly slip away. The sisters then check out the massive monster in the basement. The superintendent notes they lost their own creature. One sister says it's not a huge deal, but complains she can't stand playing prison guard anymore. From the dark stairs, a quiet voice congratulates Aiden, noting he finally figured out how to use the inmates to his advantage. Back in the hidden basement, Aiden is sitting at a board game, sliding a piece across. He mentions that ever since he woke up in this new world, he hasn't felt hungry or tired and just spaces out every night. Showing his bandaged hand, he explains that the pain feels real to him and just refuses to heal. The goddess sits in front of him, and Aiden admits he's totally lost, asking her if he's actually a human or just a ghost because he doesn't know who or what he is anymore. The goddess gives him a kind look and jokes that she'd love to know the answer too. She summons a pillar of smoke, and Aiden shields his face. She explains that his body is basically just a container for his soul, and it was created with a specific magic that means his injuries can only be healed with a material called mithril. Aiden looks totally shocked. She tells him to chill out, pointing out that in a place like this, mithril is as common as dirt. Aiden looks at his bandaged hand as the goddess explains he can live a normal life, get married, and have kids just like anyone else. However, she casually mentions the dark detail that any kids he has won't survive. The chained goddess looks Aiden up and down, explaining that biology doesn't really determine if someone is human, it's better to judge them by their actions. Pulling against her chains, she leans in close and asks if he thinks this world is actually real or just a hallucination built from his own sad wishes. Aiden gives her a skeptical look, replying that he definitely thinks it's real since he has to deal with massive prison headaches every single day. She looks impressed, noting he's acting more like a coma patient who will only fully wake up once he lets go of his past regrets. A vision shows Veronica looking out into the distance as the goddess reminds Aiden that he helped her process her guilt over finishing an innocent person. Another vision shows Yvonne looking at Aiden calmly. The goddess notes he also helped Yvonne, guessing he only did it because he used to have a daughter. Aiden frowns and looks serious when she mentions he wasn't able to be a good dad to his original daughter, staying completely silent. Flashing a wicked smile, the goddess says she feels bad for him. She mentions she knows what happened when he finished his military service and went home to see his family. A flashback shows the original Aiden looking at a group of people in black, holding a photo of his dad, who passed away after a conflict with a criminal. The goddess explains that after his dad's passing, Aiden intentionally took a job at the exact prison where the suspect was locked up to handle him personally. A vision shows a guard pinning an inmate. She notes he went through with it, but the tragic twist was that the guy he took out was totally innocent. It was actually the culprit's younger twin brother. She points out the irony that Aiden, a man obsessed with justice, ended up becoming a criminal himself, and his intense guilt never faded even after he finished his sentence. A vision shows a woman leaving with a little girl and a new guy. The goddess notes Aiden lost everything because his wife and daughter cut him off. A vision shows him sitting alone in a room surrounded by empty bottles, holding his head. She figures his only coping mechanism was hiding in a corner to escape reality. A doctor calls him, warning him he's about to miss his last chance to see his sick mother. The goddess adds that when he finally decided to get his life together, his body was already shutting down. It was way too late to fix anything. Aiden just stares at her and asks how she knows his entire backstory. Smiling intensely, the goddess explains she doesn't just know his memories. Whenever she opens her eyes, she instantly downloads the memories of every single person in her line of sight. A vision shows a massive, bustling city. She explains she can read a person's entire life story from their facial expressions or even their pores. A vision shows outer space with satellites orbiting Earth. She explains everything in the universe is connected, noting humans have no idea how advanced they could become. Aiden folds his hands, asking why she is trapped in a basement if she is that powerful. The goddess bursts out laughing, mocking him for thinking gods have physical bodies. A vision shows massive eyes smiling down at the Earth and the moon. She explains that planets are basically just fish tanks for gods to watch. A galaxy reflects in her eyes as she explains that the chained body in front of him is just a viewing window she uses to spectate this world, and it has a front row seat to watch him. Aiden asks if her hobby is basically watching an ant farm. She admits he's partly right, but says just watching gets boring. Leaning in, she explains that for real entertainment, you have to focus on the aggressive ants. She says picking a favorite bug to root for makes it more engaging. She notes that all new bugs act the same when dropped into a fresh container. A vision shows a massive beetle banging against the walls of a box while smaller ones hang back. She explains that bugs usually act passive when tossed into a new environment. A vision shows a guard standing in front of Aiden. The goddess explains that new bugs usually let themselves get pushed around or wander aimlessly to prove they aren't a threat. A vision shows Anthony slamming his hands on Aiden's desk while Aiden listens silently. She says they do this to avoid drama while learning the layout. The massive beetle's eyes suddenly glow red. She notes that once they adapt, everyone else is in danger. Staring at Aiden, the goddess notes it takes about 3 months to fully adapt, meaning his adjustment period is over. Aiden drops his head, sounding defeated, and says she'll be disappointed by how weak he is. The goddess gives him an arrogant look and says she believes in him, explaining a bug's value isn't based on how many ants it can wipe out. A vision shows a guard watching inmates run. She explains the best bugs are the ones that can survive getting jumped and wait for the perfect moment to strike back. She continues, saying this has nothing to do with basic soul power. She hints that a massive power, the kind even gods want, is making its way to Aiden. She promises this power will be his ticket back to his original world. Standing at her chest level, Aiden looks up as she gives him a soft smile. She says the real question is what form he'll take when he goes back. Since he arrived carrying so much anger, he could return as a human or a demon. Later, Aiden walks through the prison on his cane. Behind him, a guard wraps a bandage around another guard's head. The injured guard asks why her friend is working so hard while hurt. Her friend explains her house is at the bottom of the mountain. If the inmates break out, there will be no one to protect her parents. Door and overhears a guard begging a friend to help cover up a mistake, worried that if Aiden finds out, her reputation will be so ruined she won't find another job. Another guard shakes the cell bars, angrily yelling that playing spy is pointless. She complains she trained hard and her family spent their savings to get her the job, expecting life to improve under Aiden. Aiden's shadow pauses as he overhears her. The guard admits that over the last 5 years, her life has only gotten worse. Aiden watches a line of guards outside his office. He hears the announcement that every guard is getting a 10 gold pound bonus, but after taxes and union dues, it's actually only 5 pounds. Someone opens the main gate. Aiden watches injured guards walking out, wishing him a good morning. He replays the goddess's question, wondering if this world is real or a hallucination. He thinks about her comment that he arrived full of anger and wonders what form he'll take when he returns. While Aiden is near the courtyard statue, Fernanda runs up to him. With a straight face, she tells him the boss of the Emerald Palace wants a meeting. She advises against going, guessing that since Richie likely knows Aiden orchestrated the riots, walking into his territory is a terrible idea. Aiden calmly replies he has to go. He points out they barely survived the riot and the palace has too much power. Fighting Richie is like smashing an egg against a rock. Fernanda looks down, embarrassed. She asks him to be careful and mentions she'll try to get the guard's medical bills covered while he's gone. Aiden walks past her toward the gate, telling her to drop it because it's a bad move. He explains that all the staff really needs to do is be good at their jobs. A vision shows gears turning in a machine. Aiden explains that people need to understand each other and work together like gears in a system. He says you have to become part of a community with shared goals. Turning back, he explains that a system only works when everyone is on the same page. The mechanical gate opens. Fernanda blushes at his advice. Aiden walks toward his horse, giving her one final tip. She will only get the respect she deserves when she officially becomes a knight. The narrator repeats the question, human or demon? A vision shows Aiden standing at the goddess's feet. He notes that even a literal god doesn't know everything, pointing out that even gods can't defeat their ultimate fate. The shadow of Aiden's past life half covers his face as he explains his philosophy to the goddess. He argues that the dead should just be allowed to rest in peace, finally escaping the endless chaos of life, adding that he doesn't really care whether he reincarnates as a human or a demon. Then a window opens in his office, and the breeze flips through the pages of a notebook on his desk. The notes break down the city's heavy hitters. First, the captain of the guard who locked up the Ant Queen. Second, the treasurer who gutted the prison's budget. And third, Sir Richie, the mastermind at the Emerald Palace who destroys anyone in his way. Down in the underworld, Aiden's shadow moves a piece on the board. The goddess smiles, noting that the brighter the light, the deeper the shadows become. Up in Silver City, people are panicking at the sky. A young boy points out a creepy cloud, and a girl next to him agrees, terrified of its shape. The goddess smirks, realizing the chess match is finally getting good. Aiden gallops through the city on his horse, while the locals stare as he rides by. Everyone is completely oblivious to the massive skull-shaped storm cloud hanging right over their heads. Back at the prison farm, the inmates are looking out over the field. One asks you how long they were out in the infirmary. Ya tries to remember, but her friend is just confused about how the potatoes grew so fast. Ya just shrugs and suggests they eat first because her brain is too fried to think. In the cafeteria, the girls are gossiping gossiping about the cook finally waking up from the poisoning. They're excited because he just invented a new beef and potato recipe that they have to try. At another table, a blue-haired girl asks the succubus why she's still so obsessed with Aiden after all these years. The succubus just sighs and says it's because he's beautiful. Her friend points out that being pretty shouldn't make her act this crazy, calling the obsession abnormal. Another inmate agrees, saying she'd do anything for him and they don't get the fascination. Wiping her mouth, the succubus admits it started 4 years ago. She explains that when she was 14, she helped her mom run the family business. A flashback shows a fancy building called the Lilith International Recreation Center. The young succubus is at the desk reading a magazine when a hand slams down, startling her. A military officer demands to see her mother. Still eating a lollipop, the girl says her mom is playing poker and isn't seeing anyone. The original Lord Aiden, in a crisp uniform with a Dragon Fortress badge, coldly announces he's shutting the place down. The girl is shocked as a squad of armed soldiers from the Bureau of Supernatural Investigations swarms in. They find an unconscious guy in the back who looks totally drained. Aiden glares at her, saying her family crossed the line and she's going to be held accountable. She immediately starts sobbing and agrees to go. An aide whispers to Aiden that the family has huge political pull and warns of protests, but Aiden says he knows the risks. He's disgusted that the country is basically run by corrupt perverts. Aiden snatches the girl's lollipop, throws her over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes, and ignores her struggling. She threatens that her mother will finish him, but eventually she just hangs there limply as they head out. Back in the present, the succubus tries to explain the feeling to her friends. One guesses it was resilience, while another thinks she just liked his strong shoulder. The succubus realizes it felt more like a blinding light. In the flashback, a wall of guards holds back a cheering crowd as the soldier carries her out. She explains it felt like pure holiness, the first time she ever felt it. Aiden gently takes her from the soldier and opens a fancy carriage door. He calls her sister in a protective way and invites her inside. Looking out the window, she feels like she's glowing. She watches Aiden hop on his horse to escort her and realizes she went from being treated like a monster to a maiden protected by a knight. He looks so handsome in his uniform that she blushes furiously. In the cafeteria, the inmates are hooked on the story. The blue-haired girl says it sounds like a dream, but the succubus admits her thoughts went somewhere else. She pictures Aiden with his back to her and explains she realized he was just too pure and untouchable. Biting a piece of candy, she gets a feral look in her eyes and declares that since he was so pure, her only goal became corrupting him and ruining that holiness. Her friends look terrified by the shift in her vibe. The succubus admits her brain is full of intrusive thoughts about him. She visualizes herself tackling Aiden and pinning him down, her shadow turning into a demonic silhouette with sharp claws. She says she wants to rip off his tight uniform and watch him panic with shame as he crawls through the grass for clothes. In her vision, she kicks his hand away to strip his pride. She imagines grabbing his chin and whispering that he's like a little lamb lost in the wild. In reality, the succubus opens her mouth wide, her eyes burning with obsession. She screams about wanting to infect his body with her magic and laughs hysterically. In her vision, she stands over him, telling him to give up because nobody is coming to save him. She's literally standing on the cafeteria bench laughing like a maniac while her friends stare in shock. Suddenly, an inmate at the next table bursts out laughing. The succubus is offended and glares at Mandy the fox. Mandy casually tells her that only inexperienced virgins have fantasies like that because they don't know how to make it happen for real. The succubus turns beet red and asks what she means. Mandy points and laughs, saying it's just hilarious. She roasts the succubus, pointing out she met her crush at 14, couldn't get him by 18, and is still a virgin. Mandy jokes she'll hit menopause before she ever gets lucky. Disclaimer: this is purely a fictional story made for entertainment only. Don't be influenced to hurt anyone's emotions, or don't do squeezing before marriage. If you still go ahead, it's completely your own responsibility. The succubus is furious. She points at Mandy's friend and demands to know Mandy's expertise if she's going to talk so much trash. The blue-haired girl asks if she knows Mandy's backstory. Mandy swishes her foxtail with a wicked smile. Her friend explains Mandy was famous in the Seni Empire for brainwashing top generals and draining their fortune. A vision shows military commanders charging into battle because Mandy's manipulation tore the imperial family apart, causing a civil war over her. The whole empire fell into chaos because of her. Her friend explains she was nicknamed the Breakup Queen and was an enemy to all women. Most inmates think she's the craziest one there because she's the undisputed queen of manipulating powerful men. The succubus immediately drops to the floor, grinding her teeth in frustration, and kneels at Mandy's feet. Mandy stands over her, looking incredibly arrogant. The friend notes Mandy is the top tier of manipulators. The succubus grabs Mandy's leg and shamelessly begs her to teach her everything, crying and asking to be trained to be just as successful. Mandy looks down with a smug smirk, crossing her arms. She casually mentions that her masterclass costs 998 gold pounds, but she promises it covers everything: room, board, and a 100% success rate. The succubus doesn't even hesitate and agrees to pay up. On the roof of the Emerald Palace, a girl in a fancy dress holds up a bag and points out that it's round. Two other girls agree, noting that all the bags have the same shape. Suddenly, a guy in a suit mentions he found something flat. He looks down, totally confused, and realizes Aiden is standing right there. Aiden is holding his horse's reins and his hat, pointing toward the palace. The employee gets super nervous and offers to escort Aiden to Mr. Ritchie, explaining that Ritchie is expecting him. Aiden points at the building, and the employee apologizes, saying he can't leave his post, but there's an attendant inside who can guide him. Meanwhile, Mandy tells the succubus that before they start the formal training, she needs to understand where she stands and identify her biggest competition. The succubus scratches her chin, looking confused, and says she doesn't think she has any rivals. She admits other inmates stare at Aiden, but since he visits her cell the most, he just assumed she was his favorite. Mandy gives her an arrogant look and brings up Veronica, pointing out that she didn't come back to the prison just for fun. She came back as a guard, specifically to get closer to Aiden. The succubus just flashes a huge smile, tosses her hair, and points at herself. She laughs and tells Mandy to relax because Veronica is completely clueless about romance and has zero experience, so she isn't a threat. Mandy face palms and sighs. She decides to be brutally honest, telling the succubus that no matter how close she thinks she is to Aiden, she would 100% lose to Veronica if it came down to marriage. The succubus is totally shocked and asks why. Mandy tells her to imagine Veronica in a wedding dress. A vision shows Veronica looking stunning in a white gown. Mandy explains that even though Veronica's social status isn't great, she's hardworking, incredibly loyal, and has a clean, innocent reputation. Mandy notes that high society guys love that pure vibe, meaning plenty of decent men would want to marry her. A vision shows a guy under a blanket dreaming about Veronica in a dress, followed by a shot of 2 linked wedding rings. Mandy explains that the biggest reason Veronica beats the succubus is that she has the traits men actually value for long-term relationships: absolute loyalty, sensitivity, and inner strength. A vision shows Veronica with her blue hair and green eyes. Mandy explains her ultimate advantage is that she instantly notices when her partner is upset and genuinely supports him. She never runs from problems and would never ditch her partner when things get tough. A vision shows a girl holding an umbrella, and Mandy says a werewolf like Veronica will always offer her partner an umbrella in the rain, regardless of whether he's rich, poor, or a failure. The vision shows Veronica holding a guy's hand, confidently walking through the rain together. Mandy leans on the table, looking at the succubus with total disgust. She bluntly states that any loyal guy would be incredibly lucky to marry someone like Veronica. She tells the succubus to look at herself, pointing out that besides being temporary fun, she brings absolutely nothing of value to a relationship. The succubus starts sweating with rage and screams at Mandy, desperately bragging about how rich she is. Mandy immediately shuts her down, saying being rich just makes her a perfect spoiled trophy wife who spends all the cash and eventually gets dumped. The succubus grabs her head and screams in frustration. Poking her own chest, she swears she's going to improve and be better. She pulls out a handful of those vibrating crystals and violently throws them on the floor in a tantrum. Mandy sits across from her, crosses her legs, and looks disappointed. She explains that the succubus can't just drop her manipulative habits for a guy, because losing her player status means she can't use her usual moves on Aiden anymore. Because of that, she needs a totally unconventional plan. The succubus admits she has no idea what to do. Mandy sighs and explains that while Veronica has all the right cards for marriage, she has no clue how to play them or create real chemistry, so she's just waiting for a miracle. Mandy leans in with a wicked smile and drops her master plan. She explains that a guy as principled and honorable as Aiden is actually the easiest type to trap. She tells the succubus she just needs to get pregnant with his kid. Mandy guarantees that once the kid is born, Aiden's intense moral code will force him to take responsibility. He'll take care of the kid, and over time their relationship will naturally turn into a real family. Looking incredibly arrogant, Mandy tells her she just needs to lock Aiden down by any means necessary. The succubus looks worried, admitting she isn't sure she can pull that off. Medusa is secretly watching the whole conversation. Mandy tries to hype her up, promising this is the only way to trap Aiden and swearing she'll help find the perfect moment. Suddenly, Medusa smirks, shows her fangs, and yells that they're having way too much fun, peers behind them looking absolutely terrifying. The snakes on Medusa's head hiss aggressively, and she looks bloodthirsty. The succubus's friends at the next table are confused, noting Medusa is radiating some really dark energy. One friend explains Medusa has been acting totally crazy lately and has been stalking Mandy everywhere. Terrified, the succubus slowly backs away, telling Mandy they should probably finish the lesson later. While the succubus crawls away, Mandy turns to Medusa, looking super annoyed, and asks what she wants. Medusa smiles widely and blushes, claiming in a creepy, sweet voice that she found a cat in the warehouse that can do backflips and asking if Mandy wants to see it. Mandy frantically shakes her head no, looking terrified. Medusa violently grabs Mandy and completely wraps her up using her snake hair. Dragging her away, Medusa happily says she's taking the silence as a yes. Mandy can't even scream because the snakes are covering her mouth. The other inmates burst out laughing, realizing Mandy isn't as untouchable as she pretends to be. Back at the Emerald Palace, Aiden opens some double doors. A woman in an orange dress with white hair and dark skin runs right at him and throws herself into his arms. She screams for him to save her, claiming a wild tiger in the rainforest has gone insane. Suddenly, a massive tiger bursts out of the bushes and growls at Aiden. The girl looks up at him with teary eyes, begging for help and acting terrified. Aiden doesn't even flinch. He violently elbows the girl in the face, knocking her away. She looks totally confused. Aiden immediately draws his gun and aims it at the tiger while the girl holds her bloody nose, begging him to stop. The tiger suddenly lifts its head, revealing a female's face inside. It's just someone in a really realistic tiger suit. She throws her hands up and screams at Aiden not to shoot, complaining that the hero is supposed to punch the tiger to save the girl, not execute her. She whines that Aiden totally ruined the script. Aiden keeps his gun pointed at the women and demands to know what's going on. The women nervously explains it's a special feature of the palace. The women and the girl link arms and do a little dance, explaining that the palace uses hyper-realistic sets and actors so very important person guests can live out interactive fantasies. They offer scenarios like exploring a jungle, being a hero, or playing a villain. They make a heart shape with their hands and use their best commercial voices, promising that with over 300 stage rooms, Aiden will find something he loves. Aiden lowers his head, looking incredibly annoyed. He stays silent for a second, then irritably asks where Sir Richie is. The actors point to a hidden door tucked into the fake trees. The girl invites him through, realizing he's the very important person Richie mentioned. The guy in the tiger suit adds that Richie is busy inspecting rooms but shouldn't be far ahead. With mischievous smiles, the actors warn Aiden it'll be hard to catch up to him, bragging that no man can resist the beautiful actresses there, and promising the rooms only get more intense the further he goes. Aiden opens some gates covered in frost magic and gets hit by a freezing wind. Inside, a girl in a fancy dress is lying perfectly still on a table. An actor in a fur coat and fake beard yells that she's the Snow Princess, cursed to sleep for 3 years, and no one can wake her. He dramatically screams that Aiden is the hero who can save her with a kiss. Aiden just slaps the guy's hand away, shoves him aside, and says he isn't doing that before walking on. The sleeping princess immediately sits up and curses at him as he leaves. Aiden kicks open the next door and finds a massive Egyptian desert set. A magic circle on the ceiling creates intense sunlight. 2 actresses in revealing outfits and skull horns surround him, claiming a brave businessman just entered the desert. They compliment his muscles and invite him to join their bandit gang. Another actress in a white suit with angel wings steps up, holding a staff, and seductively asks him what his deepest, darkest desire is. Ignoring all the actresses, Aiden marches into the final room where a girl in a gothic dress with purple hair and demon horns is waiting. She tries to stay in character, playfully calling him a sinner and offering him a private session, but Aiden doesn't even look at her. He kicks open the heavy doors at the back, fully prepared for yet another weird trap. Instead, he finds a young girl with big green eyes who looks up at him in awe, blushing as she asks if he works there. A woman with blue hair quickly runs over to her, scolding the little girl Lola for wandering into the restaurant alone. Lola whines to her mom that she was just bored at home. The woman apologizes to Aiden, explaining that they aren't in a fantasy room anymore. This is actually the palace's public restaurant. Looking around, Aiden sees off-duty military officers and staff eating. He asks if she knows where Sir Richie is, and she suggests he just grab a table. She explains that Richie always comes there for breakfast after he finishes his rounds of the fantasy rooms. Aiden thanks her and takes a seat while the woman leads Lola into the kitchen, telling her she has to work to buy her toys. Watching them go, Aiden thinks back to the last time he saw his own wife and daughter, remembering the moment they walked out of his life with another man. A hand suddenly places a cup of coffee in front of him. Sir Richie sits down and casually asks if Aiden liked that woman. Aiden ignores the question but wishes him a good morning. Richie starts on his breakfast and notes that while Aiden ignored hundreds of beautiful actresses, a random working-class mom caught his eye immediately. He jokes that his guards will be let down, but adds that the woman is retired from acting and doesn't take guests anymore. Aiden looks at Richie with pure contempt and asks why he was called all this way just to have his taste in women analyzed. Richie laughs and says they need to discuss a major problem, suggesting they settle their drama peacefully. He gets serious, admitting he was forced to help Anthony during the riot against his will. He compares himself to a passenger on a boat just trying not to drown, while Anthony was the chaotic driver steering them into a storm. Aiden gives him a highly ironic smile, pointing out that Richie's driver almost destroyed the city. He warns Richie that it's going to be hard to convince people he's innocent when he's clearly lying. Richie argues they are even now, but Aiden stops smiling and glares at him. Richie finally admits that 3 months ago, Aiden took his favorite toy without permission, so he felt he had a right to be angry. 3 months back, Aiden was leaning on his cane, wondering if anything in this world was actually real. He was stopping random people to ask what year and country it was, making everyone think he was losing it. Suddenly, he was startled by a heavy cart pulled by horses. The driver yelled at him to move, and Aiden saw the cargo was full of chained-up women. A guard yelled that the cart belonged to the Emerald Palace and told everyone to stay away. Aiden asked the locals what the Emerald Palace was, and some guys laughed, explaining it was a shrine for men full of accessible women. A guy mentioned the girls were strictly for the ultra-rich, and that the palace had snatched a lot of kids from the slums this time. The cart suddenly yanked to a stop because Aiden had grabbed the reins. Radiating authority, he announced that as a newly appointed lord, he was ordering the release of the girls. The driver was baffled, asking why a random guy was messing with palace business. Aiden didn't hesitate. He drew his revolver and blasted the lock off the cage. As the doors swung open, the guard was horrified, realizing Aiden had just declared war on the city's most powerful mafia. Aiden told the girls they were free to go if they didn't want to work at the palace. The driver panicked, not knowing what to do without them. A white-haired girl in the cage asked Aiden for a job as a guard, explaining that the corrupt congressman had blacklisted her everywhere else to force her into the palace. Aiden asked if she was okay being a jailer, and she immediately knelt and swore her loyalty. Another girl in rags was also there. Richie explains to Aiden that this girl, Fernanda, used to be a top economist at the Imperial Academy. Her skills could have changed imperial politics, but after her family was ruined, she ended up in the slums. Richie complains that he tried everything to recruit her, but Aiden sniped his potential advisor. Aiden just sips his coffee, playing it cool. He sarcastically asks for forgiveness, joking that he was acting a little crazy when he recruited her. Then, he gets serious and mentions the prison's lack of funding, asking Richie if he has any business ideas they could collaborate on. Richie just blows out a cloud of smoke and sarcastically points out he wasn't the one who cut the budget. He adds that, according to his info, Aiden's side income makes him one of the 10 richest people in the city. Aiden is genuinely confused. Richie says that since the mayor is ignoring how rich Aiden is getting, Aiden should use that money to fix the prison himself. Aiden replies that Richie is overestimating him and that his funds only cover emergencies. Richie loses his temper, asking why Aiden is playing dumb when he knows about the the customs fraud Aiden is allegedly running with the prosecutor. Aiden is bewildered, asking what fraud he means and who the prosecutor even is. Richie is convinced it's an act, but Aiden insists he has no idea what he's talking about. Richie, trembling with frustration, asks if Aiden actually lives on just his salary. When Aiden says yes, Richie gets so mad he sweeps his tea set off the table, shattering it. He screams for his guards to bring in the customs prosecutor. The guards drag the guy in with his pants down and shove him to the floor. Richie demands to know exactly how much cash the guy makes from his schemes. Richie then breaks it down for Aiden. The prosecutor was using the prison's overcrowding as a cover to smuggle inmates across the border for huge fees, ranging from 100 gold for D levels to 10,000 for S levels. The issue was that he used the prison's name, but Aiden never saw a cent of the profit. Terrified, the prosecutor tries to pull his pants up and stammers that since Aiden had such a strict moral code, they assumed he'd reject the ring, so they just left him out of it. Richie kicks him in the face and tells Aiden he had no idea the officer was so arrogant. He admits he totally misunderstood the situation at the prison and notes that the officer's greed almost destroyed the city. The prosecutor just cries, admitting he was wrong. Richie extends his hand and coldly says there's no need for a real trial anymore. He grabs a blaster from his guard, and as the prosecutor shakes in terror, Richie tells him that since he was brave enough to be that greedy, he has to face the ultimate consequences. The prosecutor begs for his life, promising to pay every cent back. Aiden turns to Richie and asks to handle things himself since the crime happened on his watch at the prison. Aiden thinks back to his injured guards limping through the gates after the riot, still greeting him despite being hurt. He tells Richie that taking care of the staff and paying out their hazard bonuses is going to cost a fortune. Because of that, Aiden admits he doesn't care if the prosecutor's money is dirty or if taking it looks bad for his reputation. As long as the payout is big enough, he's willing to let the guy live. The prosecutor crawls to Aiden's feet, sobbing and thanking him, begging to be let go so he can get the cash together. The prosecutor then turns to Richie, begging for mercy. Richie looks down at him and says that since Aiden agreed to the deal, the prosecutor has exactly 12 hours to get the ransom together. He warns that, if the amount is even a little short, the execution is back on. The prosecutor swears he understands and promises the payout will definitely make the warden happy. Richie waves the guy away. Aiden stays seated, admitting he still doesn't quite get the bigger picture. He remembers the angry citizens protesting, saying the magical creatures take up too much space and resources. Aiden genuinely asks what the point of keeping them locked up even is, and who actually benefits from all this funding. Richie keeps smoking his pipe and gives Aiden a mocking look. He notes that since Aiden is a military guy, high-level politics are probably over his head. Richie asks Aiden what the foundation of the Dragon Ridge Empire even is. Aiden looks confused but says he thinks it was built on an agreement. Richie confirms this, explaining that the people united under a sacred treaty that gave everyone equality so they could fight the evil spirits together. This treaty is the core of their rights and the whole empire. Richie calmly explains the political reality. If the empire's power slips, the whole system fails. Because of that, politicians need to look strong. This is why they make a big deal out of capturing criminals from other races and parading them into the top prison. Taking the pipe out of his mouth, Richie explains that the public will follow whoever gives them what they want. He explains that the best way to get votes is to play the hero defending society against a scary common enemy. Aiden looks skeptical, arguing that framing their own magical allies as an enemy seems too abstract for people to care about. Richie chuckles and says it's very helpful once you see the goals, promising it won't seem abstract for long. Aiden admits the strategy is actually pretty smart. Since he's stayed a while, Aiden says he has to go, but Richie stops him to ask if they are officially cool now. Aiden admits Richie is different from the useless nobles he expected to meet. Richie says he only survived this long because he's ruthless and has power, warning Aiden that if he wants to play politics, he needs his own master plan. Aiden nods and agrees. Back at the prison, the inmates are totally roasting Mandy. Mandy yells at them to stop laughing, pointing out their leader just got snatched and nobody helped. Jolai the giant demands Medusa let Mandy go. Mandy screams that if Jolai hadn't stepped in, she would have been totally humiliated. Jolai admits she only helped because Mandy promised her dinner, which Mandy says she already knew. The inmates keep laughing at Mandy, saying she acts like a big boss while also volunteering to help the succubus flirt with the warden. The succubus nervously tells Mandy to just keep the money and forget the whole thing. She admits she's terrified of Medusa, who is watching them from the bushes with a really obsessed look. Mandy screams that she won't keep the money if the succubus doubts her skills. She tells the inmates to watch and see how she gets her student a date, bragging that she'll have the last laugh. Her matchmaker team officially takes on the challenge. Later, Aiden rides up to the gates and gets off his horse. Two inmates run up and address him by his rank. Mandy flashes a big smile and tells him he has to check the farm beds right now, claiming the potatoes they planted 2 days ago are already ripe. Aiden is confused, asking how that's even possible. Mandy insists he has to see it. The succubus, looking totally obsessed, tries to run after Aiden, but Mandy yanks her back and tells her not to ruin the plan. The succubus is confused, wondering how a potato farm helps her. Mandy whispers that the whole point is to keep Aiden away from Veronica. She explains that since Veronica got hurt during the riot, Aiden will definitely want to visit her in the hospital. Mandy pictures Aiden sitting by her bed while she's in bandages and blushing, saying that kind of emotional closeness will lead to romance and ruin the succubus's chances. With a wicked smile, Mandy says they have to keep distracting Aiden with emergencies so he never gets a private moment with Veronica, setting the stage for the succubus to win. Aiden looks at a potato stem with fully grown potatoes. Fernanda is confused about how they ripened overnight in dry soil. She reminds Aiden that the nobleman who brought Jalala warned them to return her if they ever saw plants grow grow at impossible speeds. Aiden stays silent for a second, then covers for Jalala, lying that the potatoes were actually planted over a month ago. Fernanda realizes what he's doing, bows, and promises to tell the inmates to be more careful. Aiden asks Fernanda about Veronica, but then Mandy runs up, looking out of breath. She claims she just heard a huge argument in the interrogation room and says the Ant Queen is refusing to talk. Aiden asks why the Queen is being so arrogant since she's already in big trouble. Mandy smirks, happy her distraction worked. Aiden tells Fernanda to handle the compost issue while he goes to deal with the interrogation. In the room, Moyi is at a desk. Aiden asks for an update, and she says the Queen is totally stonewalling them. The Queen is behind bars, looking annoyed. Aiden tells Moyi to stop wasting time and just fast-track the execution paperwork. He says it doesn't matter if they get more info because her fate is sealed, so they should just get it over with. The Queen is furious. She screams that she protests, saying a local government has no right to execute her and demanding a trial at the Supreme Court. Aiden glares at her and says even if she goes there, she's getting the same penalty. He refuses to let anyone else interfere, adding he doesn't care about her because she has to pay for what she did to avenge. Aiden angrily waves his hand, demanding that Moyi ignore the Queen's threats. He orders her to carry out the execution without a second thought and simply mail the death certificate to the Supreme Court for evil spirits afterward. The Queen is horrified. Gripping the bars, she screams, asking how he thinks he can just secretly take her out. She reminds him that the Ant Queen still has dozens of sleeper agents active outside. A vision shows girls running through the city, spreading the news of the Queen's arrest at Rose Prison. The Queen explains these agents are actively broadcasting her location to the world. A wanted poster flashes on screen, showing the Ant Queen's 30,000 gold bounty. The Queen brags that she is a legendary villain feared by the entire empire. She asks Aiden if he actually understands the political fallout of finishing off a high-profile criminal in a local prison instead of the imperial capital. She warns that not only will Aiden be a target, but the emperor will likely punish the entire city for stealing his spotlight. A vision shows shadowy military leaders. The Queen explains that the aristocracy is desperate to see her end, and that the emperor specifically wants a massive public ceremony to win over the people. She screams that, by doing this in secret, Aiden is robbing the emperor of his glory, and the empire will absolutely destroy him for it. Turning bright red with anger, she yells that Aiden is brainless if he doesn't realize he's ruining his own life. Moyi looks at Aiden nervously, admitting the girl has a point. Imperial power is slipping, and denying the emperor a major PR win would be seen as a huge insult. Aiden drops his head, thinking it over in silence. Having calmed down, the Queen smiles confidently. She suggests Aiden just let her be transferred to the capital for trial, admitting she'll meet her end anyway, but offering to help him manage the prison in the meantime. A vision shows inmates struggling with side effects from her drugs. She offers to create treatments to stop their condition from getting worse. With a desperate look, she plays her final card. She asks Aiden if he genuinely cares about Avange. She promises that, if he lets her live until the transfer, she will personally remove the biomechanical weapons from Avange's body and filter out the toxic blood, curing her so she can be a normal child and go to school. Aiden just stares at her. The Queen points out the insane cost of transporting an S-rank inmate, noting he'd have to withhold guard salaries for years to afford it, and asks if his staff would really be okay with that. Moyi asks Aiden if she should draft the transfer paper. Aiden turns to the guard behind him and orders her to call Daly immediately, demanding Daly oversee the Queen while she treats the inmates. Moyi sighs in relief, thinking Aiden agreed to the transfer. Aiden watches Moyi start drafting the official appeal to the Supreme Court. Suddenly, he yells at her, asking why she's being so polite. He slams his hand on the desk, demanding she write exactly what he tells her. He tells her to write that they have arrested the absolute cattle who committed monstrous atrocities that enraged the gods. The Queen's smile vanishes. Aiden orders Moyi to explicitly state that the prison refuses to transfer the prisoner due to extreme security risks, citing her active sleeper agents. He grabs the door handle and walks out, leaving the Queen stunned that he completely rejected her deal. Later, Mandy and the succubus immediately start following him again. They ask where he's going and if he's heading to the hospital. Aiden turns around, annoyed, asking why they are always right in front of him. Mandy smiles sweetly, claiming that since they are short on guards, she has to report all issues personally. Mandy brings up a massive problem. Every 3 months, the inmate crumbles into dust and returns with an even larger power pool. Cold air hangs over the cell block. Mandy explains there are only 10 days left until Celine's next cycle, meaning her suppression collar needs an immediate upgrade. She adds that Celine's freezing aura is dropping the temperature so much that nearby inmates are at risk of frostbite. In her cell, Celine screams furiously, swearing that Camilla the dragon is going to pay. From the next cell, an inmate asks why Celine isn't gone yet. Camilla sits perfectly calm across the hall, agreeing that Celine should have turned to dust a long time ago. Aiden walks into the block with a squad of guards. One guard notes the area was fine this morning but now feels like a freezer. Inmates beg Aiden to fix the temperature before they freeze. Celine thrashes against her chains, screaming that she wants to finish Camilla. Aiden walks up to the cell, glaring at her. He says he knows her imprisonment is a massive injustice, but he demands she show respect for the other inmates and stop freezing them, warning she'll just have to meet her end again if she can't control herself. Celine, a girl with glowing blue eyes and stitches across her neck, begs Aiden to review her case. She points out he helped Veronica beat a fake charge and says he owes her the same effort because she's just a mother who lost her child. Camilla sits quietly in her own freezing cell with her eyes closed. Celine explains her tragic backstory. She took out the person who finished her 15-year-old son but only got a 3-year sentence. Because she was a poor woman with no power, her only way to get real revenge against Camilla was using using dark magic to turn herself into a monster. Aiden stares at her through the bars. She swears she doesn't want to hurt anyone else, she just wants Camilla to suffer. Aiden looks thoughtful, remembering her file and agreeing the situation is suspicious. Back in his office, he reviews the paperwork with Fernanda. He notes Camilla isn't a noble and was born in the slums, so she doesn't have the connections to cover up an incident. Yet, she only got a 3-year sentence, which basically proves someone influential rigged the trial. Standing by Celine's cell, Aiden promises to investigate the case as soon as he can. For now, he orders the guards to bring Asena the necromancer to perform a ritual to stabilize Celine's soul. Celine begs him for a fair deal. Walking down the hall, Asena flat out refuses to do the ritual, claiming she actually sympathizes with Celine. Aiden asks since when she cared about emotions, pointing out her job is keeping the dead out of the living world. Asena admits he's right, but explains Celine sacrificed her own chance at rebirth just for revenge. For professional reasons, Asena refuses to interfere with that level of dedication. Aiden is confused, asking what rebirth has to do with anything. Asena explains it's just the physics of their world. After a body passes, the consciousness finds its patron god and starts a new cycle, allowing for endless life unless a specific accident happens. A vision shows a massive portal with people and animals emerging. Asena points at Celine, explaining she is that specific accident. Celine traded her soul's ability to return for dark magic. If she is finished now, her soul and all her memories are gone forever. Aiden is baffled. He argues he doesn't care if she can't return. If she chose a path of agony, the least they can do is numb her pain so she stops freezing the block. Asena crosses her arms, looking disgusted. She asks Aiden how he can praise violent warlords as heroes but condemn a grieving mother who sacrificed her own soul to avenge her son. Asena turns her back on him and waves him off. She firmly refuses to do something she feels is unethical, suggesting Aiden just burn the doll, tying her soul to the living world if he wants the freezing to stop. Fernanda suddenly sprints past, out of breath. She reports that the customs prosecutor, the treasurer, and the chief of the guard are waiting for him. She nervously asks if they are planning something terrible. Aiden calmly says they probably just brought him a massive pile of money. He remembers the prosecutor crying in the palace, promising a ransom. Fernanda is totally confused, but Aiden tells her to go pass out extra blankets to the freezing inmates and promises to explain later. The 3 corrupt officials walk toward the prison. The chief tells the prosecutor he needs to give Aiden a sincere apology. The prosecutor sarcastically says handing over a fortune in cash is as sincere as it gets. The chief asks if they heard about Congressman Anthony, noting he personally had to move the body. A vision shows Anthony's body in the alley. The chief fearfully describes the massive injury to Anthony's head. The treasurer and prosecutor look terrified. The chief explains that while the public blames Sir Richie, the inner circle knows the truth. Aiden orchestrated the hit, proving Aiden is actually a wolf in sheep's clothing. The terrified officials enter Aiden's office and stand nervously in front of his desk. Aiden glares at them and asks if they are the primary leaders handling inmate logistics. Terrified, they say they are. Aiden stares them down, finally realizing why every proposal he made to fix the prison was instantly rejected by the council. Aiden thinks back to when the guards brushed off his request for more cell space, claiming the city was broke. He remembers Sir Richie's accusation that a massive trafficking ring was using the prison's overcrowding as a cover. Looking at the 3 terrified, sweating officials, Aiden tells them to save their breath. He bluntly states that he finally figured out their master plan. Keeping the prison overcrowded and broke was the only way they could hide their massive illegal smuggling operations. The men start begging for mercy, making excuses about how everyone goes through hard times. Fernanda watches them and is totally shocked. She's confused because they used to act so bold and arrogant, but now they're being super quiet and submissive. She seriously wonders what kind of shady business the warden caught them doing to make them change their vibe so fast. Sitting behind his desk, Aiden smiles wickedly at the terrified official. He coldly tells them he isn't feeling merciful, so they better not have shown up empty-handed. The treasurer panics, reaching into his vest to pull out a folded piece of paper, swearing they brought exactly what he asked for. He hands the paper to Aiden. Aiden gestures for Fernanda to inspect it. As he hands it over, the treasurer nervously explains that the check includes more than half of the total profits from their smuggling operation, swearing they would never dream of skimming from Aiden's cut. Fernanda looks at the check, trying to wrap her head around these profits. When she sees the number, her eyes go wide. The amount is insanely high, more than enough to fully cover the prison's 100,000 gold deficit. The officials stand there awkwardly. The chief of the guard tries to justify his actions, claiming he only took the job because he has to constantly bribe his subordinates to win elections. The treasurer whines that his situation is just as bad. The city expects him to be a financial genius, and if his department doesn't show massive profits, he'll be fired. The prosecutor begs Aiden to turn a blind eye just this once, swearing they'll never run a scam like this again. Aiden looks up from the check and asks why they should shut down an operation that's making this much money. The men look totally confused. Aiden suggests they shouldn't just continue the business, they should massively expand it. He points out that since they're already making a fortune sending people to prison, they should start making money off the prisoners themselves. The treasurer is bewildered and asks if Aiden is suggesting forced labor. Aiden smiles and nods. He explains that his goal isn't just basic labor, but drafting a new city bill that legally allows inmates to be rented out as private contractors. The only catch is that employers have to pay a massive guarantee fee directly to the prison up front. The men immediately protest, arguing that renting out S-rank inmates is way too dangerous because they could cause a bloodbath. Aiden waves them off, promising top-tier security measures. He says any inmate in the program will go through brutal background checks and psych evals. He adds that, at first, the program will stay within Silver City borders. Since the city is covered by the prison's magic barrier, the inmates won't be able to use magic to escape. Aiden tells them to use their imagination. He describes a vision of an inmate handling a rifle, explaining the prison is full of sharpshooters who could be rented as military instructors for 10,000 gold a year. He mentions inmates who are masters at beast taming who could train warhorses for 20,000 gold a year, or lizard inmates who could dig massive tunnels for 30,000 gold a year. Looking at the stunned guests, Aiden emphasizes that these are just a few examples. With thousands of inmates, the labor pool is massive. To keep things under control, Aiden promises a specialized guard squad for re-education. If employers are still paranoid, he suggests hosting a job fair inside the prison to build trust with corporations. An economic diagram appears. Market demand brings criminals to the border sends them to prison, and the prison rents them back to the market. Aiden explains that once this cycle is set, the rotation of working inmates will free up cell space, solving the overcrowding crisis while making insane profits. He asks the men if they think his model has potential. The guests immediately break into huge relieved smiles. The treasurer is thrilled, saying the plan is flawless as long as Aiden is running it. The prosecutor agrees, pointing out they have nothing to lose. They happily cheer, agreeing that Aiden will handle the prison side while they use their political power to push the bill through. Fernanda watches the meeting, thinking it's all going a bit too smoothly. She looks at the guard next to her and realizes that if she didn't know Aiden better, she might think he was just a corrupt businessman, but she knows his true character. She realizes he would never let dangerous inmates roam free for cash unless it was part of a massive hidden master plan. Fernanda flashes back to when Aiden let the inmates roam free for 3 days. She realizes that freedom was just bait. He intentionally used confusing rules to keep the inmates terrified and off balance. She remembers how he dropped the hammer on the final day, proving it was all a psychological trap. Watching Aiden talk to the greedy politicians, Fernanda realizes this new labor bill is the next piece of bait. She notices that only the wealthiest elites in Silver City could ever afford those massive fees. She connects the dots. The wealthy elite currently control Parliament through bribes. By making them dependent on Aiden's prison labor to run their businesses, Aiden will effectively gain direct control over Parliament itself. Fernanda looks at Aiden in awe, finally understanding his terrifying genius. The politicians lean over Aiden's desk, discussing the details. The treasurer suggests making the legal language as vague as possible to create loopholes. Aiden smiles, holding the draft. The chief and prosecutor agree, reading it over. The treasurer says vague language ensures nobody can catch them on a technicality, and asks if Aiden approves. If so, they're ready to push the bill through Parliament immediately. Aiden tells them he approves, but asks them to stay for an all-hands meeting with the guards. The guests are confused, not understanding why they'd need to attend a meeting for lowly guards. Ignoring them, Aiden orders Fernanda to summon everyone immediately. Outside, squads of guards walk toward the courtyard, totally confused about the mandatory meeting. Some gossip that they saw the treasurer and chief walk in, assuming there might be an audit or firings. Later, Aiden overlooked the crowd of female guards, flanked by Fernanda and the politicians. He thanks everyone for showing up and asks them to remember how hard they fought during the riot. One guard sighs in relief, thinking this is just a thank you speech. Some whisper, wondering if they'll get medals or bonuses, but they figure the prison is too broke for real rewards. Aiden turns to the treasurer. He tells the crowd he hates doing tedious paperwork, so instead of individual awards, he's giving a blanket reward. He confidently announces that starting today, the base salary for every guard who stayed and fought is being multiplied by 10. If they were making 10 gold pieces, their new salary is a massive 100 gold pieces a month. The crowd absolutely goes wild. The girls are screaming with joy, totally shocked and asking if this is some kind of prank because it feels too good to be true. The treasurer's jaw literally drops, but the prosecutor and the chief of security just smile and nod, fully backing Aiden's generosity. The prosecutor realizes Aiden pushed for that ransom money so fast specifically so he could pay out these massive bonuses. He laughs it off, calling Aiden a legend and saying he's proud to work with a leader like that. The guards are throwing their hands up, cheering and crying. One girl yells that even if the raise only lasts for a month, she's beyond grateful. Another screams that 1 month at this new rate is literally the same as her entire annual salary. Aiden raises his hand for silence. Keeping a straight face, he announces that the raise isn't just a one-time thing. He promises that as long as he's the warden and they stay loyal to the prison, that 10 times salary multiplier is permanent. Then, Aiden points right at the 3 politicians standing next to him. He loudly tells the crowd that this massive pile of cash isn't coming from the government budget, so nobody has to worry about the prison going broke. He reveals that their huge new salaries are actually being personally funded by the generous donations of the prosecutor, the treasurer, and the chief of security. The 3 men look absolutely horrified, their faces turning pale as the crowd of guards screams their praises, bowing and thanking them for being so generous. The treasurer frantically grabs Aiden's coat and whispers furiously, asking what on earth he's doing giving their smuggling profits to the guards. The prosecutor joins in, whispering that a 10 times raise is total insanity. Aiden turns to them and coldly explains the situation. If these guards hadn't held the line during the riot, the inmates would have escaped and Silver City would be a total disaster zone, all because their corrupt smuggling ring caused the overcrowding in the first place. He tells them this is their one chance to look like heroes and buy the guards' loyalty, pointing out that if the guards ever found out the truth, the politicians would be executed for treason. Plus, he notes that since there are only 90 guards left, paying them 100% gold a month is barely a scratch on the politicians. politician's massive black market fortune. The politicians stare at each other, totally stunned, wondering if Aiden actually thinks extorting them like this is normal. The prosecutor, sweating, asks why there are only 90 guards left when there used to be over 1,000. The chief of security mutters that it's because of that viral hit piece Anthony published in the paper. Aiden drops his head, acting super depressed. He sighs and says the hype around that article is already dying down. He notes that if nothing exciting happens soon, the guards who quit for private security jobs will probably come crawling back, though he adds he hopes nobody actually hires people that flaky. The treasurer aggressively points at Aiden, warning him that with moves like this, he'll never be accepted into the elite political circles of Silver City. Suddenly, a guard raises her hand and asks if the extra 90 gold counts as a gift or regular income. The treasurer rubs his temples, realizing she's asking about taxes. The guard clarifies that if it's legally a gift, it shouldn't be hit by the city's brutal income tax. After thinking for a bit, the treasurer explains that the tax laws are managed by an official from the Dragon Ridge Empire, so he doesn't have the authority to change the brackets. Aiden sarcastically says he had no idea the massive empire still cared about taxing charity for workers. He asks the treasurer who is going to handle the paperwork if he claims he can't interfere. The treasurer looks at Aiden and Fernanda, suggesting that Aiden should just focus on prison business. He admits they've already been squeezed for a lot of money, so he volunteers to personally visit the tax office and figure out a way to legally classify the bonuses as untaxable gifts. Aiden turns back to the guards and announces that as long as they stay loyal, they will get their full 100% gold salary, but only be taxed on their original 10 gold base pay. The guards absolutely lose it. They're hugging and jumping for joy, realizing they're taking home almost 20 times their normal pay, making them all instantly upper middle class. In the middle of the celebration, one guard is quietly crying in a wheelchair. She explains that her leg was shattered during the riot and she'll be stuck in that chair for at least 6 months. She cries that if she keeps working the front line, she'll have permanent damage, so she begs Aiden to just hold her spot until she can walk again. Aiden looks at her gently and says he almost forgot a big announcement. He reveals that to support the new labor bill, the prison is launching a brand new HR department. He explains this department will focus entirely on educating and rehabilitating inmates so they can move back into society. The girl stops crying, her eyes full of hope. Aiden tells her that since she was injured in the line of duty, she's being moved to a desk job in the new department immediately, and her salary will stay exactly the same as the frontline guards. The crowd erupts again, thrilled that their friend is safe and still getting that massive pay bump. Meanwhile, Mandy and the succubus are eavesdropping on the whole thing. The succubus is basically worshipping Mandy, praising her for throwing so many problems at Aiden to keep him from visiting Veronica. Mandy flashes an evil smirk, admitting it was tough to manufacture that much drama. She tells the succubus to stay patient, promising that once Aiden is totally burned out, they'll launch their master plan. The succubus blushes and flashes a creepy smile, yelling that she's ready right now. She suggests throwing a bag over Aiden's head or drugging his coffee so she can have her way with him. Mandy is horrified by how unhinged she is, and even the succubus looks a bit scared of her own thoughts. Mandy furiously corrects her, yelling that the plan is to use charm magic, not to literally kidnap him. The succubus awkwardly admits she has no idea how to use charm magic. Mandy grabs her by the collar, screaming in disbelief, asking how a literal succubus doesn't know the one thing her species is famous for. Terrified, the succubus explains they taught it in middle school, but the books were boring, so she just skipped class to read cheesy romantic comedy manga instead. A flashback shows her as a kid, ignoring her teacher to read a comic and yelling that she refuses to learn charm magic because it's stupid. In the present, she realizes her arrogance back then totally ruined her life now. Suddenly, Moi appears and asks Mandy about Aiden's new policy is all about rehabilitation, claiming a reformed inmate wants to join her labor squad. Moi points to the gate as Medusa walks in. Mandy is furious, demanding to know what kind of rehabilitation Medusa went through, arguing her motives are totally toxic and obsessive. Moi is shocked by the reaction but says she can't reject the transfer. She explains Aiden's ruling. Any inmate willing to work must be given a chance. So, as long as Medusa doesn't attack anyone, Mandy has to deal with her on the team. Medusa blushes, her snake hair writhing with excitement as she stares at Mandy, who is sweating with terror. Medusa flirtatiously calls Mandy her boss and promises to stay right by her side from now on. Outside, Daily the witch is eating an apple, wondering why the Ant Queen is actually still alive. In the infirmary, the queen in surgical scrubs and a plague doctor mask stands over Avange's body. The queen picks up a scalpel as purple tentacles sprout from her legs. She casually apologizes to Daily, explaining that her case was transferred to the Imperial Court, so Aiden doesn't have the authority to execute her anymore. Daily just glares at her, totally disgusted. Daily laughs mockingly, saying she knew she'd pull something like this. The queen makes a precise cut on Evange and calmly states that Aiden is a bad politician because he didn't look at the big picture. Her tentacles slide into the incision, violently ripping out gross parasites from Evange and crushing them. She talks about how furious Aiden is going to be when he gets the official letter from the Empire banning her execution. She admits that just thinking about Aiden throwing a tantrum because he got outplayed politically makes her incredibly happy. She looks at a squirming worm on the floor and lets out a sinister laugh, clearly proud of her own genius. Daily sits on a couch across from her, watching the worm wiggle. She asks what that disgusting thing even is, noting she's never seen anything like it in her advanced textbooks. The queen explains it's a zombie worm from the Forbidden Lands. She says these parasites are incredibly tough, they're immune to poison, and can't be removed by any normal medicine. medicine. She describes the terrifying swamps where these worms live, explaining the water isn't mud, but actually corrosive acid. In a vision, a man falls in, and his skin starts melting immediately. As he dissolves, thousands of worms swarm him. She explains that anyone who falls in starts rotting and mutating, and struggling just makes the parasites attack faster. Once the worms get inside, they fuse with the person's nervous system and replace their organs. The process is pure agony. A vision shows a person who has mutated into a monster with extra limbs and heads, trapped in a cycle of endless pain because the worms keep the rotting body alive. They only stop if the brain is totally destroyed. Daily remembers the glowing slime on the girl's hands and asks if the worms provide a protective shell. The queen clarifies that the worms don't protect her. She survives the acid because of the biomechanical upgrades her mother gave her. As Evange lies on the table, the queen explains the surgery is only possible because Evange isn't really human anymore. She insults Daily, saying that since she isn't a biomod expert, she can't understand how perfect Evange's design is, noting Evange can survive procedures that would end anyone else instantly. The queen proudly declares that Evange is basically a patchwork bag of flesh that can integrate any weapon without her body rejecting it. She calls Evange a perfect divine vessel rather than a human. The queen turns to Daily and begs for one more chance, promising she can turn Evange into an unstoppable weapon in just one night. Daily just laughs and tells her she has no idea how much danger she's actually in. Daily explains that the news of the queen's capture went viral instantly, and everyone in the empire knows she's at Rose prison. She reveals that the queen's original teacher, Lamia, has already heard the news and is marching out of the Forbidden Lands toward the prison. The queen is terrified. She admits she heard rumors that Lamia swore to publicly finish her own student for treason. The queen drops to the floor, shaking with fear. Daily explains the lore. Lamia is a legendary founding witch. She had to break her own sacred rules over and over to cover up her students' crimes. If Lamia doesn't handle the queen herself, she'll lose the respect of every witch on the continent. Daily notes that if the queen escapes, Lamia will just hunt her down anyway. She takes a bite of her apple and asks the queen what her plan is now that a very angry founding witch is waiting at the gates. Outside, the sun is out, and a courier is galloping toward the prison as fast as possible. He screams for people to move, saying he has a level 1 priority message from the Supreme Court. His horse trips, and he crashes into the dirt. He scrambles up, yelling that it's illegal to execute the queen, but the guard stops when a figure in a dark robe with a skull insignia comes. Later, the bruised courier stands in Aiden's office. He introduces himself as the official envoy of the Supreme Court and hands Aiden a wax-sealed scroll. He explains the queen has classified info the Empire needs, so her execution is officially stayed. Aiden unrolls the scroll and asks if this is a joke, arguing that keeping her alive will cause riots. The courier says the ruling is absolute. He then hands Aiden a second envelope with a royal crest, a personal letter from the third prince. Aiden tries to remember the prince. He has a flashback of his body's original owner acting as a fencing instructor for a young boy. The boy had asked for a huge favor, which shocked Aiden, but the memory cuts off. He just knows he cut ties with the royals after that day. Aiden reads the letter. The prince says he stepped in as soon as he heard the queen was at Rose prison. He explains that since the judges are blunt and don't explain politics, he wanted to personally tell Aiden why the execution was canceled. The prince reveals the only reason she's alive is because she's the only person to ever infiltrate the Forbidden Lands and make it back. He notes that while Aiden might think the Empire just wants land, the real motive is darker. The letter explains that the Dragon Ridge Empire took over after a great war, but is seen as illegitimate by loyalists of the old Sur Empire. With a civil war brewing, the Empire plans to invade the Forbidden Lands to find the lost crown of the old emperor to prove they are the rightful rulers. Aiden is disgusted by the corrupt politics, and Fernanda is shocked. The letter says the queen must stay alive to draw a tactical map of the Forbidden Lands for the invasion. Aiden is ordered to make the queen a prison advisor. She gets luxury living conditions to keep her happy but can't ever leave. The letter also says any other inmates with info on the Forbidden Lands can be promoted too. Finally, the prince mentions that the Chief Justice is furious about the recent riot. Because he doesn't trust local security, he's sending a massive imperial force to set up a branch of the Supreme Court in Silver City to lock things down. Aiden has to oversee the construction, and all info the queen provides must go directly to the imperial staff the moment they arrive. Later, thick smoke rolls across the floor as Fernanda kicks open the door, gasping as she sees massive parasites crawling through the haze. Totally confused, she asks what on earth is happening. Daily is just sitting there chilling, eating a banana, and tells Fernanda to stay calm. She explains the smoke is just a medical treatment and brags that the surgery she supervised to fix Evange was a total success. Fernanda watches as the queen pulls off her creepy plague doctor mask and asks her point blank how much she actually knows about the Forbidden Lands. The girl looks visibly panicked, her voice shaking, as she begs Fernanda to tell Aiden that she spent 10 straight years surviving there and knows every single detail about the layout. Fernanda is bewildered by how much her attitude has flipped. She went from being arrogant and hostile to totally submissive and desperate to help. Fernanda asks if she's willing to trade that info to make up for her crimes. In return, she'll be promoted to prison counselor, meaning she won't be locked in a cell, can roam the prison freely, and will even get a massive salary of 200 gold a month. The girl is stunned by the offer, and Daly is so shocked she actually drops her banana. Fernanda lists the perks: a huge private office, a luxury dorm, and the power to send guards into the city to buy her whatever premium food or drinks she wants. Standing in the doorway, Fernanda mentions the only only catch is that she has to check in 3 times a day. The queen remembers the warnings from Lamia and Daly that leaving the prison means instant death, so she desperately accepts the job, her voice shaking with relief. Daly suddenly jumps up and shoves her student aside, aggressively telling Fernanda that she also knows a ton of top-secret info about the Forbidden Lands. Fernanda is skeptical and asks how long Daly actually lived in the danger zone. Daly looks embarrassed, rubbing the back of her head, and mumbles that she mostly just did some light scouting near the border. Fernanda realizes Daly is useless for a full-scale war and rejects her. Daly glares at the queen, who is busy promising Fernanda she'll be the best advisor ever and swearing she'll never try to run away again. Internally, the queen thinks about how she ditched her rioters to save herself. She knows she's stuck there now, and since half the inmates want her dead for the betrayal, she realizes she needs Aiden's protection to survive. Outside, the treasurer is by the courtyard statue, begging a guard to tell Aiden he needs a meeting about a huge business opportunity. A steel door opens, hitting the treasurer with a blast of freezing air. He wraps his arms around himself, complaining about the cold, while the guard explains that the Silene is getting close to her reset cycle, making her freezing aura much stronger. The treasurer bumps into Aiden in the hall, and Aiden asks what he wants. The treasurer smiles and asks for a private word, explaining he saw the Imperial messenger and assumes Aiden is getting a big promotion. He tells Aiden not to forget his friends as he moves up the ladder. Aiden is confused and explains the messenger just dropped off a court order to stop the queen's execution. No money or promotion involved. The treasurer smirks and says Aiden is missing the big picture, explaining that while Silver City has rich people, they don't have real political power. He says the real currency is connections. If a local can prove they have a line to the empire, their authority hits the roof. As they walk, the treasurer admits he actually came to talk about the prisoner guarantee bill. He complains that bribing individual Congress members is taking too much time and money. He's hyped because he knows a financial tycoon who owns 30% of parliament. If they get him on board, the bill passes instantly. Aiden asks who this tycoon is. The treasurer explains he's talking about Golden Tooth, the guy who just bought the 50,000 gold contract for the prison's wine project. He describes Lucius as a massive, bearded man with a literal golden tooth. He's the boss of the Skull Gang, a violent crime syndicate he built using people from the slums. The treasurer explains the Skull Gang is so powerful they wiped out their rivals, the Bloody Gang, which was a cartel so strong the police couldn't even stop them. He says Lucius has so much influence that even the cops don't know who's really running the Northern District. He notes that Lucius is highly respected by the corrupt elite because he forces businesses to pay for protection. The treasurer then mentions that the former boss of the destroyed Bloody Gang, the Dragonborn, is actually locked up right here in Rose Prison. Aiden is skeptical and tells the treasurer to think twice before partnering with a cartel boss, warning him not to let greed cloud his judgment. Aiden says he's too busy with the drama between the Dragonborn and the freezing zombie, but agrees to a meeting with Golden Tooth eventually. Before leaving, Aiden tells a guard to prepare the voodoo doll that holds Celine's grudges. He says if the temperature doesn't get under control by tonight, they're just going to burn the doll and finish the problem for good. In the infirmary, Ya asks how much longer they have to stay there. She complains that because the prison won't hire new guards, the inmates are doing all the cleaning and medical work for free. Jinja is lying in a tiny bed, whining that she needs a week of rest after her berserker state. Jinja is furious at the 2 girls in the beds next to her, asking how they can be so calm after they tricked her into fighting while they hid. The brown-haired girl just smiles and says they didn't hide. They were actually securing the most dangerous part of the battlefield. She tells Jinja that she's matured a lot over the years. Jinja is shocked and asks if they've met before, and the girl says they have, but Jinja probably doesn't remember. Meanwhile, Veronica is staring out the window and hears a strange voice from outside. The voice asks why the bloody werewolf protects humans but won't fight for her own children. Using her wolf vision, Veronica spots a scarred military commander giving a radical speech to a crowd below. He tells them they are treated like trash because their ancestors allied with humans, leaving them with no rights. The commander begs the crowd not to let the next generation grow up as slaves. He demands a violent uprising so they can live in peace. He explains their plan is an absolute contract. A vision shows a massive magic circle drawn in werewolf blood. In the center is a glowing rune, a circle with a line ending in 2 parallel lines. Veronica stands on a battlefield surrounded by the ghosts of fallen werewolves, with that same rune glowing behind her. Back in the infirmary, Veronica sits up and looks at her shoulder. Branded into her skin is a glowing red tattoo of that exact same rune, and she has a massive version of it covering her entire back. And with that, this video ends. Like and subscribe for the next part.